Liam Stone. Arrive. That was my mouth. Nobody consulted me about it. Some other kids' memories were still sloshing around in my skull like water in a bucket, and one of them apparently knew how to answer a roll call, so it just went ahead and did it while the rest of me stood there trying to figure out why the sun was the wrong color. 10 seconds earlier, I'd been 14 kinds of bored in a school hallway. Now I was standing on cobblestones in a linen shirt that smelled like somebody else's sweat, in a square full of 30-odd kids who all looked like they'd been dragged there by the collar, which, I'd find out shortly, they had. Gothic stone towers, black robes, a man at the front reading names off a list with the enthusiasm of a guy counting inventory. I looked around and did the math a normal person does. Not China. Not anywhere with China in it. Then somebody screamed on my left, and I stopped doing math. There was a woman at the edge of the square on her knees, not kneeling, the other thing, the full body one, forehead to the stones, over and over. In front of her stood a young man in a black robe holding a thin wooden stick, and his face had exactly as much expression as a coat rack. He said something, 6 syllables maybe, something dark green and thick came off the end of the stick and went where he was pointing. She made one sound, then she was a puddle, not a body, a puddle. Green water hissing on the stones, and a smell like a swimming pool having a stroke. He turned around and walked away, didn't check, didn't look back, wiped nothing off anything. It was the walk of a man who'd finished putting out the trash. More of the other kids' memories came up my throat at that exact moment, which was great timing. Thanks. Serfs. The kingdom. Anyone found with the talent gets taken to the Emerald Shadow Forest, to the Holden Wizard School. The word wizard landed in my head with a definition already glued to it. To grasp the truth and harness the extraordinary through mental energy. Great. Wizards. Real ones. And I just watched one file, a woman under solved. Welcome to the Holden Wizard School. I am your instructor, Arthur. Second rank wizard apprentice. The man with the list was smiling, not a nervous smile. A satisfied one. He'd watched the whole thing, and he'd liked how it went, the way you like it when a demonstration lands exactly on cue. Nobody in the square relaxed, but I watched about 30 faces do the same thing at once, and it wasn't fear, it was hunger. Every one of those kids had just done the same calculation I had, and every one of them had gotten the same answer. Could I do that? That's the whole religion right there. You show people a woman turning into a puddle, and their first thought is teach me. Next, we'll go to the teaching area. We went. Along the way, I got the guided tour Arthur didn't bother giving, a man in a robe killing someone by the roadside like he was stepping on a wasp, 2 wizards coming back in from outside with blood dried black on their sleeves walking fast, somebody riding a thing that was 3 meters tall and had opinions. 9 minutes into my new life and I'd revised my goals down to a single item. Do not be a puddle. The classroom was big and cold and smelled like stone. Arthur took out a stack of thin booklets and flicked his hand, and they flew. Just flew, one to each of us, and landed neatly. 30 kids gasped. I'd like to say I didn't. I did. Everyone's time is running out, he said. Now, in my experience, when a man in a robe says your time is running out, that's not a metaphor, and somebody down front had the same instinct. What does it mean when the adults say there's not much time left? Just a reminder, Arthur said pleasantly. Call me instructor. And then he explained it. And he didn't dress it up even a little, which I actually respected. 3 months. Learn the basic meditation method out of that booklet. Feel your own mental energy, absorb the elements, condense one abstract rune. Do that, and you're a first-class wizard apprentice. You're in. The school takes you and teaches you more. Don't do it, and you become the property of the school, for life. The room made a sound I've never heard a room make before. 30 people inhaling at the same time. Because we'd all just seen what a slave was worth around here. We'd seen the exchange rate, 6 syllables and a puddle. I looked down at the booklet. It was maybe 40 pages. It described feeling your own mind, then pulling elements in, then twisting them into a shape. At the back, there were 3 little spells thrown in like the free sample packet in a magazine. Ignition, glowing, water conjuration. Those are cantrips, Arthur said, below the level of witchcraft. Anyone interested can take a look, but I don't recommend spending time on them. Then he taught for 1 hourglass, sat down in a chair, closed his eyes, and said, You can try to understand it yourselves from now on. Don't come to me with questions. That was it. That was the orientation. There was a big empty area at the back with blankets on it. I picked one and tried to fold myself into the shape the booklet wanted, which turned out to be the exact posture of a gecko losing an argument with a wall. Close your eyes. Feel your own mental energy. Nothing. I sat there for a dozen minutes feeling my own everything else. My knees, the blanket, the specific temperature of pure panic. Not 1 gram of mental energy. I opened my eyes, and I wasn't alone. Half the room was already staring at the ceiling. Only a handful of kids were still folded up, and around those few, the air did something. A shimmer, like heat off a road. Dude, stop looking. Blonde kid to my right, sitting cross-legged, entirely comfortable like he'd been briefed. To even feel mental energy, you need at least 3rd tier talent. What tier are you? And another memory came up, right on schedule, because apparently my brain was running a subscription service now, a dark castle room, my hand on a crystal ball, a bored voice, 5th class. 5th, I said. Ah. He nodded like a doctor who's decided not to tell you yet. So, 3rd tier, those guys are basically fine. 4th tier, mostly fine. 5th tier, occasionally. 6th tier, you can pretty much give up on. Occasionally, there were kids in this room who were 6th. I could see them from where I sat, and they didn't know yet that they were already furniture. I closed my eyes again because what else was there to do? Darkness, no sparks, no energy, no cosmic hum, a pale blue screen. Name, Liam Stone. Age, 12. Skill level, mortal. Talent, 98. 5th rank star. Skill, basic meditation method, beginner. I stared at it for a while. 12, sure, that tracked with how short my arms had been feeling. And then the 3rd line down, sitting there like it had every right to. Talent, 98. Somebody had put a number on it, not a tier, not a grade, not a bored wizard's verdict. A number, 98 out of whatever, on a scale nobody in this world had ever mentioned out loud, attached to the one stat that decided whether I'd be a wizard or a mop. I didn't know what it meant yet, I didn't know if it did anything, but you don't put a number on something unless the number can move. Arthur stood up, told us he'd be teaching once a week, told us to arrange our own time, and led us to a cluster of stone houses on the south side of the school. Lunch and dinner get delivered, go pick it up yourself. Good luck. Then he left, without a second look. I took a room in the corner, because corners have one fewer direction things can come from. 3 days. 3 days I did not go outside. Meals showed up carried by servants who were, I learned by asking, just ordinary people, not wizards. And there were other slaves, the ones who did have talent and failed, and those got the dangerous work. About 1/3 of them die a year, the guy told me, setting the bread down, entirely casual. He said it the way you'd mention a bus route. That number spread through the housing area like a grease fire. Even the 3rd-class kids stopped strutting after that. You could hear it at night, nobody talking, everybody breathing wrong, 30 children in 30 stone boxes trying to hear their own souls before the clock ran out. Day 3, I got it. Not the rune, just the first thing. I closed my eyes and the dark wasn't empty anymore. There was a spark in the middle of it. One. Tiny, dim, embarrassing. That was me. That was my entire mind, rendered as a match head, and around it, faint and scattered, other little lights in different colors. Elements. The stuff you're supposed to eventually be able to grab. The screen updated. Skill. Basic meditation method. Beginner 1 of 100. 1 out of 100. Now here's the thing about that. I sat there in a stone box, in a world that had already shown me its resume, and I looked at a progress bar, and I understood something that took the pressure off my chest for the first time in 3 days. A bar that fills doesn't empty. I tested it. Meditated again. Poorly. Bar went to 2. Slept. Bar was still at 2. Meditated angrily. 3. It never went backward. Not once. Not ever. Not on a bad day. Not when I was sick. Not when I was wrong. Whatever this thing was, it kept score, and it only counted up. Everybody else in this school was going to spend the next 3 months hoping to be talented. I was going to spend it grinding. The problem was that I could only do it 4 times a day. 4 meditations, and then my head would start pounding like something was trying to get out, and I'd have to stop. The blonde kid could do more. The 3rd-class kids could do a lot more. That's what talent was, apparently. It wasn't how good you were at this. It was how many times you were allowed to try. 6th class, 1 or 2 a day. 5th, 2 to 4. 4th, 4 to 8. Every grade doubles. So a 3rd-class kid got 8 tries to my 4, and each of his tries was worth more than each of mine. 2 months in, that's not a gap. That's a different species. And the rune itself came in 4 parts. 4 separate impossible shapes that then had to be welded into one impossible shape. 4 days later, I still didn't have part 1. What I did have was a lot of free time between headaches because after 4 meditations, my brain was a wrung-out towel and there was nothing to do but stare at the wall, so I played with the free samples. The ignition spell. You snap your fingers, your mind touches the fire element, and you get a flame about the size of a birthday candle's ambitions. Arthur had told us not to bother. It was accurate advice. The thing was completely useless. It could, at absolute maximum effort, burn you a little. I snapped my fingers. Little flame. Snapped again. Little flame. Ignition spell. Master 1 of 300. My meditation was crawling up 4 or 5 points a day. My finger snapping was going up 70 or 80. There was no plan at this point. I was a 12-year-old with a headache making a tiny fire out of boredom, the way you'd click a pen. 3 days of that and it hit expert. 1 more day and it hit great master, whatever that meant. And a line of text appeared in the middle of my vision that I read 4 times before it went in. Ignition spell reaches great master level. Talent +1. Talent. 99. 5th rank star. 98 became 99. I sat very still in that stone house for a long minute, holding a candle flame I couldn't put out because I'd forgotten it was there. Talent was the thing you were born with. Talent was the thing the crystal ball measured once and then everyone treated as a permanent character trait, like your height or your last name. Talent was the reason there were kids in my class who were already dead and just hadn't been told, and I'd just moved mine by snapping my fingers at nothing for 4 days. Cool. Very cool. I put the flame out and went to test what a single point actually bought me. Closed my eyes. Darkness, then the spark, and it came up faster. Noticeably, the kind of faster you feel in your teeth. The elements around it were easier to find, easier to pull. When I tried the rune, it condensed further than it ever had before it fell apart. 1 point. That's what 1 point did. If this is 1, I said out loud, to nobody, in a stone house at 12 years old, then 100 is. And then I stopped talking because I just heard how the rest of that sentence went, and it was not a sentence you say out loud in a building full of people who kill each other over resources. Here's the loop I'd found, seen the way I saw it that night, sitting on that blanket with my heart going like a bird in a box. Learn a piece of extraordinary knowledge to the top. Get talent. Higher talent means faster learning. Faster learning means more pieces of knowledge to the top, which means more talent. There was no step in there where it stopped. There was no ceiling in the description. There was no up to a maximum of. The whole machine just ate knowledge and produced the one thing this entire world agreed you could not change about yourself. Hiss. That's a little scary. I mean that. I actually felt cold. Because I'd been in this world 4 days and I'd already learned rule number 1, which was that anything valuable gets taken from you by someone stronger, and I was now sitting on the most valuable thing I'd ever heard of in a place where a man could dissolve a woman on a public square on a Tuesday morning and go get lunch. So, nobody finds out, ever, not once, not when it would be convenient, not when it would make me look good, not when someone insults me, not when someone I like is standing right there. Nobody finds out. I picked the second free sample, water conjuration, which makes a small ball of water and is even more useless than the fire one, and I started snapping my fingers at that instead. Water conjuration went faster than ignition had, not because I was smarter, because I was better. 1 extra point of talent and the spell proficiency itself climbed quicker, 40 points an hour instead of 7 or 8. That was the part that made my hand shake a little. The loop didn't just make me meditate better, it made me learn everything better. Talent wasn't a meditation stat. Talent was the multiplier on my whole life. Meanwhile, in the classroom, the actual world kept happening. Arthur's second lecture was history, and it was one of those lectures where the teacher tells you something enormous in a bored voice and doesn't notice you've stopped breathing. Wizards fought the ancient gods. Wizards won. And then, having no gods left to fight, they got straight to work on each other, and that's the era we're in now. The Emerald Shadow Forest doesn't just have us in it. There are wandering wizards out there, and dark wizards, and every one of them would like our things. So even if you become an apprentice, Arthur said, don't think about leaving. He grinned when he said it. That was the tell. He grinned. Otherwise, you'll die a horrible death. It's very dangerous outside. Noted, instructor. Noted and filed and laminated. Then he did the thing he did every week, which was ask who'd condensed the first part of the rune. 3 hands went up. Same 3 every time. The 3rd class kids. Good. After this is over, the 3 of you can ask me 3 questions, and I will answer them. Which is where the blonde kid next to me finally cracked. Those people can succeed without guidance, he said, not quite under his breath. The ones who actually need help are us 4th class. This isn't fair. Arthur turned his head. If it were a wizard with a bad temper, he said, you'd already be lying down, physically. The blonde kid found something fascinating on his desk. And then Arthur smiled around the room and gave us the sentence that runs this entire world, free of charge, as a bonus lesson. In the wizarding world, there is fairness, but it's based on equal strength. If you don't have the strength, don't ask for fairness. It'll cost you your life. Nobody argued. What are you going to say? He's right. He's obviously right. He's right in a way that makes your stomach hurt because the 3 kids at the front sat up a little straighter when he said it, and they were 12 years old too. I looked down at my notes. The guy on my other side, Spencer, wide face, wide opinions, glanced over at what I was writing. Page after page, dense, cramped, every margin used, water conjuration, notes on water conjuration. He looked at it, then he looked away, and I watched him mentally file me under not very bright. A waste of time. Cantrips don't help you understand the rune. Everybody knows that. And here's this serf kid burning his 3 months on a party trick. He was completely correct about the facts and completely wrong about the conclusion. And I have rarely been so happy to be underestimated by a stranger. 13 days later, my stone house floor was permanently wet. I'd made so many little water balls in there that the air had gone damp and the ground was slick, and I'd started sleeping on the one dry corner like a cat. Then, water conjuration reaches great master level, talent +1, talent, 100 4th rank star, 100, not just a number this time. The rank changed, 5th to 4th. One line of text, and I'd stopped being the kid the instructor writes off and started being the kid the instructor tolerates. Here's what a rank does. A 5th class talent gets 2 to 4 meditations a day. A 4th gets 4 to 8. Double. Just double. Immediately. For free. Because I made small water balls in a room for 2 weeks. I sat down and started meditating, and I kept going past 4, waiting for the headache, and it didn't come. 5. Still nothing. On the 5th one, the first quarter of the rune snapped into place. It's the only time in this whole story I got something that wasn't just a number, so here it is. It was like a stream going through the inside of my head. Cool, and it didn't hurt, and when it passed, everything was clearer. My eyesight sharpened. The little colored lights of the elements, there were suddenly more of them, and they were closer. My own spark had grown, and that was a quarter. A quarter of a rune, the entry-level version of the thing every wizard in this school was built out of. Also, that session gave me 8 points of meditation proficiency instead of 4. I lay back on the wet floor of my stone house and I laughed at the ceiling for a while, which is not a normal thing for a 12-year-old to do alone in the dark, but I'd earned it. This is my path, I said to the ceiling, and it was. Right there, 20-something days in, that was the whole strategy of my life. Complete. No revisions ever needed. Everything is knowledge. All knowledge is talent. And any wall I can't get through, I just grow past. Not fight past. Not trick past. Grow past. Slowly. Like water. The next class, Arthur asked who'd condensed the first part. 8 hands, including mine. Liam? That was Spencer, who had literally decided I was stupid 9 days earlier and had not been quiet about it. He turned around in his seat and stared at me like I'd stood up and sung. Because here's the thing about the first part of the rune, it's the hard one. It's the one where you're doing it blind, with no reference, trying to build a shape you can only half see. The people who got it were, without exception, the best of the 4th class kids and above, and I was, as far as anyone knew, a 5th. Spencer was a 4th, and he hadn't done it. Then Arthur asked who had part 2, and the 3 3rd class kids raised their hands, and everybody's face fell, and I got a nice clear look at the actual size of the gap I was standing in front of. But then Arthur said the thing that changed my entire quarter. In the second half of the course, those who've completed part 2 may ask 3 questions. Those who've completed part 1 may ask 1. Oh, I had a question. Everyone else asked about meditation. Of course they did. Meditation was the exam. Meditation was survival. Meditation was the only thing anyone in that room thought about. When my turn came, I said, "Instructor, I'd like to ask where I can get more cantrips." Arthur blinked. I don't think anyone had ever asked him that. I think in his entire career, nobody had ever burned their one guaranteed question from a second-rank wizard apprentice on party tricks. Cantrips aren't worth much, he said slowly, but they're still extraordinary knowledge. There are cantrip encyclopedias for sale at the market. One book costs 5 magic stones and contains over 100 cantrips. 100 cantrips, 5 magic stones. I did the arithmetic in my head right there in the classroom with my face doing absolutely nothing, and the answer was 200 talent. Then I found out what a magic stone was worth, and the arithmetic stopped being fun. A magic stone in the mortal kingdom I'd technically been born in buys you a castle and a title. Thrown in, 5 of those, for a book of party tricks. I must have looked exactly as gutted as I felt, because Arthur kept talking, and he raised his voice a little so the whole room got it. Each batch of prospective apprentices has 3 months. But if you imprint the complete mental power blaze before the time limit, you receive a reward. 1 magic stone for arriving a week early. 5 weeks early, that's 5 magic stones. Every head in the room came up. Mine came up last, and I sat there running numbers. I had about a month. 5 weeks early meant finishing the whole rune with 5 weeks on the clock. 4 parts. 1 part every 10 days. Average, starting from a base of 1. It was not, strictly speaking, possible. I decided to do it anyway because the alternative was being a mop. The class ended and a body stepped into my path. Blonde, comfortable. The kid who told me I was probably doomed. Dylan, he said like I should already know. Liam, I'd like to invite you to join the Mutual Aid Society. The Mutual Aid Society, it turned out, was Dylan's project. A study group, basically. Trade notes, trade experience, help each other get to the rune before the axe falls. I was already assembling a polite no when he added the part that made my whole head turn. A lot of them are nobles. They know things. Some of them have magic stones, and witchcraft, and cantrips they can trade. You seem pretty interested in cantrips, Liam. I'm joining. He laughed. He'd expected to work harder for that. 7 that evening, knock on my door, and Dylan walked me over to a stone house with 4 boys and 2 girls already sitting in it, all of them looking me over the way you look over a used cart. This is Liam. Everybody knows him by now. He's one of the ones who condensed the rune. I've invited him to join. I don't think anyone objects. I object. 14 years old. Fat, pockmarked face, chest already out before he'd finished standing up. Quentin, what do you mean? I've seen him. Quentin jerked his chin at me. He used to be a serf. As a nobleman, I refused to sit with him. I did not feel insulted. I looked at this kid, the puffed chest, the raised chin, the whole performance, and what I saw was a stupid husky that thinks it's a wolf. The real question was what Dylan would do, because that told me what this group was actually worth. Dylan looked at him for about a second and a half. Quentin, if you can't accept it, then please leave. Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. Quentin's father was a duke. Quentin had been a viscount before they hauled him here. Quentin was, in raw material terms, the richest thing in that room, and Dylan traded him away without blinking because he decided which of us was more useful. That's a person who can count. Quentin's eyes went very wide. He did not want to leave. He needed this group as much as anyone, so he pivoted, and he pivoted straight into me. Liam, let's have a contest. Nothing fancy, just meditation proficiency. If you win, I'll let you join. If you lose, you leave. Liam, I'm sorry, you don't need to do this. Dylan was already turning. But I was thinking, see, I'd had a problem walking in. Everyone in this room had something to trade. Nobles had stones and books and secrets. What did I have? What does a serf kid put on the table? And the answer, the only answer, was the one thing I'd been quietly building for a month while everyone else was panicking. I don't make mistakes in meditation, not because I'm gifted, because the bar tells me when I've done it wrong. I can feel a bad session go nowhere and correct it inside a minute, and nobody else in this world has that, and nobody ever will. So I looked at Quentin and I said, okay, but if I lose, I leave, and if you lose, nothing happens to you. That's a little unfair, isn't it? He was delighted. He didn't even pause. Fine. If I lose, I leave the Mutual Aid Society too. Not enough. His jaw worked. Then, with the confidence of a man who has never once considered losing, including my family's Lionheart Night method, I kept my face still and my voice bored, and I said, a night method, a whole discipline. A physical cultivation art from a noble house, extraordinary knowledge, the real kind, not a party trick. Reader, I would have fought that boy with my teeth. They cleared a space, 2 hourglasses, one on each side, 6 kids sitting around the edge in a rough circle, and Dylan off to the side visibly trying to figure out how to call the whole thing off without looking like he was calling the whole thing off. Liam was too impulsive, a red-haired girl said, shaking her head. Really, agreed a big kid next to her, because they'd all seen Quentin meditate, and Quentin was actually good at it. Family tradition, even a Grand Duke can scrape up a resource or two if he tries. Rule 1, who feels their mental energy first? Rule 2, who holds the meditation longest? We sat down. I closed my eyes and did the thing I'd now done several hundred times in a wet stone room, and the spark came up like a light switch. Somebody gasped. Wait, something's not right. I didn't open my eyes. I heard the girl in the white dress say it, and I heard the shuffle as everybody leaned in, and I felt the faint aura come off me the way it does, and I knew exactly what they were all looking at. Quentin was still trying. They flipped my hourglass and started the clock. A minute later, Quentin got in, and they flipped his. Now, Quentin's best was 2 hourglasses. That was his record, and it was the best number in that room by a wide margin, and he knew it, and it was why he'd taken the bet. He opened his eyes at the end of 2 and expected applause. What he got was silence, because nobody was looking at him. The 3rd hourglass has arrived. He heard that from somewhere over his shoulder, and I would give a lot to have seen his face, but my eyes were shut, and I was busy. I came out at the end of the 3rd. Dylan let out a breath he'd been holding for about 10 minutes. No wonder, he said, mostly to himself. His talent's worse than mine, but he condensed the rune in almost no time. That's an absurd level of proficiency. We've all been at this for a month. Then, out loud, Quentin, you lost. Quentin stood there with 7 pairs of eyes on him and turned a color I don't have a name for. He pulled a booklet out of his coat, threw it on the floor, and walked out of the house like a man who urgently needed air. I picked the Lionheart Night method up off the ground and stood there holding the best thing that had ever happened to me. Liam, you're amazing. I'm Chloe Davies. Red hair, big grin, 0 shyness. Marcus, you absolutely have to share your meditation experience. The big one. Bethany, white dress, quiet. Finn. Luke. Dylan, being Dylan, closed the sale immediately. Liam, welcome. We hope you'll share your meditation experience with us. Of course, if you need cantrips, we can share those. I think everyone would be happy to. I've got a few rank 0 cantrips here. If you want to learn a night method, I can share my experience with that. They were all talking at once, offering things, because compared to being able to meditate for 3 hourglasses, books were nothing. I looked around that room at 6 enthusiastic children handing me pieces of the machine. Welcome to serve, I said. I walked home at 10 under a silver moon with a noble family's night method under one arm and a sheet of paper listing 2 more cantrips in my hand, and I did some thinking. Something had been bothering me. The housing area, the rows of stone boxes we'd been dumped in, was mostly empty. But the school takes a new batch of apprentices almost every year, so where's everybody? You know where they are. I knew where they were. I'd seen one of them go into the ground as a puddle on my first morning, and I'd seen 2 more on the walk to class, and the answer wasn't complicated. They died. Outside, mostly. Some of them inside. If you're unlucky, you might die mysteriously one day and become a corpse by the roadside. That wasn't a fear. That was an observation. I'd watched it happen twice in a month, on a nice campus, in the safe part. So I read the night method that night. Nights are a physical thing. Chi blood, you push it around your body until your body gets better. 2 tiers. A night is 2 or 3 times a normal person's limit. A great night breaks the ceiling entirely and goes up to 5. The Lionheart method is apparently the best in the kingdom, and the book was extremely clear that the very first step, sensing your own chi blood, is exceptionally challenging and takes most people a long, frustrating time. It took me 4 minutes. I sat there with a strange warm current sliding around inside my chest and thought, am I a night genius? No, obviously not. I'm a guy with a progress bar, but you take the wins. 3 days of that, and the chewy blood made a full circuit and settled into a ring around my neck, and I opened my eyes as a night attendant, which is the rank below night, which is the rank below anything. Strength. Night attendant, 1 of 100. New line on the panel, a whole new category. And I made a note of the important part, which was not the strength. The important part was, the panel accepts non-magical knowledge, which meant the machine didn't run on wizardry, it ran on learning things. I was still turning that over when I got the reward math straight in my head, and it went like this. 5 magic stones for finishing 5 weeks early. 4 of those buys a book of 100 cantrips. 100 cantrips is, if the pattern holds, 100 talent. 100 talent is more than I currently have. I needed those stones like I'd never needed anything. 8 days later, the second quarter of the rune. 11 days after the first. Too slow, and I knew it. 2 parts left. 9 days on the clock if I wanted the full 5 stones. But the panel had been busy. Talent. 101, 4th rank star. Basic meditation method, proficient, 190 of 200. Light spell had gone great master. That was the 3rd point. Breeze and dust, 2 cantrips traded out of the Mutual Aid Society. We're climbing. None of that was the interesting part. The interesting part was 190 out of 200 on the meditation method itself. I'd been so busy grinding cantrips for talent that I'd almost missed the obvious thing. The meditation method is knowledge too, and it has a bar, and the bar was nearly full. The next day it filled. Skill, basic meditation method, mastery, 1 of 300. I sat down to see what that bought me, and I did not get up for a very long time. 1 hourglass, 2, 3. That had been my record, the thing that had won me a night method and a room full of allies. 4. I came out of it around 4 hourglasses with my head clear and my hands steady, and I ran the numbers twice because they were stupid. Quality of the meditation up 30%, duration up 30%. Which meant that at 5 sessions a day, I was now doing roughly 1.5 times the total meditation I'd been doing, which put me, a 5th class talent with a paperwork error, level with the best 4th class kids in the school. I used to think about the gap talent makes, I said out loud, to the wet floor. The gap experience makes is just as bad. And that's when I finally understood why wizards are like this. Why they hoard. Why the school sells a book for the price of a castle. Why a man will kill you on a public square rather than let you keep something. It's not that knowledge is valuable here. It's that knowledge is strength, directly, mechanically, the same way food is calories. Every book is a level. Every technique someone teaches you is a piece of them they can't get back. I'd been thinking of this place as a school with an unusually aggressive dropout policy. It's not a school, it's a bank. And everybody in it is trying to make a withdrawal. 2 days later, class. Arthur asked who had part 2. Dylan raised his hand. So did a kid named Callum. I didn't. That was the first time I did it on purpose, and it became a habit that lasted years. There was no advantage in raising my hand. The reward was for finishing the whole rune, not for progress reports. Showing off in that room bought me exactly nothing and cost me the one thing I actually needed, which was for nobody to look at me too long. So I sat there with a completed second quarter in my head and my hand in my lap, and Arthur moved on. After class, I left fast, the way I always did. Dylan got up to follow me, and somebody called him back. Blaze. There were 3 third-class talents in our batch. Blaze, blonde and permanently sure of himself. Orion, whose voice came out sharp like a bird's. Thorn, who looked at the rest of us the way you look at weather. They'd formed their own group, obviously. And now they were recruiting Dylan because Dylan was the best of the 4th-class kids and everybody knew it. He said yes on the spot. Of course he did. Then he said, But can I bring someone? I have a friend who's pretty talented. Who? Liam. No, Blaze said. His talent isn't good enough. Not just anyone can join us, said Orion in that bird voice. And Thorn, who didn't even bother looking up. A stinking serf from the countryside. Dylan didn't argue. What would he argue with? They were right. On paper, they were completely, factually right, and Dylan was a person who could count. But he did do one thing, and it turned out to matter more than any of them knew. He asked Blaze a real question. Boss Blaze, can I ask a meditation question? When I'm doing it, I always feel like the connections between the parts of the rune aren't smooth enough. Blaze thought about it. Seriously, to his credit. He wasn't being lazy. He genuinely considered it, and then he gave the honest answer of a person who has never had to solve this problem because it never happened to him. Just try more. There's no easy way. Dylan nodded thoughtfully and went away with nothing. That night at the Mutual Aid Society, he asked me the same question. I was sitting in the middle of a circle of people asking me things, which was becoming normal, and Dylan waited his turn and then laid it out. The parts don't line up, the seams are rough. Every time I join them, it feels like they're fighting. I raised an eyebrow. That's the question? He tensed. Is it hard? No. I just thought of several ways to do it in about a second, and I was trying to work out which one's simplest. He stared at me. Several? Here's the thing. I was a kid from a world with algebra. Not a genius, not a prodigy, just a normal middle schooler from a place where 1,000 years of very bored people had worked out how to describe where things are in space so that other people could put them back exactly. Every wizard in that room was trying to build a 4-part shape by feel, by eye, by repetition like a potter. I said, fix the position of the runes first, pin them, then build them. Coordinates. I gave a room full of 12-year-old wizards a coordinate system. Dylan turned it over for about 10 seconds and his whole face changed. Liam, he said, you're a genius. And privately he thought something else, which he told me much later. He thought, is Blaze actually stronger than Liam? Not necessarily. He was wrong, incidentally. Blaze was much stronger than me. But it was a nice thought, and it cost him nothing, and it turned out to be the most important thought anybody had about me that year, because Dylan was the only person in that school who ever looked at me and thought smart instead of 5th class. He handed over a book on night cultivation as a fair trade, and I took it, and that was that. But I sat with it afterward, and I found the second thing I owned that nobody else had, not the panel. The panel was the engine. The fuel was that I came from somewhere with different books. There were things I knew that no wizard in the Emerald Shadow Forest had ever needed to think about because they'd never had a reason to. Of course, the reverse was also true, and much more urgent. What I actually need, I said to a stack of borrowed books that night, is more knowledge about this world. A week later, the 3rd quarter. By then, things had shifted around me in ways I mostly noticed by accident. Spencer, the guy who decided I was an idiot, joined the Mutual Aid Society. He'd resisted for a while on principle. Then he watched Dylan, the founder, cross the room to ask me a question, and he did the math and came over. He started calling me Lord Liam. I hated it, and it stuck. I hadn't tried to become anything. I just kept answering questions correctly, because I could feel when an answer was right and nobody else could. And after about 6 weeks of that, I was the center of a group I hadn't founded, in a school I was hiding in. Dylan noticed. He'd built the thing, and I'd become the thing. And there wasn't a moment where it happened, and he was too smart not to see it and too decent to mind out loud. Quentin noticed too, from outside, and he did not have the same reaction. He'd been talking about me for weeks, the serf, the peasant, the low blood, and it had been going badly for him because I kept being useful. But he had one comfort, and he carried it around like a hot brick. Liam still hasn't condensed the second part, because I never raised my hand, and Quentin had reached part 3. A peasant's a peasant, he told people. Bloodline is low. Another week. Stonehouse, evening, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 quarters, condensed one after another with no drama at all, because I'd already pinned the coordinates of every single one, and I knew exactly where they went. What should have been the hardest step in the whole 3 months was, for me, assembly. They came together, and then they didn't dissolve. They stayed, a single completed rune sitting in the middle of my mind, giving off a faint steady light, and the whole space around it went still and solid in a way it had never been. Strength. First class wizard apprentice, 1 of 100. Knight attendant, 60 of 100. Talent, 103. 4th rank star. I sat in the dark for a while with my hands on my knees. First class wizard apprentice. Not a mop, not property, not a puddle. It was dusk, and it was the last day of the 5 weeks early window, and I'd made it by hours. The body changes hit while I was sitting there. My eyesight went. I could see dust in the corner of the wall across the room, individually, in the dark. Everything felt unlatched, like something had been strapped around me for 12 years and had come off. I got up and ran through the night method in the open space, and where it used to give me 2 or 3 points around, it now gave 5, because mental energy makes you better at owning a body. Then I stood there in the dark, grinning like an idiot, and I made myself sit back down and think, because there was a decision to make, and it was the biggest one of the whole 3 months. Tomorrow, in class, Arthur was going to ask, and I could keep hiding. I thought about it for a long time, genuinely, because everything in me said, hide, hide, hide. You saw the puddle, you know the rules here. But here's the problem with hiding. My machine eats knowledge. It doesn't eat magic stones. Stones just buy knowledge. It eats books, techniques, methods, teachings. And in this school, knowledge is the most tightly held thing there is. Nobody sells it cheap. Nobody hands it over. Arthur wouldn't even answer a question unless you'd earned it. But they hand it to geniuses. They chase geniuses. They give geniuses discounts and recommendations in their old notes. Every institution in the history of everywhere does this. So the play wasn't to hide. The play was to be a very specific kind of visible, not powerful. Powerful gets you robbed, not rich. Rich gets you murdered. Talented. Talented gets you invested in. I decided, right there on a wet floor at 12 years old, to spend the next several years pretending to be a slightly better version of exactly what I was, and to make absolutely sure nobody ever saw the engine underneath. Also, Arthur was going to know anyway. A second-rank wizard apprentice can feel a completed rune from across a room. The fluctuation is unmistakable. The choice wasn't hide or reveal. The choice was whether I got to look like I meant it. I was late to class. Arthur was already there. Good morning, Instructor Arthur. I nodded politely and went to my seat, and I felt him look at me a half-second longer than usual. He'd noticed. He also, according to his own records, had a student in front of him whose talent was 5th class, and a 5th class does not complete the rune in 11 weeks. So what he actually concluded was that the crystal ball had made an error. Talent detection isn't perfect. Even top wizards can't fully explain mental energy. It happens. The room, meanwhile, was loud. Blaze and Orion had finished their runes. They were standing in the middle of a crowd with their chins up, and the crowd was doing what crowds do. 5 weeks early. Is this what 3rd-class talent is? Chloe, envious and not hiding it. Yes, said Bethany. Why? Said Marcus, to nobody, in the voice of a man watching his life get smaller. Dylan pressed his lips together and said nothing. Then Arthur came in and taught, and the entire class stared through him because nobody could concentrate, Blaze and Orion included. I took notes. I always took notes. It wasn't a bit. Every lecture was worth a point or two of something, and I'd figured that out weeks ago. You learn faster when someone teaches you. The panel is very clear about this. Discussion and instruction move the bar in a way solo grinding doesn't. Arthur's eyes went over me, and his pupils dilated, just slightly, for about a quarter of a second. Interesting, he said to himself. Then the roll-up. Raise your hand if you've condensed the first part of the rune. Most hands, and a few kids who went white and started shaking because they hadn't, and there were 3 weeks left, and everyone in that room could do subtraction. Nobody looked at them. That's the part I remember. 30 kids, and not one of them turned around. Part 2. About half. Not me. Several members of the Mutual Aid Society noticed that and exchanged looks. Part 3. Quentin's hand shot up and he turned around in his seat to make sure I saw it. So what if his meditation's better than mine, said his entire face. Talent decides. I did not raise my hand. Liam? Dylan whispered, confused. Spencer elbowed me. Liam. I didn't move. Difficult? Spencer said, and something flickered behind his eyes. No, that can't be right. Can it? Part 4. Callum's hand went up in the distance. Dylan, who was still short of 4, stared at that, then turned to look at me, sitting motionless, and his face slowly stopped working. Even then he didn't get there. He couldn't. He thought highly of me, and he still, instinctively, at the level below thinking, believed he was ahead of me because his talent was better. That's not contempt. That's just what a number does to you when you've been told it's who you are. Raise your hand if you've successfully built your mental power Blaze. 3 hands went up. Blaze, Orion, me. It was like somebody set off an alchemical bomb in that classroom. Absolute, ringing silence, and then 30 heads turning at once, and not one of them turned toward the first 2. As expected, Arthur murmured, watching me with an expression I'd never seen on him. That fluctuation can't be faked. How is that possible? Nobody dared laugh. Nobody dared suggest a joke. Not in front of Arthur. Not about this. Which meant that unless I had lost my mind, it was true. You must be joking, Dylan said. He said it out loud, to nobody, completely blank. Hiss. This is even more exaggerated than I guessed, said Spencer, and his eyes had gone from confusion to something worse. Admiration. Chloe and Bethany pressed their lips together and stared, and Quentin sat in his chair with his mouth slightly open and his eyes on my hand. It's fake, he said, isn't it? Then quieter, and I only heard it because I was listening for it. Why should I? Because I'm a serf. His lips were trembling. There was something in his eyes that wasn't shock anymore. I've thought about that moment a lot since. That was the second it stopped being about status for him. That was where it turned into the other thing, the one that eventually got a lot of people killed. Blaze and Orion looked at each other, and I watched both of them arrive at the same sentence, which was that the boy they'd refused 11 days ago had crossed the line at the same time they had. This is absolutely outrageous. And me? I just sat there, calm, ordinary, mildly pleased, a young man who'd worked hard and gotten a nice result. Liam, you three, come with me. I'll take you to register. I got up and walked out through a room where every single person was watching me, and I was a completely different object than I'd been when I walked in, and I hadn't done anything that morning except keep my hand down for as long as possible. The registration building was a castle, dark blue-black, the whole thing, with 2 giant stone wolves at the gate. There was an owl on one of the wolves, half a meter tall, feathers with a blue steel sheen on them like the thing had been forged, eyes closed. Then the eyes opened, and something came off it that put all 3 of us on our back foot, and Arthur too. Arthur, a second-rank wizard apprentice, almost lost his footing. Little Arthur, it's been a long time. The owl relaxed. The owl talked. The owl had a voice like a cheerful uncle. Pip, Arthur said with his hand flat on his chest. I'm here to register new apprentices. Only 3? This is the first batch. All right, all right. The owl raised a wing and dabbed at its eye. But little Arthur, you never even came to see me at the end. I, Arthur sighed, took out a few magic stones and handed them over. The owl's whole demeanor changed instantly. Go in. We went in. Instructor, Blaze asked, what was that owl? That's Lord Pip. The demonic beast contracted to Lord Blackwell. He guards the castle. Arthur didn't break stride. He's a bit greedy. You'll see later. Lord Blackwell, the founder of the school. That owl was the founder's pet, and it had just extorted a second-rank wizard apprentice for pocket change in broad daylight, and Arthur had paid without an argument. I filed that, both halves of it. Inside, Arthur walked us through what the school actually is. 3 departments, secret source, the core, the records, the personnel, the knowledge, logistics, the gardens, the alchemists, the potion makers, combat, guards, patrols, garrison. We turned into a room on the first floor that was several hundred square meters, with runes carved along every wall running out into candlesticks, and the flames on those candlesticks were white, and they did not look like fire. At the back sat a wizard in a gray robe whose eyes were gone. In their place, 2 small white flames. Something white flashed past us so fast I didn't see it, and my fingertips stung. A drop of my blood floated up, drifted across the room, touched the wall, and lit as a ghost-colored flame. The white thing was already back at the gray wizard's shoulder. A little white snake. Let's go, Arthur said to 3 children who had entirely stopped functioning. Next room, black iron badges, the mark of a first-class wizard apprentice, a set of proper wizard robes, and 5 magic stones, each about half the size of an egg, black, crystalline, and full of something that made my teeth itch when I held them, plus 1 more every month, plus access to certain areas of the school. That last one, Arthur pointed out, was the most valuable thing on the list, and I believed him. At the gate, he gave us the rest of the schedule. 1 month off, then 6 months of advanced study, then an assessment, then assignment to departments. I can only remind you, he said, that there are significant differences between departments, especially between core and peripheral ones. Resource disparities can be several times over, so you'd better not let your guard down. Then Orion and Blaze left, and he called me back. Come with me. We walked to a room. He went in and came out with a book. Instructor, what is this? Cantrip catalog. I bought it a while ago. Don't you need it? I can sell it to you. I did not say anything for a second, because I was busy not making a face. Then he asked me something that had nothing to do with anything. Liam, how proficient are you in the meditation method? How long can you hold a single session? 4 hourglasses, I suppose. Which was the truth from about a week earlier. Post-breakthrough I could do 5 or 6, but I'd learned a very useful trick by then, which is that the best lie is a real number from the past. Really. He looked at me for a moment with an expression I couldn't read, and then he read himself out loud, which people do more than they realize. So that's how. Otherwise, he could never have finished alongside Blaze. Magic talent. This kid has magic talent. Pity about the meditation talent. Well then, he said, I've been using this cantrip encyclopedia for a while. Just give me 4 magic stones. 4. For a book that costs 5 new. From a man who did not have to sell it to me at all. I got the stones out so fast I nearly dropped them. I flipped it open on the walkout. 100 cantrips, 95 of which I'd never seen, and notes. His notes. In the margins, all through it, a second-rank wizard apprentice's own working annotations. Thank you, instructor. You should thank yourself. He turned to go, and then he stopped, and he said the thing I would come back to about 6 separate times over the next 4 years. Also, the academy isn't as safe as you think. Be careful. And he left. I stood there holding 200 talent points in a used book and thought about the phrasing. Not outside isn't safe. He'd already told us that in class, loudly, with a grin. The academy isn't as safe as you think, which is a very different sentence, delivered without a grin, by a man who had no reason to say it at all. That night at the Mutual Aid Society, I felt the temperature of the room change around me, envy mostly, a little shock. Zico, my desk mate, who had appointed himself my hype man sometime in the last month without asking, practically vibrating. Boss Liam, you're amazing. And Dylan looking at me with an expression I recognized because I'd have had it too. He'd founded this thing. He'd invited me in. And its center of gravity had moved quietly over about 6 weeks, and there was nothing to be angry about because nobody had done anything wrong. He couldn't change it. Neither could I. Everything's natural. 4 days, cantrip after cantrip to Great Master, talent 104. And something happened to Dylan that deserves putting down properly, because people don't do this. Blaze's group got tired of him running between 2 tables. They gave him a choice, us or them. Now, Blaze, Orion, Thorn, and Callum were 4 third-class talents with money, and the Mutual Aid Society was a study group full of 4th-class kids led by a serf. I fully expected him to leave. I'd have left. I'd have shaken his hand on the way out and meant it. He stayed. Somebody asked him why, and he said, "The first page of the meditation method says a wizard's true power comes from wisdom, so I choose to stay with the Mutual Aid Society," which is a deeply stupid reason to turn down 4 rich third-class talents. It's also the only reason anyone ever gave me in that school that wasn't about resources, and I never forgot it. And years later, when I had things to give away, he was the first person I gave them to. Quentin, on the other hand, went and joined Blaze's group, still stuck on part 3, still making no progress, and now with 4 powerful friends. Everybody's got a strategy. 3 days after that, Blaze came and knocked on my door during a society meeting. "Is there something you need?" We didn't hate each other. He'd refused to let me into his club, and I thought he was a bit of an ass, and that was the entire relationship. Here's the thing. I'm planning to go down to the market at the foot of the mountain in 3 days. I figured it'd be safer with more people. I'd like to invite you along. The market. Down the mountain, in the town, outside the school, where you buy things, where the cantrip encyclopedias are, where presumably everything I would ever want was for sale. I'm not going. He blinked. All right, he said, and turned around and left because he genuinely didn't care much either way. Dylan asked me about it later. So did a couple of others who were going. I said something vague about being busy, and the real reason stayed where it was. The academy isn't as safe as you think. If a second-rank wizard apprentice tells you the inside isn't safe, then whatever he thinks about the outside, he didn't think it was worth mentioning. Also, and this is less noble, I had 1 magic stone left. There was nothing at that market I could afford. The entire trip was a social event, and I'd have been paying for it with the only thing I couldn't buy back, which is the day it took. So on the 3rd day, I stood in the square with Dylan and watched more than a dozen of them head out. Blaze, Orion, Callum, Thorn, and a crowd around them. With that many people, there shouldn't be any safety issues, right? Dylan said. Right, I said, and it did look safe. That's the thing. It looked completely, obviously safe. 14 wizards on a cleared road inside the school's own territory in daylight. I went home and studied cantrips. That afternoon there was noise outside. I pushed the door open and there was a column of wizards in dark red robes moving fast toward the gate. Patrol team. Liam! Dylan, running, still shouting from 30 meters out. Liam, something big has happened. He arrived with no air in him at all. They're all dead. Except Blaze and a few others. Everyone else is dead. What? They were near the market. Something attacked them. They scattered and ran. Only Blaze and a couple got out. His eyes were doing something I'd never seen them do. The guards already went. I stood in my doorway and thought about the number. More than a dozen kids. Third-class talents among them, the best in our batch, the ones we'd all been measuring ourselves against for 3 months. Orion, with his bird voice. Callum, who'd been the fastest at part 4. Gone, in an afternoon, on a cleared road, inside the school's own territory. That's really dangerous, I said, which is the stupidest thing I have ever said out loud. If you don't have the ability to protect yourself, I added, try not to go out. Even a first-class wizard apprentice is nothing before you learn actual witchcraft. 14 of them together, and to whatever came out of the trees, they were 14 chicks in a box. I went inside and I did not study cantrips. I stood there for a while, and then I said, out loud, tonight we break through tonight. Night attendant was at 95. I'd been planning to finish it the next day, casually, whenever. Turns out it was not a casual day. That night, the QE blood came up hot and the ring settled and something in my chest clicked over. Strength. First class wizard apprentice, 1 of 100. Knight, 1 of 100. At least 1.5 times what I'd been, which meant that at 12 I could probably out-wrestle a grown man and would keep gaining as I grew. It also meant, when I was honest with myself, roughly nothing. If a wandering wizard came out of the trees at me, being able to out-wrestle a farmer was going to help me the way a good haircut helps in a car crash. But it's still not enough, I said. We'll have to wait for more advanced learning. 3 months from then, the advanced program would start handing out actual witchcraft, real spells, for free. I could buy some now. I had 1 stone and a book of party tricks. I could also stay inside a school where nothing bad had ever happened to me and let the free stuff come. He'll stay in the academy, I said in the third person, to a wall, like a man reassuring a nervous animal. Surely he won't encounter any danger. Now, I'm going to tell you what happened in a room that night that I did not learn about until much later, because you deserve to know before I did. 2 people, 1 candle. One of them was fat and pockmarked and 14 and had been having a very bad month. The other was a grown man in a black robe. Quentin, well done. Here's your reward. A vial went across the table. Take this potion, and you should be able to condense the mental power blaze. Quentin picked it up. His hands were sweating. Brother, more than a dozen people died at once. Won't they trace it back to us? Little brother, you worry too much. If they hadn't run into the patrol team, the rest would have died too. I'm well prepared. They won't trace anything. Brother, his name was Alaric. He'd been at this school for years. He'd contacted Quentin a few days earlier, and Quentin had gone and quietly dusted Blaze's group with a special powder so that whatever was waiting near the market would know exactly which children to take. He'd marked 14 people who had never done anything to him so that a potion would arrive. It's a pity not all of them died, Quentin said, and that annoying Liam didn't get involved either. Just focus on your meditation this period. Don't waste time on trivial matters. Quentin nodded. He understood which trivial matter was meant. Start reading the potion studies books I gave you. That'll give you an advantage in the advanced stage. The most profitable courses at this school are all potion related. I understand, brother. And he stopped being jealous of me around then, honestly. Once he learned how the school really worked, once he had Alaric feeding him resources and information, he stopped caring about the serf who'd beaten him at meditation. He'll be left behind soon enough. That was Quentin's assessment. I want you to hold on to that because it's going to come back around, and when it does, it comes back around hard. The official verdict came a few days later, in class, from Arthur, who walked in with a face like a closed door. Most of the dead had been his students. That was going to hurt his evaluation. It's confirmed that it was a wandering wizard. He was after the magic stones they were carrying. He hasn't been caught. Blaze looked up. He'd been looking at the floor for days. That's it? And Arthur gave him one short, indifferent glance and said the sentence that finished the education of everyone in that room. Otherwise what? Do you think the Academy would go to that much trouble to avenge them? What value do they have that would make the Academy bother? Blaze put his head back down. The school could have done it. There are ways. But the cost of finding one wandering wizard in 1,000 kilometers of forest was more than a dozen apprentices were worth, and the accounting had been done, and that was that. In the extraordinary world, I wrote in my notes, people are worth even less. Then I went back to studying, because gossip is fine, but you shouldn't neglect your work. A month passed the way months do when you're grinding. Talent, 114, 4th rank. Basic meditation method, mastery, 200 of 300. Lionheart Night method, Night edition, expert 10 of 400. 8 points of talent in a month, roughly 1 every 4 days. 6 meditations a day now, each one worth more than the old ones. The night method was going absurdly fast. It turns out that a body that's growing anyway plus a bar that never goes down is a very good combination. The meditation method itself was crawling. 2% in a month. That thing was a mountain. It takes years to go from first class to second class apprentice, Arthur was saying at the front. Unless you use certain rare materials, which are very difficult to obtain. However, in the next 6 months, if you are good enough, you can obtain them. And then he read out the list of survivors. Blaze, Liam, Dylan, Chloe, Marcus, Zico, Kalen, Quentin, Finn. Congratulations on becoming members of the Holden Wizard School and entering a new stage of learning. 9 names out of a batch that started at 30-something. Then they took the others away. I'd like to skip this part. I'm not going to. They came in and they took them, and some of them went quietly, and some of them didn't. There was a boy near the front who dug his heels into the floor and kept saying, I don't want to, like the words were a spell that would work if he got the emphasis right. Lord Arthur, please. Please give me another chance. And Bethany went past. The girl in the white dress from the Mutual Aid Society, who'd been one of the faster ones, who'd been fine, who everyone assumed would make it, she'd gotten all the way to the final assembly and it had collapsed on her, and there was no time left to try again. She didn't say anything. She just went. Luke went. A bunch of faces I knew and a bunch I didn't. I sat in my seat and watched people I'd eaten dinner with become property, and I did the only honest thing available, which was to look straight at it. If I didn't have the panel, I said to myself, I'd be in that line. And I would have been. I want that on the record. I worked hard, genuinely, stupidly hard, more than almost anyone in that batch. And without the machine, I'd have been maybe slightly above average for a fifth-class talent, which is to say I'd have been walking out that door with Bethany. The classroom was very empty afterward. For the next 6 months, Arthur said calmly, as if nothing had just happened, because for him nothing had. Your studies are divided into 3 courses: meditation, practical witchcraft, and the basics of potion studies. Somebody asked why potions and not alchemy, since the school had an alchemy department. Simple, Arthur said. Because our school only has a complete foundation in potion studies. Complete. That word did a lot of work, and I heard it. So we'll be assigned to departments based on how well we do? Yes. After the assessment, you choose from the 3 departments. Then the departments select candidates based on scores, and only a few will become core members of each. And then he broke down the hierarchy, and it was uglier than I'd expected. Logistics. The potion department is the core, then magical plants, then alchemy. Alchemy is below the plant people. Combat, guard, patrol, garrison. Secret source takes almost nobody. The difference between the top and the bottom is several times the resources, plus permissions, plus everything else. Same school, same uniform, heaven and earth. I sat there and picked my target in about 4 seconds. Potion department, safe, rich, indoors. Nobody's shooting at the guy who makes the medicine, which meant it would be the most competitive thing in the building. Obviously, every person in that room with a working brain was going to want the same seat. A week later, we walked into the new classroom, and it was several times bigger than the old one, with a semicircular lectern at the middle like a stage for a play, and it was full. Wow, there are so many people, Chloe said next to me. She was in wizard robes now, and the robes had not entirely committed to covering her legs. The school isn't big, Dylan said, coming up behind, but it still controls several mortal kingdoms, you know. The wizarding world is still too vast, I said. I meant it more than they knew. I'd looked it up. The Emerald Shadow Forest goes on for thousands of kilometers, the size of the Amazon, back home, and I'd once flown over a corner of that on a map in a textbook. And this forest is an insignificant little woodland, a footnote, occupied by a handful of small forces, of which we are one. Don't be sentimental, boss. I saved seats. Zico, waving both arms from the good rows. We sat. People filed in, small groups everywhere, and then 3 people came in who had a moat. That's the only way to describe it. They walked in, and there was a circle of empty floor around them about 2 meters wide, and it moved with them because nobody wanted to be the person standing next to them. A girl with dark blue hair and blue eyes, cold as a coin. A boy nearly 1.9 meters tall who looked like a section of wall that had learned to walk, and a thin kid who coughed. I caught what people were whispering. Second-class talent. Here's what that meant to me at that moment. Up to then, my mental model was, 6th is dead, 5th is me, 4th is fine, 3rd is scary, 2 above me, 2 tiers of scary. But a tier isn't just double the meditations. That's only the visible part. The quality of each session, the rate the mind grows, all of it scales, and it scales together. 3rd to 2nd isn't twice. It's twice. Should we compete with these people? I said, mostly to myself. The kid sitting in front of me turned around. He was chubby and cheerful, and he looked at me the way you'd look at a dog that had asked to drive. What are you thinking, buddy? These second-tier students don't even need a test to decide which department they want. Besides, do you really think you can compete with them? Zico started to get up. It's all right, I said. It's all right. Because he'd done me a favor, and I don't mean that in a sarcastic way. I'd been 3 months on a winning streak. I'd beaten a duke's son in front of witnesses, become the center of a study group, finished the rune with the top 3, and gotten a second-rank wizard apprentice to sell me a book at a discount. You know what happens to 12-year-olds on winning streaks? They get arrogant and then they get killed. I'm a 4th-class talent with a paperwork error. Thank you, chubby stranger. Genuinely. Following the pace of cantrips, I said quietly, it takes at least 3 months to reach the 3rd tier. I hope the new courses give me some surprises. The first course was meditation, taught by a man with long curly hair and a hooked nose and a silver badge shaped like a shield with vines around it and an open book at the center. That's a 3rd-rank wizard apprentice, Chloe breathed. Marcus, who apparently knew things. Right. Iron, bronze, silver, gold. 1st, 2nd, third, and peak. And the book means secret source. Ours were black iron with an empty center. The center gets filled in when a department takes you. Hello everyone, I am Gareth Thorne. I'll be teaching this course from now on, every Monday. And then he told us the shape of the next 6 months in about 4 sentences. To advance from first class apprentice to second class, you need to condense at least 20 basic runes. 20. I'd built one in 11 weeks and nearly killed myself doing it. The final assessment is scored by rune count. 9 grades, C- to A+. 1 rune gets you a C-, 9 gets you an A+. However, if you're still at C- after 6 months, then I'm sorry, no department will want you. He didn't finish that sentence. He didn't need to. In addition, there are extra rewards. The top 10 by rune count get bonus magic stones, 10th place gets 1, and each place up adds another. The top 3 also receive potions. And he glanced at the 3 second-class talents when he said it, in a way that told everyone exactly how the top 3 were going to shake out. I sat there running arithmetic. Top 10 was 10 magic stones for first place. 10 magic stones was a cantrip encyclopedia and change. Then, mid-lecture, my proficiency ticked up by 1. I looked at the panel like it had spoken out of turn. Because Arthur's classes had never done that. Arthur's classes were a man reading a book at you. Gareth was teaching, structured, deliberate, aimed, and the machine registered it. A real lecture from a real third-rank wizard apprentice was worth actual proficiency, for free, just for sitting there and paying attention. I did some very fast math about the value of a weekly lecture over 6 months, and I promoted attend class from a chore to a strategy. Second course was witchcraft, and the teacher was a square-faced man with a silver badge with a flame in it, named Alistair. Rank 0 sorcery is different from cantrips. The biggest difference is that it requires the participation of the mental power blaze. The more runes involved, the greater the power. Then he had a dozen servants haul in a tree. Not a log. A tree. A trunk over a meter across, hauled in whole and set upright. Next, I'm going to introduce mental shock to you. Watch closely. He took a breath. Chilasso. Space rippled. You could see it, the way you can see air over a fire. The trunk tore in half. Not cut. Torn, the broken faces coming apart in long strips like something enormous had grabbed both ends and pulled. Every single one of us just stared. That was a meter of solid wood. That was one man saying one word. A test will be conducted in a month, Alistair said, brushing his hands. Top 10 get magic stones. Top 3 get additional witchcraft. Witchcraft as a prize. I sat forward so hard I nearly went over the desk. Because look, meditation, I was going to lose. I knew that already. 20 runes in 6 months against second-class talents is not a race I was in, but witchcraft is proficiency. Witchcraft is a bar. Can I get this to Great Master in a month? I said. Mental shock, beginner 1 of 100, third course. I walked in and stopped in the doorway. Instructor Arthur? He'd changed. Dark green robe now, and a bronze badge with a ring and a little pot at the center. Hello everyone, I'm Arthur, from the potion department. Rank 0, intermediate pharmacist. The following course will be conducted by me. Rank 0, intermediate pharmacist. That word again, intermediate, which meant there was a below and an above. This course covers the basics of potion studies, familiarity with the magical plants of the Emerald Shadow Forest, basic first aid, and potion making. 3 months of drug identification tests, 3 months of practical assessment, and a final exam involving unpredictable preparation. He held up a bright green clover. All right. Today, the 3-leaf hemostatic herb of the Emerald Shadow Forest. I wrote down every word. Magical plant identification, rank 0, beginner 1 of 100. There it was. The department I'd already decided to spend the rest of my life in, and its foundational skill had just appeared on my panel with a bar under it. That was the moment I stopped worrying about whether I'd get into the potion department and started worrying about how long it would take. That night, I stood outside my stone house and said "Chilasso" at a chair. Mental energy surged. The chair fell over, slowly, with visible reluctance, like it was doing me a favor. Mental shock, beginner 2 of 100. 1 point per cast, and each cast costs mental energy, and I could manage maybe 20 a day before I was empty. 20 a day. 300 to master. Expert in a month if I was lucky. Was expert going to be enough? Against 3 second-class talents and a room full of nobles? I stood there in the dark, holding a fallen chair, doing sums, and the answer was probably not. I'm going to keep telling you about the other room, because you should know what's going on in it. Another candle. Another table. This is a lesser energy potion, Alaric said, pushing a pale blue vial across to his brother. It relieves mental fatigue. You can practice more spells this way. In a month, you should be able to use mental shock proficiently. Is proficient enough? Quentin asked. According to past practice, mastering it will at least get you into the top 10. Witchcraft isn't as simple as you think. There's also meditation. I'll guide you on that. Quentin turned the vial over in his fingers and thought about me because he could not help himself. Brother, is it possible that some geniuses could get proficient fast, reach expert level? Alaric made a face. What nonsense are you talking about, unless you improved every single time and never encountered any setbacks at all? That's impossible. Quentin relaxed. Alaric, a grown second-rank wizard apprentice who had murdered a dozen children that season, had just described my exact situation out loud and then dismissed it as physically impossible, and he was completely right too. That's the thing about the machine. It's not that it's powerful. Lots of things are powerful. It's that it's not on the list. 20 days. Talent, 119, 4th rank star. Basic meditation method, expert 1 of 400. Lionheart Knight method, Knight's edition, expert 130 of 400. Mental shock, proficient 150 of 300. Magical plant identification, beginner 20 of 100. The meditation method broke through to expert, which put my proficiency roughly level with a 3rd class talents. Not my talent, my technique, same output, different route. The second rune wasn't happening. Turns out you need a certain volume of mental energy before you can even attempt one, and the panel measured that as apprentice progress. I needed 5, I had 3. Some of the Mutual Aid Society tried to force it anyway. Every one of them failed, and a couple of them got hurt doing it. Not badly. But they had to lie down for a few days, and there's something horrible about watching a friend get injured by trying too hard at a thing in his own head. Mental shock was going well at least. Expert before the test easily, and magical plant identification was at 20, and I had no idea if that was good or terrible because it was the first skill I'd ever had where I couldn't tell. Let's wait for the first test, I decided. 10 days later, the night before, the Mutual Aid Society had a little pep rally in Dylan's room. Dylan, Chloe, Zico, Marcus, Finn. Tomorrow's the first assessment. Everyone do your best. Come on. 5 kids with their fists in the air. I want you to remember that we were all quite hopeful. Meditation test. Gareth put a crystal ball on a table and we lined up. Put your hand on it. The ball tells him how many runes you've made. He writes it down. The Mutual Aid Society was at the back of the line, which meant we got to watch. Lynn, 1. Rhodes, 1. 1. 1. 1. Almost everyone. The whole room. 1 rune. 1 rune. 1 rune. And the further down the line it went, the more people started to look sick because 1 was where you started. Then it changed. Blaze, 2. Gareth nodded. Decent for a 3rd class. More 3rd class kids came through. 2, 2, 2. Serafina, 3. The room went quiet. The blue-haired girl took her hand off the ball and walked away without looking at anyone. 3 runes, 2 months of work in 1 month, and then the tall one, Brogan, 3, and the coughing one, Griffin, 3. I stood in line and looked at my apprentice progress, which was at 4 out of 5, and felt the specific flavor of despair that comes from being close. At least they're not being compared to us, I said. They weren't, technically. Different bracket. The 2nd class kids didn't even have to test for department placement. Then it was our turn. 1, 1, 1, 1. I put my hand on the ball and it said 1, and even though I'd known for a week that it would say 1, it still landed like a slap. Tsk, tsk, tsk. This won't do, everybody. Laughter from up front. Quentin had his hand on the crystal ball. It said 2. How is that possible? Dylan said, out loud, staring. Because we knew Quentin. Quentin was a 4th class talent, same as Dylan, worse than Dylan. Quentin had been stuck on part 3 for weeks while the rest of us finished. Quentin was a joke we all shared, and Quentin had double what any of us had. Gareth didn't even hesitate. You've taken medication, haven't you? Yes, Quentin said. But it's just a recovery potion. Gareth nodded and wrote it down. Because that's legal. Potions that increase mental energy are absolutely prohibited during this phase. The school needs to see your potential, not your budget. But potions that restore it? Perfectly fine. Everyone's allowed. They're just so expensive that no ordinary apprentice can ever afford one, so the rule has never mattered, until it did. We went back to our seats. Quentin kept his eyes on us the whole way. Medicine? Chloe mouthed at me. Only the top 3 were supposed to get potions. Does Quentin have a background? Results came out that afternoon. Top 3, Serafina, Brogan, Griffin, obviously. The rest of the top 10, 3rd class talents. Blaze came 7th, Quentin came 10th. Then, further down, much further down, in the part of the list where you have to run your finger along the line to find yourself, Liam is ranked 47th, Dylan is 57th. 47. The Mutual Aid Society took that hard. In our old class, we'd been the top of the pile. We'd been the ones who made it, the survivors, the 9. And then they'd merged us into the real school, and it turned out our whole class had been the shallow end. Blaze, some distance away, got his face back for the first time in a month. He'd had a rough few weeks. He'd watched his friends die and then run. But talent was talent, and here was the ranking, and everything was back where it belonged. Quentin was, I think, genuinely happy for the first time since I'd met him. And me? I wasn't disappointed. I want to be honest about that because it sounds like a pose, and it isn't. 47th was correct. 47th was an accurate measurement of my mental energy against everyone else's, and it would keep being accurate for a while yet, and getting upset about an accurate measurement is a waste of a perfectly good afternoon. Failure is temporary, and more to the point, I don't have to lose every course. Witchcraft test. Energy intensity is the unit we use to describe the power of witchcraft, Alistair said, walking around a wooden doll wrapped in a layer of gray jelly. One energy intensity is the power of a pure elemental missile fired with one standard unit of mental energy, which can probably smash your head open quite easily. Cheerful. You'll attack the alchemy puppet. It'll announce the number. I'll rank you by it. First, Zico. Zico nearly fell over. He turned around and looked at me. Come on, I said. He walked up, took a breath, and did the incantation. 3 seconds. That's what the incantation takes. 3 full seconds. Everyone had been told this. Chilazo! An arc of pressure crossed the space and dented the doll, and the dent came right back out. 0.2. Alistair wrote it down without any particular reaction. Poor spell control, poor mental energy management, not proficient, normal. Second person, 0.2, then 0.3, then 0.3, then 0.3. Then a boy went up who had 2 mental power runes, and the number was 0.6. Straight doubling. 2 runes, twice the power, because the spell just takes whatever you feed it. It is, if you think about it for 1 second, completely unfair to everyone with 1 rune. But as Arthur said, fairness is based on equal strength. Quentin went up, 0.7. He looked directly at me on the way back and I gave him nothing. Blaze, 0.6. And then, 1. The whole room came awake. Serafina, 1. Of course, 1 full energy intensity, the thing that can smash your head, from a 12-year-old girl who looked bored the entire time. Brogan, 0.9. Griffin, 0.8. Top 3, locked. Everyone relaxed in the way people relax when the world confirms it works the way they thought. Next, Liam. Nobody looked up. Nobody turned around. Alistair didn't even lift his head from his notes. He'd seen my meditation ranking. He knew what a 47th place is. The only people watching were the Mutual Aid Society, Blaze out of habit, and Quentin out of hatred. Start. Good. I said the incantation. It took me less than a second, not because I'm fast, because I'd said that incantation something like 400 times in a stone house at night, and at some point around cast number 200 my mouth had stopped needing my brain's permission. Chilazo, the alchemy puppet went bang. 1.2. There was a pause of maybe half a second where nothing happened at all. Then Alistair's head came up so fast I hurt his neck. 1.2? He said it out loud, to nobody, which is not a thing instructors do, because he could feel the fluctuation. He knew, with certainty, from across the field, that I'd used exactly 1 mental power blaze. 1. Same as Zico, same as the kid scoring 0.3. His first thought, and I don't blame him, was that the puppet was broken. But it was new. He'd taken delivery from the alchemy department himself that week. His second thought was that a genuinely proficient mental shock user might reach one. I was at 1.2, unless. He looked up at me, and his whole face changed. I was surprised too, by the way, not at the number, at what the number meant. I'd just beaten 3 second-class talents in front of everyone, in a subject where they were supposed to be untouchable. The room started making noise. 1.2? There's something wrong with the puppet, isn't there? Quentin, who had been staring at me the entire time. Even Serafina raised her head. Serafina, who as far as anyone could tell had not been curious about anything since birth, looked over at me with something that was almost interest. The other 2 second-class talents looked like they'd seen a ghost, and I understood why. Everything in their entire lives to that point had taught them one lesson, over and over, in every subject. Talent is power. Talent determines strength. And here was a nobody with a broken talent score putting up a bigger number than any of them. As expected of the boss, said Zico, clicking his tongue like he'd known all along. I hope it's not an accident, Chloe said to Dylan. 1 more time, said Alistair. He said it directly to me, over everyone else, in a completely flat voice. Sir, my mental energy hasn't recovered. Don't use the mental power blaze, which meant it would do nothing. 0 power, 0 effect, a completely pointless spell, which was not what he was looking at. So I did it dry. Words, gesture, structure, nothing coming out the other end. Really, Alistair said. He'd been watching the technique. The the sub-second incantation, the cleanliness, all the little places where a beginner leaks. And what he saw was a level of proficiency that had no business existing in a room of first-year apprentices. Among the recent batches of apprentices, he said, your proficiency in witchcraft is currently the highest. Then he wrote that down, in the official record. I nodded and went back to my seat. The highest of the recent batches? Somebody said behind me. That's amazing? Blaze's lip twitched. He'd forgotten. Everyone had forgotten. 3 months ago, this kid had held a meditation for 3 hourglasses when the record in the room was 2, and everybody had explained it away and moved on. Quentin just went gray. Final rankings for the witchcraft course. First Liam, second Serafina, then the rest. And afterward, as everyone was packing up, the crowd in front of me simply parted, and Serafina was standing there. Up close, her eyes were like water. You're very good. Then she turned and left. I stood there holding my notes with absolutely no idea what had just happened. Behind me, 2 of her classmates were having a small crisis. Serafina actually started talking to someone on her own? This is the first time I've ever seen it. Apparently, she barely spoke to the teachers. Today was, in the words of her class, truly an eerie experience. The potion studies test was paper and pen, plant identification, write down what this is and what it does. I finished it feeling reasonably okay about myself, which was my first mistake of the semester. That afternoon, Arthur sent someone to find me. His office. He looked me over like he was meeting me again. Not bad. I didn't expect you to take first place in witchcraft. Luck. There's no need to be modest at times like this. He shook his head. Liam, I remember you said you wanted to join the potion department, right? You came 56th. I did not say anything. I can only tell you, he continued, that the potion department won't be recruiting more than 5 people this year. Not to mention the other courses. Your foundation in potion studies needs to be at least top 15, plus your meditation. Anyone with talent should be at least top 5. 56th. Worse than I'd feared, and I'd feared quite a bit, but the 5 was the part that actually hurt. 5 people, in the entire batch. 800 to 1,000 kids came through this school's gates the year I did, counting the ones already crushed into slavery, and the department I'd built my whole plan around was taking 5. Then why did you call me here, instructor? Because he hadn't done it to depress me. Arthur didn't waste effort. You should feel that the exam covers more material than you're taught. I nodded slowly. I had felt exactly that. I'd studied a lake. The test was about an ocean. So classroom learning alone isn't enough, he said. The college has a library. You should take a look at the potion studies section. I sat there for a second. There are things you genuinely cannot know unless somebody tells you. I'd been in this school for 4 months. Nobody had ever mentioned that there was a library. It wasn't secret. It wasn't forbidden. It was simply information that nobody had any reason to hand a 5th-class serf, and so nobody had, and I could have gone the entire 6 months never knowing why my potion scores were bad. Thank you, sir. I left. The door closed, and behind it Arthur said, to an empty room, interesting. The magic talent is actually that high. He wouldn't have given me a single hint if I hadn't taken first in witchcraft. Not one. He said so himself, out loud, alone. But I had, so he did. That's the whole strategy working, right there. That's the entire reason I raised my hand in that classroom. You don't get help for being desperate. Everybody's desperate. You get help for being worth it. I collected my reward the next morning. 10 magic stones for first place in witchcraft, plus 1 free ordinary grade rank 0 spell. Ordinary? I asked. The girl behind the counter didn't look like a wizard at all. It's the quality of the magic. Even within the same rank there are differences. Ordinary, excellent, and superior, and the difference between them is significant. You can also choose to keep the voucher. Later you can exchange 3 ordinary for 1 excellent. 3 for 1, I banked it. I already had a book of 100 spells I hadn't finished and another free one coming next month, and I wanted to see what 3 saved up would buy. Then I went downstairs because the entire basement of that castle is the library. 1 magic stone per hour on the first basement level, said the gray-robed wizard at the door. Public areas only. You cannot damage the books. 1 magic stone per hour. A magic stone buys a castle in the kingdom I was technically born in. This man was charging me a castle an hour to sit in a room and read. I paid for 2. The basement was bigger than the classroom above it. Alchemical lamps all the way down, bookshelves in rows like a granary. 3 sections. Sorcery, taking up half the floor. Potion studies. Other. I went to sorcery first because I am not made of stone. There was a crystal ball you used to search. I searched. Energy missile. Ordinary. 5 magic stones. Mage hand. Ordinary. 5 magic stones. Acid splash. Excellent. 15 magic stones. Hand of the fire element. Excellent. 15 magic stones. I actually made a noise. 5 stones to start. Excellent grade is triple. There were no superior ones listed at all. I had 10 stones, first place in a school-wide test, and that was 2 spells. 2. And most wizards get 1 stone a month. Even after joining a department, the salary goes up, but not by anything like enough, because the school is not a charity, and on top of the spell itself, you need materials and potions to actually learn the thing. I stood in that basement with a crystal ball in my hands and got a very cold, very clear look at my next 10 years. Then I hit the name. Acid splash. Dark green. Viscous. Corrosive. I was 12 years old and standing in a library, and I was suddenly back on a square in the sunshine watching a woman come apart, and I reached out to click on the entry, Chi, and it was grayed out. You can only purchase high-level witchcraft after you join a department. Woman's voice behind me. Blue hair, blue eyes, absolutely no expression. Thanks for the reminder, I said. Is there something I can help you with? Because we had never spoken. Once. 4 words. You're very good, and out. Even in the most core department, Serafina said, ignoring the question entirely. You only get about 5 magic stones a month. You can buy 3 excellent grade spells a year, unless you go to the market and the prices there are high. She looked at me. Liam. You really like witchcraft, don't you? Yes. I have never denied that, and I never will. I'm from the Silver Wolf family, she said. Have you heard of it? The Silver Wolf family, one of the 3 great families affiliated with the school? She nodded. Because a school that governs a region is not just the school. There are societies under it and families under it, and the Silver Wolf, the Deerclops, and the Hemlock are the big 3, and each of them controls resources the school itself doesn't. Most families seek out promising apprentices in each batch for sponsorship to help them grow. A first-class apprentice would receive at least 10 magic stones a month, plus other support. I raised an eyebrow before I could stop myself. 10 a month, 120 a year, 24 spells. My entire financial future rewritten in 1 sentence by a girl I'd spoken to once. What level of talent are you? 4th class. Her eyes flickered. Actual doubt, the first expression I'd ever seen on her. Because her information said something else. Her information said this boy had condensed his first mental power blaze faster than a 3rd class should. And now he was telling her 4th. Could it be the meditation proficiency? Yes, I said. The minimum for our family grant is 3rd class, she said. But I can apply to the clan chief. It doesn't matter. And I meant it. Of course they fund talent. That's what funding is. 4th class talents are common as dirt. I should get an answer in 3 days. I'll contact you. She found me in the teaching area 3 days later. The clan chief has agreed. The funding is 9 magic stones per month, but there are additional conditions. What are the conditions? After you reach adulthood, you bind your line to ours by family contract, a marriage arranged by the Silver Wolf family with a Silver Wolf wizard at their choosing, and you complete 1 task for the family every year. I looked at her for a second. What would it be for a 3rd class talent? 10 magic stones, 1 task every 3 years. So, 9 stones a month, an annual job, and the family owns who I marry. Versus a 3rd class talent, who gets more money, a 1/3 of the work, and I noticed she hadn't mentioned it, presumably a lighter version of the rest. I'm sorry, I said. I can't accept that. I didn't even take a breath first. I didn't consider it, not for 1 second. Not because I'm proud. I've done plenty of things I'm not proud of, and there are more coming in this story. But there's a difference between selling your work and selling the shape of your life, and if I signed that at 12, then somewhere down the line, every single thing I built would have had a Silver Wolf hand on it. I'd have spent 40 years being their asset. I hadn't sunk that low for resources yet. I intended to keep not sinking. Serafina didn't blink. 1 lesser energy potion costs 3 magic stones, she said, absolutely level. It reduces mental fatigue and increases the number of meditations. With your witchcraft scores, your rune count would climb faster. If you got higher marks in meditation and sorcery, you might have a chance at the combat core division. She never once mentioned potions. She'd already done the math on my wallet and concluded the potion department was not a thing I was allowed to want. Thanks, I said, and I turned around and walked away. I did not see what happened behind me, so I'll tell you what I found out later. Her face changed. Her brows came down, and she said to my back, "You'll regret this." Other families circled after that. Word gets around when someone tops a course. It went nowhere. The big families wanted 3rd class minimum and offered terms like the Silver Wolves or worse. The small families would have taken me happily and could not actually afford to feed me. So I stayed single, financially speaking, and I went back to the only reliable income I had, which was being right about things. 2 weeks later, in a wet stone house, the 2nd mental power blaze condensed. Talent, 125, 4th rank. 1st class wizard apprentice, 5 of 100. Knight, 50 of 100. Basic meditation method, expert 175 of 400. Mental shock, expert 150 of 300. Mage hand, mastery 150 of 300. Magical plant identification, beginner 90 of 100. 5 apprentice progress. 5 was the gate for the second rune, which meant 10 would be the third. The milestones were doubling, and I could see the whole staircase from here. 6 meditations a day now. The night method was rocketing. I'd rub my arm and feel something in there that hadn't been there in the spring. And magical plant identification had gone from 20 to 90. That number cost me 10 magic stones, 10 hours, in a library, at 5 points an hour. It was the single most expensive thing I had ever bought, and it moved one skill from bad to mediocre, and it was, without any competition, the hardest skill to improve I had ever encountered. But compared to those people, it's probably still not enough. It wasn't. Because I'd looked around that library and there had been people in it, a lot of people. Wizards with 2 runes, mostly third-class talents, reading in the paid section like it was nothing. Those are the funded ones. Those are the ones somebody bet on. That's why some apprentices at the same level are just faster, not because they're better, because someone else is paying their library bill. Fine, I'm improving every time. That's the whole trick. As long as I have stones, I'll eventually take first place in this course too. Second monthly assessment. Meditation. Liam, 2. And I heard the gloating start before I'd even taken my hand off the ball. I heard even Seraphina's Silver Wolf family rejected him. His talent's really too bad. No, he does get offers. He looks down on them. His ambitions are too high. That second one was better than the first, and the tone it was set in was much worse. Wizards who hadn't been offered anything, watching a serf turn down 9 magic stones a month and deciding to hate him about it. Seraphina led with 5 runes. Brogan and Griffin had 4 each. Most of the room was stuck on 2 or 3. Witchcraft test, mage hand, which is not a power spell, it's a control spell. You manipulate things at a distance and they score you on precision. Precision is proficiency. First place, 10 magic stones and another spell voucher. Potion studies. I went from 56 to 15th. 10 hours of library, 56 to 15th. Somewhere in the room, Quentin did that arithmetic and stopped being able to breathe properly. He'd made 7th, which was genuinely good. He'd earned it, in a sense. His brother had found him a mountain of material from somewhere, and he'd sat down and read for 60 hours. 60. He'd worked harder that month than he'd ever worked in his life. And he watched a boy with no money and no backer cover 41 places, and he knew, roughly, that I'd been in the library maybe 10 hours at most because he checked. Impossible, he said out loud in a classroom. Impossible. In an office upstairs, Arthur looked at the rankings with genuine surprise. 56th to 15th. Even I didn't expect that. And then he shook his head. But this is probably his limit, because he knew what I had, which was nothing. No family, no sponsor, no stones, and a ceiling made out of arithmetic. And then Arthur did something that nobody asked him to do, and that he got nothing for. He sat there for a moment and said to himself, "The Silver Moon Lake family has been declining recently. That would be a good fit for him." And he got up and went out. 2 nights later, somebody knocked on my door. A maid, an actual maid, in a plain dress, standing outside a stone box in the apprentice housing. "Who are you?" "My Lord Wizard. My name is Daisy. My master requests that you meet her at 37 Maple Avenue tomorrow." "Who is your master?" "My family member is a second-rank wizard apprentice." Fiona Rivercrest of the Silver Moon Lake family, and she turned around and left. I stood in the doorway with my hand still on it. Maple Avenue was inside the school. That was the only reason I went. Maple Avenue at dusk is not the same country as the apprentice housing. Alchemical lamps down both sides putting out a soft white light. Detached houses. Actual space between buildings. This is where high-rank apprentices live. "Both residential areas," I muttered, walking down it. "Huge difference." Number 37. Knock. The maid from last night let me in, and a woman came out of the inner room, fiery red hair, a wizard robe that had clearly been chosen by someone who did not consider modesty a priority. She crossed the room with a click of heels and stopped closer than strangers stop. I was 12. I looked at the floor. "He's a shy little brother," she said, and laughed, and the laugh was the most expensive thing in the room. "I am Fiona Rivercrest. Liam, I'm offering this grant on behalf of the Silver Moon Lake family." "Sponsorship?" I said it out loud, in the tone of a boy checking whether he'd misheard. "Me?" She sat down and crossed one leg over the other and looked at me with real amusement. "Arthur recommended you to me. He said you have great potential and that we'd like to sponsor you." "Instructor Arthur?" I stood there for a second, and something went sideways in my chest, because he hadn't told me, he hadn't hinted, he hadn't collected on it, or asked for anything, or even let me know it had happened. He'd looked at a ranking sheet, decided a student of his was going to hit a wall he couldn't get past, and gone out and found a family for him, and then not mentioned it. "Yes." Considering Arthur's face, I thought it was necessary to at least meet you based on his recommendation. She pressed the ruby on her index finger. A contract appeared in her hand. Out of nothing. Space equipment. I had only ever seen those in a book. Starting price several hundred magic stones. I'd been in this world for 5 months, and I had a total net worth of about 6 stones, and this woman wore 300 on one finger for the convenience of not carrying paper. The contract flew over. My mental energy was strong enough by then to read a page at a glance. It was short. 5 magic stones per month. One condition. Provide resources to the Silver Moon Lake family when needed, with the right to refuse. That's it. That's the whole thing. 60 magic stones a year for a promise I was explicitly allowed to break. It was, functionally, a gift. And it was not aimed at me at all. Nobody hands a 12-year-old 4th-class talent free money. It was aimed straight over my head at the man who'd recommended me. I looked up. Is Instructor Arthur well known in the academy? Fiona nodded and rattled it off like it was common knowledge, which it apparently was to everyone except me. The school's youngest rank 0 intermediate pharmacist. A recognized potion master genius. It's even said the wizard Blackwell had a good opinion of him, as have several families. Blackwell, the founder. The one whose owl guards the castle door. Also, she added, our family does need to invest in some wizards. Even without him, we had considered you. Considered, but hadn't contacted. Because on paper, I wasn't worth it. Add Arthur, and suddenly I was. Okay, I said, I'll sign. If a man like that thinks I'm worth a bet, what am I doing arguing? And staying cautious and taking the money aren't in conflict. She took the contract back and put it away without reading the signature. That detail tells you exactly where I stood. She filed a contract with a 12-year-old without checking his name on it. To Fiona, at that moment, I was a small favor done for a colleague. Mildly interesting, nothing special. Someone will bring the stones tomorrow. Also, give my regards to Arthur. The Silver Moon Lake family looks forward to working with him. I went straight to the teaching area to find him. He wasn't there. He was in fact in that building, having a break in a back room, and I missed him by about a wall, so it kept until class. Thank you for your help, instructor, and Senior Fiona asks me to give you her regards. He waved it off like a fly. Let's not talk about that. I'm going to test whether you've made any progress lately. And then he took me apart. His questions were nasty. Genuinely, deliberately nasty, a lot of them pulled from previous exams, aimed at the seams between things, the sort of question you ask when you want to find out if someone actually understands or has just memorized. I answered them. Not all perfectly, but I answered them. The progress is very rapid, he said, and he sounded surprised, and then he said something that I only understood the weight of years later, the same feeling he'd had when he was studying it himself, only slightly worse. I'm lending you this potions notebook. It's what I had left over from my studies. It's quite good. He put a book on the table. I looked at it and my stomach turned over. I can't accept that, teacher. Because the first rule of wizarding is equivalent exchange. He'd sold me a book cheap. He'd found me a family. And now his personal notes. For free? There's a word for taking that, and it's not lucky. Arthur smiled. 10 magic stones. Consider it a loan. Paid in advance. Pay me back later. Which is not how loans work. Which is a man giving you something and putting a price on it so you can look yourself in the face. Thank you, instructor. I took it. 40 pages, handwritten, dense enough that a page a day was genuinely all I could do, and each page moved magical plant identification 5 points, which is what the library gave me for a magic stone, which made it worth 20 or 30 magic stones easily, on loan. For 10. I couldn't pay him back. Not then. Not for years. All I could do was remember. And I did. Then he added one more thing, on his way out. However, the Silver Moon Lake family has been developing poorly lately. There are signs of trouble. If anything happens, just ignore it. Clear. If something was big enough to be trouble for Arthur, I was going to be nowhere near it. 5 days later, I was standing on a slope just outside the school wall. Let me explain, because this was stupid. The school has a testing ground, a proper one, with alchemy puppets and reduced price recovery potions and even sparring partners. It costs 1 magic stone a day. I had 11 magic stones total, most of them already earmarked for library hours, and I needed to practice witchcraft for hundreds of hours. So instead, I found a slope about 100 meters from the school's own watchtower, screened by a few big trees, technically outside the wall and technically still in the school's shadow. It's a bit risky, I said, standing on a rock and looking at a city several kilometers off, the market where 14 kids had died in the spring. I'll practice at the school again when I have more money. I'd timed it. I could be back inside the wall in 5 seconds. That is the exact reasoning of every person who has ever died in a stupid way, and I knew it even then, and I did it anyway, because I was 12 and poor and in a hurry. Chilazo. Cast, cast, cast. Mental shock was nearly at the top of master. And then, somewhere in the middle of a repetition, something went sideways. There was no incantation. I hadn't started one. I didn't move my hand. My mental energy just went. Boom. A tree as thick as my waist came down 20 meters away. Mental shock breakthrough. Great master level. Talent +3. Talent 130 to 133. I sat down on the rock. 3. Not 1. 3. This was the thing I'd been most afraid of, quietly, for months. That every piece of knowledge was worth exactly 1 point. Forever. Which would mean the machine got slower and slower as the numbers got bigger until it stopped mattering at all. It doesn't work like that. The harder the knowledge, the more it pays. Cantrips are worth 1. A real rank 0 spell is worth 3. And somewhere above that, there are things worth more, and the ladder goes up as far as knowledge does. If anyone knew I could get 3 points of talent out of a rank 0 spell, I said to the trees, they'd drown me in their own spit, because that's the thing. Resources that improve talent, actual talent, the number the crystal ball reads, are the rarest things in the books. Not just at this school. Official wizards struggle to find them, and I could make them by practicing. All I had to do was quietly learn every single thing anyone would ever teach me. Forever. For money. That was a great 5 seconds. The next 5 seconds were better, because something had appeared in my head. Down there in the mental energy space, off to one side of my 2 mental power runes, there was now a third shape, small, simple, not one of mine. I looked closer, and I knew it, because I'd been staring at its structure in my head for 2 months. It was the mental shock rune. I touched it with a thread of mental energy, and it lit up, and the feeling that came back was completely natural, like flexing a finger. I focused. The air rippled. Boom. Second tree down. No words. No gesture. No 3-second incantation, no 1-second incantation, nothing. I thought about it, and it happened. Instant cast, I said out loud, to a clearing with 2 dead trees in it. Let me tell you what that means at this level. 3 seconds is what an ordinary apprentice needs to say the words. In a fight, 3 seconds is everything. 3 seconds is the difference between winning and being a wet spot. Every apprentice on that campus lived and died inside a 3-second window, and the entire tactical world of a low-rank wizard was built around it. I had just deleted it. And in 3 months, when the witchcraft course turned into a combat course, that was going to be a gap nobody could see the bottom of. I was still sitting there grinning like a lunatic when I heard footsteps. My body started running before my brain had voted, straight at the wall. I got about 4 steps and stopped, because the footsteps were coming from the school. Black robes with the patrol team crest. Fine, that's fine. That's just Liam? The man at the front was Alistair, my witchcraft instructor. Instructor Alistair. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking past me, at 2 large trees lying on the ground, and then at the diameter of the trunks, and then back at me. You did this. Yes? He did the sum in his head. I could see him do it. Trunk that thick, that cleanly, at that distance. Nearly 3 energy intensities. He has practiced mental shock for over a decade. He cannot do 3. Liam, he said, join the combat department. I can recommend you to several core wizarding squads, or you can join mine. Mine's a core squad too. Behind him, 5 grown wizards went completely still. The vice captain, recruiting an apprentice who'd been in the school 4 months. In the field. On the spot. Seriously, don't go to the potion department. What's the point of spending all day holed up in a lab mixing potions? Combat is so much more fun. He said fun, gritted teeth and everything. He wanted this badly, and he did not care who heard. And I stood there and thought about it honestly, because a core squad in the combat department is not a small offer. Core departments buy 3 times as many excellent grade spells a year. 20% off the ordinary ones. Permissions on top of permissions. Serafina had spelled all of this out to me in the library, and I'd been chewing on it ever since. I will consider it, I said, and I meant it as a fallback and nothing more. Think about it carefully. He clapped my shoulder and left, because he'd only come out to check on a disturbance and everything was normal. I went home. I lay down on the bed in a room I could cross in 4 steps and thought about the house on Maple Avenue, the lamps, the space, the maid. I must move to a different place in the future, I told the ceiling. Keep going, you'll break through soon. 3rd-class talent, everything will be fine after that. 12-year-olds are allowed to say things like that to ceilings. 8 days, talent, 140. 2 things happened in those 8 days and one of them was bad. The bad one, I finished the dust technique. Great master, clean, done. Talent didn't move. I sat there staring at the panel like it had cheated me. Then I worked it out, and it made unfortunate sense. Dust and breeze share a core, same principles, same underlying structure, different dressing. The machine had already been paid for that idea, and it was not paying twice. which killed a beautiful little dream I'd been nursing where I just learned 40 variations of the same spell and became a god. You can't farm reskins. The knowledge has to actually be new. The good one. Lionheart Knight Method Breakthrough. Great Master Level. Talent plus 5. 5. 2 more than Mental Shock. From the Knight Method, which is not even wizardry, which is the discipline every wizard in this school looks down on. I turned that over for a long time. The Knight Method may not be as powerful as witchcraft, but in terms of what it actually does to a human being, taking a body and rebuilding it, it seems to be worth more. The machine doesn't care about prestige. It cares about how deep the knowledge goes, which meant that everything anyone in this world had ever told me about what was worth learning was potentially garbage, and I should be extremely suspicious of anyone who told me a subject was beneath me. 8 more days. Talent at 143, and then 1 more meditation ended. Basic Meditation Method Breakthrough. Great Master Level. Talent plus 10. Talent, 143 to 153. Talent, 4th rank star to 3rd rank star. 10. Twice the Knight Method. 10 points in 1 line of text. I remember reading it and thinking 10, and then I stopped thinking anything for a while. It was like a spring going into me, cold water in the spirit, running through everything, and something huge and quiet rising underneath. That's talent moving. 4th to 3rd isn't like 5th to 4th. 5th to 4th was a bigger engine. This was a different animal. When I opened my eyes, it was dusk. Which was strange, because it had been dusk when I started. I sat up. The light was wrong. Lighter than the evening I remembered. A whole day had gone by. It had felt like a couple of hours. Then I noticed the first thing. Brisk. That's the only word. Like something had been sitting on my head my entire life and had gotten up. My brain felt unstuck. And every detail of the previous day was sitting right there. Not remembered. Available. Sharp as a slide. I picked up a junk book I'd borrowed and never read, flipped through it at speed, closed my eyes. Every page, in order, photographic memory, or close enough that the difference didn't matter to me. Second thing, I dropped into meditation and the 3rd rune, which had been half-built and stalled for weeks, finished in 1 session. And the 4th started forming immediately. That saved me about 20 days, possibly more. I was at 9 meditations a day, and each one ran about 1.5 times as long as before. 50% more efficiency on top of 9 sessions on top of a great master method. And the 3rd thing was the one that made me actually laugh out loud in an empty room. Because when the meditation method itself hit Great Master, it did what Mental Shock had done. It left a rune behind, sitting in my mental energy space, quietly, permanently, a rune that absorbed elements from the outside world. Slowly, very slowly. A full cycle was worth maybe 1 meditation session, and a cycle takes a long time, but it never stops. It runs while I eat. It runs while I read. It runs while I sleep. A portable solar panel, I said. And then I sat there and thought about what would happen if I ever learned a better meditation method, and whether there was a version of me somewhere down the road where the passive recovery matched the spending and the battery never ran out at all. The panel gave me a new line too. It had never done this before. Talent. 3rd rank. 153 of 250. There it was. The next gate, in a number, 250. I was at 153, and it had taken me 5 months to get there from 98. Too greedy, I told myself, and I laughed, because I was standing in a stone house having just leapfrogged an entire tier of the fundamental hierarchy of this world, and my first instinct had been disappointment that the next one was far away. Get a grip, Liam. This is enough to put your meditation progress near the top of the class. This is 1 foot in a core department. The knock-on effects came in over the following days, and they were all obscene. Cantrips went from 4 days each to under 3. The month's new spell, Mental Energy Detection, a sensing spell that pushes out a pulse and reads what's alive nearby, hit expert 3 days in, a week ahead of schedule. Arthur's notebook went from 1 page a day to 2, 10 points instead of 5, and the departmental picture was firming up, which mattered more than any of it. Word had gotten around. Seraphina wanted secret source. Brogan and Griffin were leaning toward combat, which meant the second-class talents were not going to eat my seat. The potion department was taking 5. If the monsters went elsewhere, 5 was survivable. I was actually cheerful for about a day and a half. Then somebody hammered on my door, and it was Dylan, and he was shouting before it was open. Liam, something terrible has happened. War, not coming, starting. Here's how a war starts, in case you were curious, because it turns out to be extremely boring right up until it isn't. Months earlier, out on the edge of our territory, Holden Wizard School bumped into Blackstone School over a border. Both of us noticed a white crystal mine sitting in the disputed strip. White crystal is what you make wand heads out of. Useful, common, worth arguing over. So both sides parked some people there and glared, which is apparently a normal Tuesday in the Emerald Shadow Forest. Standoffs like that happen constantly and resolve themselves by everyone getting bored. 3 days ago, somebody went deeper into that mine and found amethyst. Amethyst is what a third-rank wizard apprentice uses to cultivate. It is worth dozens of times what white crystal is worth. For 2 small poor schools in 2 small towns, an amethyst vein is not a resource, it's a treasury. Neither of us could walk away from that. Not possibly. Apprentices were already being pulled out and shipped to other areas. Nobody knew when it would go loud. Everybody knew that it would, none of which had anything to do with me, which did not stop it from rearranging my entire life inside of a week, because the school had to plan, and to plan it had to know where everyone was going, and so before the 3rd assessment they polled us on department preferences. Raise your hand if you're choosing the secret source department, a scattering. Raise your hand if you're choosing the logistics department. Most of the room went up, which was expected, and then 2 hands went up in front of me that were not expected at all. Brogan, Griffin. I stopped breathing for a second. Second-class talents don't compete for seats. Second-class talents get given seats. If Brogan and Griffin wanted logistics, they'd be walked into the potion department by the hand. 5 seats. 2 of them just evaporated. 3 left for everyone else in the batch, and I was 15th in potions and 40-something in meditation. We have to fight for the 3rd test, I said, and my voice came out perfectly level, and I put my hands under the desk so nobody could see them. Late September. Cool weather. The 3rd assessment. This one was the watershed, and everyone knew it. Gareth looked more serious than usual. There was a war on, and even the departments were paying attention. Test in order. First boy up. Hand on the ball. Fink. 1. Gareth didn't change expression. The boy did. He stood there with his hand still on the crystal and his eyes filling up and his whole body shaking, because he understood exactly what 1 rune at this stage meant. A peripheral department 6 months from now, barely a step up from the people they'd dragged out of our old classroom. Nobody comforted him. Nobody looked. 30-odd wizards stared straight ahead with completely blank faces. People who clearly waste their time do not deserve sympathy. That's the rule here. Unwritten, universally understood, taught to nobody, and known by everyone. The line moved. Quentin. 4. Gareth's eyebrows actually went up. Most 3rd-class talents can't do 4, only the good ones. Blaze, standing off to one side, went pale. Blaze had 3. The Mutual Aid Society made a noise like a punctured tire. All of us, all of them, had 2, and the 3rd barely started. And here was Quentin, same talent grade as Dylan, sitting on 4. You could watch the thought go around the group. Maybe leaving us was the right call. Blaze couldn't stand it and said loudly to nobody in particular, 4 mental power runes. This guy is definitely selling his ass. My lip twitched. I said nothing, because I had 4, and I'd gotten there faster than he had, and it seemed like a bad moment to volunteer that. Quentin walked past me with his chin up. Liam, you'd better keep up the good work. The core department isn't easy to get into. Mental energy is the core of everything. He didn't even try to hide it. And before I could decide whether to answer, a voice went off beside me like a firecracker. A mule wearing armor is still a mule, said Chloe at full volume. But it's not even its own armor. Hey, no, it's still a fat mule. Quentin went red from the collar up. I did not put her up to this, and would not have dared. Chloe just did things. He nearly came off the ground. And then, because I had stepped up behind her, which I would have done for any of them, and he knew it, he stopped, and he settled for hissing, "You adulterous couple." Then he went to stand by the wall to watch me fail. The society went through. Dylan, 2. 2? Oh dear, I almost had 3. Give me a few more days. Chloe, 2. Zico, 2. Marcus, 2. Finn, 2. 5 people, all moderate, all disappointed. Next, Liam. More heads turned than I liked. I had a certain reputation by then. 2 firsts in witchcraft, a good potions rank, and the famous refusal of the Silver Wolf contract, which had turned into a story somewhere along the way. Even Seraphina looked over. She'd learned recently that I'd signed with the Silver Moon Lakes, and that it had happened because of Arthur, and she'd been quietly annoyed about it ever since. Quentin had a smile on his face, like he was about to be paid. I put my hand on the ball. Liam. 4. Pause. 4? Gareth didn't react at first. Then he looked at the crystal again, and then he looked at his previous records, and then he looked at me. Because a month ago, I had 2 runes in 1 month, at this stage. That's not 4th-class pace. That's not 3rd-class pace. That's brushing the underside of 2nd class. The room did the arithmetic in about a second and a half and got very loud. Quentin's smile stopped moving on his face, because he knew exactly what 4 runes had cost him. His brother handed him a lesser energy potion every 3 days for 3 straight months, and it had taken all of it to get here. Blaze, some distance away, looked like something inside him was coming apart. He'd thought this was his moment. He'd survived the ambush. He'd rebuilt. The advanced stage was where third-class talents were supposed to pull away, and he was watching people he'd refused entry to his club walk past him. The Mutual Aid Society had stopped functioning entirely. 1 second ago we were saying Quentin was selling his boss. Boss, are you selling? Boss, take me with you. And then Gareth's expression changed, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Did you take mental energy? Absolute silence. Because that's the banned one. Recovery potions are legal. Anything that increases mental energy during this phase is not, and if you're caught, the penalty is 1 year of confiscated resources and a permanent assignment to a peripheral department, which is a nice way of saying, your life is over, please continue attending. Liam, you're finished, Quentin said, out loud, from soul, from the bottom of him. No, I said. He wasn't going to take my word for it, and I wasn't expecting him to. He put a hand on my shoulder and mental energy went through me like a searchlight through a fish tank. My state, my composition, everything. He was thorough. He should have found something. A jump that size leaves residue. It always leaves residue. He found nothing. Really not? He kept his hand there. His eyes had gone bright and hard, and I understood, with total clarity, that this man was about 30 seconds from deciding that a thing he couldn't explain was a thing he should investigate properly. And then somebody moved beside him. Serafina had walked up to the table. She leaned in and said something short and quiet into Gareth's ear, and Gareth's whole face cleared. Ah, so that's it. They've latched onto Arthur's coattails. I heard him say it. He wasn't even trying to be quiet. He'd stopped being interested the moment there was a boring explanation available. Of course, the famous potion genius of the school takes an interest in a kid, feeds him resources, and the kid's rune count jumps. Is that investment worth it for a talent like this? Debatable, but rich people do stupid things, and either way it's not cheating. The room deflated. A whole crowd of people had been about to watch an execution, and now they were just at school again. Serafina went back to her place still frowning slightly, because she wasn't satisfied. She knew exactly what a family's investment gets you. Hers had funded better talents than me, and none of them had done this. On what grounds, she was thinking. None of us backed him. Arthur did. Why? Or is there another reason? She didn't know, and I stood there letting a false explanation harden around me like a shell, and I thought, this is even better than not being noticed, because now I had a story. A dull, plausible, socially legible story that explained everything I did, forever, and cost me nothing to maintain, adding a layer of tiger skin. Trouble avoided. Final rankings for the meditation course. Liam, 9th. Quentin, 10th. I heard him choke on a mouthful of water somewhere behind me. He didn't get his vision back for about 10 minutes. The witchcraft test was mental energy detection, and the school scored it on proficiency rather than range, which is the difference between a control test and a power test. First place, obviously. Liam. Alistair caught me on the way out, and his face was doing something complicated. Are you really not considering the combat department? I'm sorry, sir. For now, I still prefer the potion department. Come find me if you don't get in. The combat department's genuinely good for training wizards. It's perfect for you. He'd seen the departmental poll. He knew both second-class talents wanted logistics. He knew what that did to the odds. He didn't say hell difficulty. He didn't have to. Quentin, meanwhile, took the witchcraft result with a strange calm. He'd quietly conceded that lane weeks ago. Fine, I couldn't beat him at spells. Fine. But the third course. First place, Liam. Every head in the room came around, and the thing I remember about that moment is that it wasn't shock anymore. It was something duller and heavier. They'd gone numb. Meditation. Terrifying progress, witchcraft, unbeatable, and now the basics of potion studies in a 3-month period where the entire course was pure memorization, where the only variable was how many books you'd had access to, 2 firsts out of 3, which meant that in every subject except raw mental energy, a 5th-class serf had gone past all 3 second-class talents. It really is Arthur, Serafina said, some distance away, and she sounded almost relieved. That was the only sentence available. How could anyone compete on potion theory with the school's own potion genius sponsoring them? Losing to that is normal. Losing to that is fine. Brogan puffed out his chest and said in a voice like a door closing, mental energy is the core. These are secondary. Griffin coughed twice and didn't say anything at all, which I found significantly more worrying. Reward collection at the castle. 22 magic stones and a spell voucher. 22. I'd been in this world 8 months and my entire net worth had once been 1. The girl at the counter looked at me with open curiosity. She'd worked there several years. My Lord Wizard, would you like to exchange 3 ordinary spells for 1 excellent? No, give me 3 ordinary, she blinked. My lord, if you wish, I can find somewhere to explain the difference in more detail. No need, 3 ordinary, directly. Look, she was right. Excellent grade is better. It is meaningfully, obviously, several times better, and every sane wizard in that building would have taken the trade. But I wasn't buying power that day. I was buying talent points, and 3 spells at Great Master is 9 points, and 1 excellent spell at Great Master is, I was guessing, 5, maybe 6. Also, and this mattered nearly as much, 3 ordinary spells would round out my kit and 1 excellent spell would not. I picked Energy Missile, Light Body Technique, and Elemental Barrier, Attack, Movement, Defense. For the first time in my life, I had a shape instead of a pile, which was not because I planned to fight anyone. Let me be extremely clear about my philosophy here, since it comes up later. I do not want a thrilling battle. A thrilling battle is a battle you might lose. What I want is to be so far above the person in front of me that the whole thing is boring. Crushing something weaker than you from a position of total superiority is not glorious, and it is the only kind of fight worth having. That's what I was aiming at, every day, forever. I came out of the castle still doing sums, and a shadow moved on the giant stone wolf by the gate. Huh? A new apprentice? And he actually walked out with 22 magic stones? The owl had woken up. Green light in the eyes, big eyes, locked on me. I got a very specific feeling in my stomach. Lord Pip. Not bad, young man. What was your name again? I remember you came with Arthur. You can just call me Liam, Lord Pip. Little Liam is amazing. So many magic stones. The owl sighed and preened a shiny, well-oiled wing. Unlike me, this old owl has no ability. I haven't seen many magic stones in days. My magic power is almost exhausted. My lip twitched. He's a bit greedy, Arthur had said. You'll see later. I suppressed the physical pain in my chest and took out 1 magic stone. Please enjoy this, sir. You're much more perceptive than little Arthur was back then. I'll protect you from now on. He swallowed it whole. The stone, which I had personally tried to damage with witchcraft and failed, crunched apart in his beak like sand. I made a note of that too. Then I'll be going, sir. And I was 3 steps away when something drifted down past my face. A feather. Dark gray. I looked at it, and then at him. That's a feather that fell off me a long time ago. There's a small rune on it. You can try to brand it. It should be worth about an excellent grade rank 0 spell. He glanced away. I'm not going to take your magic stones for nothing. I stood there holding 15 magic stones worth of witchcraft that I had just been given for 1. Thank you, sir. Go on, go on. The old man needs to sleep. He closed his eyes. Who says Lord Pip is greedy? I'd fight them. I'd fight anyone. He did not, in fact, go to sleep. He waited until I was out of sight and then opened his eyes, and what was in them was not the cheerful uncle. Good heavens, in 3 months, 3 spells condensed into runes, and even the meditation method condensed into a rune. Because that's the thing I didn't know yet, and wouldn't know for a long time. Getting proficient at a spell is normal. Any drudge can grind a spell. Condensing a spell rune is not. 99% of wizards don't know it's possible. It's the kind of thing only geniuses from the great cities even attempt, because it's a step on the road to becoming an official wizard. And I was doing it like drinking water, 4 times, before my 13th birthday. Is this guy even human? He thought about it for a while. Even little Blackwell wasn't this exaggerated. It's a pity he's been asleep again recently. I wonder when he'll wake up. And then he made a face, because the next thought was expensive. Does it need special care? No, the investment is too costly. Nobody's taking a single magic stone from me. He struggled with that for a solid minute. Forget it, forget it. Anyway, nobody's going to take it from me, but I can't give money. How about something that isn't magic stones? Which is how I got the feather. It was a test. He'd branded it himself. He wanted to see if the kid could brand a rune from a source that wasn't a textbook. I hope it will be a surprise for me, he said, and shut his eyes for real. The last person who'd surprised him like that had been Blackwell. He'd invested in Blackwell. He'd pushed Blackwell to official wizard, and then he'd lived off him for a century. 2 days later I met Arthur, not in the teaching area, on Maple Avenue, number 75. He opened the door in a dark green fitted robe and matching trousers, which was the least wizardly I had ever seen him look. Come in. Fiona's house had smelled like flowers. Arthur's house smelled like herbs. It hit you in the doorway, that low, complicated green smell that comes off a working laboratory. So this is what a potion master is actually worth. He caught me looking and laughed. Once you become a second-rank wizard apprentice, you can choose a house here. Noted. Immediately. Permanently. We sat down in a reception room, and he leaned back on the sofa, and I sat like a schoolboy, and he opened with, "Not bad. There are rumors among the apprentices that I've recently taken a liking to you and invested a lot of resources in you." Cold went straight down my spine. "Instructor, I really don't." "Don't worry." He shrugged. "After all, that isn't a rumor." And then he stopped being amused and told me the actual situation, which was much worse than I'd assumed. "Liam, you're genuinely talented. But in the practical potion phase, talent will be secondary. The next 3 months would be a single potion, lesser hemostatic potion. The school gives you exactly one set of materials per class. To get good, you have to rent a lab and buy your own. The lab is 1 magic stone per hour. Materials are half a stone per set. You need dozens of attempts before you're any good. Dozens. I did the sum, and it came out somewhere north of everything I owned. What if I bought a set of equipment? 30 magic stones to start. A more complete set, at least 50. Right. However, Arthur added, if you get into the potion department, the department has lab equipment for rent, much cheaper. Which is a sentence that means if you can already fly, we'll teach you to fly. I very nearly said so, but he hadn't invited me over to depress me twice in 1 week. However, he said again, and his voice went flat and businesslike, since everyone's saying I've invested in you, it would be embarrassing for me if you performed poorly. And as you know, the situation is very tense lately. Blackstone, the mine, the war that hadn't started. So the academy needs a large number of potions. The potion department has been very busy. I've been assigned to refine lesser hemostatic potion, and we don't have enough assistants. He looked at me with absolutely nothing on his face. If you're willing, you can be my assistant. There will be no compensation. I was on my feet before he finished the sentence. Compensation. Compensation. Sir, I would pay you. Because an assistant doesn't get to brew. An assistant preps materials and washes glass and stands there. To any normal apprentice, being an unpaid assistant in a busy lab is a chore. To me, it was several hundred magic stones of practice that I did not have to buy. Arthur had, obviously, not needed an assistant. Arthur was a rank 0 intermediate pharmacist with 2 full-time slaves already working his benches. He had invented a job. Thank you, instructor. It's not without conditions. You have to be top 10 in next month's assessment. Understood. Thank you for the opportunity. Nothing else. I still need to prepare medicine, so I can't keep you. He stood up and walked toward the inner lab, and a maid showed me out, and I went home and stood in the middle of my 4-step room and looked at it and felt genuinely motivated, which is the correct response to being shown a nicer house. I stripped off my robe and ran the night method until my face went red. Night progress was past 90 and climbing. After that, the only way up was Great Night, and I didn't have that chapter. Quentin had thrown me the first half of a book and kept the rest, which was the single pettiest thing he ever did to me, and I respected it. I started the light body technique, and in whatever hours were left, I sat with Pip's feather and tried to read a rune that a demonic beast had written. It was hard. Much harder than a spell out of the library, which comes with instructions. This came with nothing. It was somebody's handwriting, but an excellent grade spell that nobody in the school knew I had, that I hadn't bought, that didn't appear on any list. If you master it, I told the feather, you're a trump card. The witchcraft course became the combat course. Alistair drew circles on the ground of the testing grounds. Each time, an opponent is randomly assigned. The battle takes place inside the circle. If you leave the circle or you're knocked down, you lose. The first group is Liam Stone and Quentin Morgan. The Mutual Aid Society made a sound. Quentin looked up from across the field, and something in him lit up like a lamp. He stretched. He rolled his shoulders. He walked into that circle grinning at me the way you'd grin at a debt. Liam, I've finally met you today. Bring it on. Start. Quentin planted his feet and began the incantation. 3 seconds. That's what it takes. Everybody knows this. It's the fundamental unit of combat at our level. You say the words, and then things happen. I walked forward. He got about a syllable and a half in before he registered that I had covered the distance, and his eyes went very wide, and the incantation died in his mouth, and the last thing in his field of view was my fist. Bang. He hit the ground and stayed there. Liam wins. That was not a display of martial arts. This was a knight-tier body walking 6 meters at a boy who was standing still with his mouth open. Alistair raised his eyebrows. Out of the basketball world entirely, he thought, delighted. He also plays the Cavaliers. And that fighting instinct. That's really good. I want him. Then, that same day, the potion course. Not a classroom, a laboratory, 20 stations, and on every station a full spread of equipment. Brass crucibles, mortars and pestles, handmade glassware, tin balances with tin weights. These are just basic tools, Arthur said, not alchemical artifacts, but sufficient. Then he demonstrated, and it was the first time I ever watched somebody do something with their hands that I couldn't immediately copy. First, weigh out 1.5 grams of 3-leaf hemostatic herb. It must be accurate or it will greatly affect the stability. Mental energy on the balance, moving the weights without touching them. Second, silver root grass powder and evening primrose juice, blending agent and stabilizer, 3 grams each. Pale silver dust with a faint shine in it, thick, clear liquid. Next, process the main materials. He picked up the pestle and started grinding, and the movements were small and had a rhythm to them, and he talked while he did it without the rhythm changing at all. Grinding is not about grinding as fine as possible. The goal is to release the active ingredients while preventing impurities from seeping out. It needs to be powdery, but with a slight texture. Every person in that room was leaning forward. Third, fuse the three components. You're looking for a bright red, then heat to promote fusion. The alcohol lamp went under the crucible. Blue flame steady against the base. He stirred with a glass rod, slowly, and, I don't know how else to say this, gently, like he was petting it. 10 minutes. The color went from bright red to a deep settled ruby, and the smell that came off it was faintly sweet with a thread of rust underneath. Now you can start trying. Every station got a written procedure and one set of materials. I read the sheet 4 times, then I read it a 5th time. Then I started. Half an hour later I was looking down into a crucible at something dark green. It was not a lesser hemostatic potion. It was not a potion. It was, if I'm generous, a soup. And the panel showed nothing at all. No skill entry, not even a beginner bar. A failure so complete the machine did not consider it an attempt. We really need to try more, I said. Up on the stage, Arthur was watching the room, and not one person had succeeded, and this did not surprise him even slightly. Of course it didn't. If potions were easy, potion masters wouldn't be the richest people in the building. And here's what usually happens next, which he also knew. Over the following weeks, the apprentices quietly give up on potions and drift toward combat or toward some other branch of logistics, and the department gets to select from the handful of monsters who didn't. The whole thing is a filter. The class isn't a class. It's a sieve. That night, Mutual Aid Society. I'm prepared to give up on the basics of potion studies, Dylan said, before anyone had even sat down. Me too. Chloe, flat. This isn't a lesson prepared for us at all. I'm going to focus on combat now, said Marcus, who was the size of a door. I'm going to the market today to buy a weapon. I'd like to try and see what the other logistics branches are like, said Finn, who never said anything. 4 out of 5, in about 90 seconds, on the same evening. And they were right. That's the part that matters. They did the correct thing. They looked at a course that required an income they did not have, and they cut their losses like sensible people, and any advisor in the world would have told them to. But boss, said Zico, turning around, you're still going for the potion department, right? I'm going to try again. I didn't tell them about Arthur, not out of cunning, or, not only. Mostly because saying I've been given a free apprenticeship with the department's genius to 4 people who have just been priced out of a career is not a kind thing to do at a table. Instead, I turned to Marcus. Bring me some materials when you go to the market. Because I still hadn't gone. Not once. Not since Orion and the others went down that road and didn't come back. Can? Said Marcus. Liam, you really should go to the market, Dylan said the next day, handing over my materials. It's really fun. Maybe another time. I knew it was fun. I knew there were good things there and food you couldn't get in the school and probably 100 small pleasures. A trip took hours. Hours were the only currency I couldn't earn back. And the road was not necessarily safe, and not necessarily was a phrase I had learned to take very seriously in that spring. Wow, you really worked too hard, Dylan said. He'd known me half a year by then, and he'd arrived at a conclusion about me that was completely wrong and completely flattering, that everything I'd done was hard work, and every result was earned by grinding, which, fine. Honestly, fine. It was even sort of true. My days went, up at 5, witchcraft. Afternoon, rented lab, potions. Evening, spar and trade with the society. And Quentin, thanks to one punch in a chalk circle, acquired a campus-wide nickname, One Punch Quentin. It spread very far, very fast, and it followed him for the rest of his life, which turned out to be shorter than he expected. 5 days of failure, and then a crucible full of something pale red. The quality was laughable. It was, objectively, a bad potion. If you'd poured it on a wound, the wound would have filed a complaint. But the panel finally admitted it existed. Lesser hemostatic potion, beginner 1 of 100. That was the whole point. Not the potion. The bar. If it's on the panel, it can be ground, and if it can be ground, it is already mine. It's just going to take money. Speaking of which, 10 magic stones of materials and 5 of lab rent to reach beginner 1. 6 left. I also turned 13 that week, which I found out by accident because the panel updated the age line and I hadn't known. The boy whose body I'd inherited had been a serf. Nobody had ever told him when he was born. The 6th of December, apparently. Nobody mentioned it. Nobody knew. Happy birthday to me. The Silver Moon Lake stipend arrived 2 days later and saved my life, financially speaking, and I put it all straight back into the crucible. I also finally cracked Pip's feather. Wind blade technique, beginner 1 of 100. Heckum wise. A blade of wind condensed in front of me and went and left a mark on a stone wall that mental shock had never managed. First cast. Beginner. Already roughly twice what any of my other spells did at their best. Excellent grade almost completely overwhelms ordinary, I said, staring at the wall. No wonder the academy restricts the purchase. That's the leash, by the way. That's how the school holds a few hundred wizards. Not walls, not oaths, grades of knowledge, doled out slowly, at prices you can't quite reach. Then the school announced that the potion department would be taking 3 people instead of 5. The war did it. Wizards were leaving the gate daily. Combat was expanding and everything else was shrinking, and the announcement landed on me like a beam coming out of a ceiling. Brogan, Griffin, and 1 seat. I sat in my room and looked at 6 magic stones and did the only thing left. I called the Mutual Aid Society together and asked them for money. I told them the truth. The department, the numbers, my situation. Then, so I hope to borrow some magic stones from you. I'll repay double. I did not expect much. These were kids with nothing. This is the only one I have left, Dylan said, embarrassed, putting it on the table. I bought a potion yesterday. I only have 1, said Zico. 2 of them. Chloe flicked them across with a wink. I didn't spend a single penny. All yours. Finn, 1. Marcus, nothing. He'd been to the market the day before and blown it on a weapon. 5 magic stones, which was every coin those 5 people owned in the world, produced inside 90 seconds by a group that had all quit the course I was borrowing for. Thank you, I said. All of you. Dylan laughed. Boss Liam, we know we're probably just so-so, but you're different. If you really get into the potion department, you have to give us a hand. I want discounted potions, said Chloe. Must, I said. It took nearly 30 magic stones all in to drag lesser hemostatic potion to proficient. 30 stones for 1 word on a panel. That's the wall. Right there. That's the reason every apprentice in that class gave up and every one of them was correct too. 4th assessment, meditation, Seraphina, 8 runes. Me, 8th place with 5. Quentin 9th with 4, and frustrated about it, which was new. Combat. They drew 10 circles for the top 10 places and made you fight your way up. I watched Brogan go through several people in the top circle without appearing to try. 2nd-class talent, a body like a demonic beast, mental energy like a reservoir. I stepped in. You are no match for me, he said, calm as a wall. I smiled. And then I fired the light body technique, which had hit Great Master that month, and which nobody had seen me use, and became a white line. Brogan's eyes had time to widen. They did not have time to do anything else. Bang. He went down. The crowd made a noise like a collective wince, and then every single one of them turned and looked at somebody who was not me, because a decision had just been reached silently and unanimously. Don't get in the circle with Liam, not because I was scary, because you look so pathetic when you lose to him. Quentin, watching from the sideline, actually cheered up. Brogan had just gone down exactly the way he had, in exactly the same posture. Does that mean he and Brogan are equals? I let him have it. Potion studies practical. 1st place, Liam. 2nd, Preston. 3rd, Griffin. 4th, Quentin. I was surprised too, honestly. 1st place at proficient? That told me something ugly about how hard this potion actually was and how badly everyone else was doing. Arthur, standing to one side, was extremely satisfied. That was all he'd needed to see. And Quentin went white, because he'd been brewing a dozen times a day, every day, for a month. On his brother's money. Nobody in that class had spent what he'd spent. 4th, 3 seats. He was not a stupid boy, and he did the sum. His brother had poured resources into him for a reason, and if the resources produced nothing, then what exactly happens to the person who wasted them? His brother had killed a dozen apprentices in an afternoon without blinking. Will I be killed as well? He broke out in a cold sweat in a classroom, and that is the only moment in this entire story where I feel anything for Quentin at all. That night, a room, a candle. How come you're only 4th? Alaric was not pleased. Alaric had expected top 3. Brother, the top 3 are a 2nd-class talent and a giant deer family heir with a potion legacy. And the last one? Quentin was very careful with his voice. Brother, it's Liam. Alaric had to think. Genuinely, he had to rack his brain for a while before the name came up at all, which tells you exactly how important I was in the world at that point. Isn't he just a commoner wizard? How could his talent be similar to yours? Brother, Wizard Arthur thinks highly of him. And Alaric went quiet, because that name he knew. Brother, Quentin said. Why don't we just kill him? Alaric sat there for several seconds. Wait a month. I'm on assignment abroad this month. I'll be back next month. We'll find an opportunity to kill him when the time comes. I got my prize. Arthur walked me to the potion department, and on the way he gave me the map of the school I should have had a year earlier. North, teaching. South, combat. East, the castle and the secret source department, where they decide what happens to wizards. West, logistics. And the center? I turned and looked at the center, and I had genuinely never really looked before. A black wizard tower, standing there like a cold steel giant. That's Blackwell's residence, naturally, but he hasn't shown up for a long time. Is that so? Yes, several years. Only occasionally are orders sent out. Some say the master is dead and someone else is impersonating him. Others say he's injured and recuperating. Arthur shrugged. As for the truth, no one knows. He said it lightly. He was rumored to be Blackwell's favorite, and he had never met the man. One letter, years ago. Instructor, just how powerful is an official wizard? I don't know. But compared to their strength, their lifespan is more enviable. Reportedly 300 years. I stopped walking for a second. 300 years. Where I come from, 300 years is a dynasty. It's the whole span from powdered wigs to the internet. It's not a long life, it's a different unit of time. Something changed in me right there on that path. Up to that afternoon, everything I'd done had been about not dying and getting comfortable. I wanted the 300 years. Arrive. The potion department was a castle in its own compound. A main building and 2 side wings, dark gray, with metal doors in relief, bottles, crucibles. From the roof came a chimney shaped like a dragon, venting pale yellow mist that hung over the whole block, and 10 meters out you could already smell 40 different plants at once. That's the smoke from refining. It smells strange, but if you smell it a while you might even find it pleasant. Arthur breathed it in like a man coming home. 4 floors, fewer rooms as you go up. We went straight to the top. He knocked. A lazy voice said, "Come in." Enormous room, enormous bench in the middle, and a woman at it, mid-brew. Short black hair, cut precisely, gold-rimmed glasses, a black robe with silver stitching, and a rune-etched copper medicine jar at her waist. The whole effect was cool in the temperature sense. A person built out of exactness. Arthur did not say a word until she finished, which took a while. He stood there like furniture, and so did I. Then her eyes came up and went past him and landed on me. "This is the apprentice you had your eye on?" "Yes, Lord Alara." "Fine. You're the person I want anyway, so you'll be responsible for any problems or losses." That was it. That was the entire interview. She went back to her bench. "Who was that?" I asked on the stairs. "Ilara, the deputy head of the potion department. She may be a beauty, but her potion making is better than mine." Better than his. I filed her under the most important person in this building and did not revise that for 4 years. 3rd floor. Arthur's own lab, 100 square meters, testing bench on one side and 2 apprentices working materials on the other. Both of them had a gray tattoo on the back of the hand. "Apprentices who don't advance within 3 months become slaves of the school," Arthur said, conversationally, walking past them. "Then they enter the various departments to play a role. These 2 have been with me for 3 years. They're quite skilled with materials." I took a breath. "Ethan, Julian, come here a moment. This is Liam. He'll be working with you on the materials from now on." 2 heads came up, curious. A badge with no department mark, a new apprentice, working with them. "Hello, I'm Liam." They both went still. "Look, this school has strict ranks. Slaves, school apprentices, 1st, 2nd, 3rd class. The gaps are enormous and everyone observes them, and slaves have no rights at all. One of them told me later that if an official wizard kills a servant wizard, the fine is about 1 magic stone. I said hello to 2 slaves by name and didn't look at their hands. It cost me nothing. It bought me 2 people who would, over the following months, quietly hand me the best materials on the bench and never once mention it. "Julian, Ethan," they said. I got to work, and within 3 hours I found something that changed the whole shape of the year. Prepping materials raises the potion's proficiency. Not brewing, prepping, grinding, weighing, cleaning, sorting. The boring part, the part they give to slaves, because material prep is the first circle of brewing. It's not preparation for the skill, it's part of the skill, and the panel knew that before I did. 10 points in 3 hours, free. A paid practice run cost me half a magic stone and gave 4 or 5 points. I was standing at a bench doing donkey work and pulling 10 an hour off a supply of materials worth more than my life, and the only price was my time. Ethan and Julian had been enjoying themselves, by the way. They'd been watching the school apprentice be slower and clumsier than them, and thinking the apprentices at that school are nothing special, if I'd had the chance back then, and then they noticed I was getting faster. Not day to day, hour to hour. So did Arthur. He'd been making that potion for years. He knew every reagent on the bench by feel, and he could see the substandard batch, mine, obviously, improving as the afternoon went on, and he stood there thinking, is it my imagination? Observe for a few days first. I came home that evening covered in plant dust to find Daisy waiting at my door. Fiona pulled me inside before I got a word out. "Little Liam, you really surprised me this time. If the family hadn't reminded me, I wouldn't have known you were so outstanding." "Ah, I see. She'd forgotten I existed. She'd signed a paper as a favor to Arthur, filed me under nothing special, and gone about her life. And then her family, who watched the assessment rankings the way merchants watch a harvest, had rung her up and asked why she'd never mentioned this one. People really do need to have value to be valued. That's not bitterness, it's just the rate card. I wrote it down and used it for the rest of my life. Your progress has surprised the family and me. We're increasing your funding to 8 magic stones. I signed the new contract before she finished the sentence. Then she made me stay for dinner, which turned out to be a seared steak, pan-fried foie gras with blueberry sauce, buttered mashed potatoes, and a salad. I had been eating school bread for 8 months. I ate like a stray. Next morning, I collected 23 magic stones and learned that free spells had been discontinued. In their place, testing ground time. 10 days, 6 hours each, and 3 extra sparring sessions for first place. Pip was on the wolf with his eyes half shut and did not say anything as I went in or as I came out, which disappointed me more than I expected. He opened them the second I was gone. Feels like you've only just begun. He could sense the wind blade in me, and what he sensed was weak. A beginner, barely started, which was completely different from the terrifying prodigy he'd been imagining. He'd handed over an excellent grade spell as a test, and the test result appeared to be this kid is normal. Never mind, let's continue to observe. He had no way of knowing that I'd only had the thing 4 days. 3 days at Arthur's bench and my materials were the fastest and cleanest on the table. Better than Ethan's. Better than Julian's. Liam, are you here to prepare potions today? I nearly dropped a mortar. Ethan handed me a set. I brewed. The handling was smooth. The heat control was not. Arthur watched for about 15 seconds and knew exactly how it would end, and he was right. And his conclusion, honestly, was disappointment. Because Arthur was an actual genius. When he learned this potion, he'd watched it once and done it, and hit a 50% success rate inside a dozen attempts. That's what genius looks like from the inside. Fast to the top, and then you stay there. I was not that. I was clumsy and slow, and I had to be shown, but that material curve was still nagging at him. Liam, starting today, you can use 10 sets of materials a day, but you must produce at least 3 finished doses. If you're short one, you pay for 1 set. Okay. He did not tell me he was pleased. I found out much later that he was. I succeeded twice, paid half a stone, and gained 40 points in an afternoon, 60 out of 200. You can master it in 3 days, I said out loud, to a bench, in the middle of somebody else's laboratory. Day 2, 3 bottles. Day 3, 4 bottles. Day 4, 5 bottles. Arthur stood there looking at 5 finished doses of lesser hemostatic potion with an expression I will treasure until I die. Huh? You configured this? I remember you weren't like this a few days ago. Yes, I've improved. Is there progress? His mouth did something complicated. And then he arrived, out loud, alone, at the sentence that is the single best description of me that anyone has ever produced. He was finally certain that Liam was definitely a genius, but not a genius in the traditional sense. Geniuses learn very quickly and then reach a very high level and stop. Liam moved forward little by little, as if walking. Not very fast, but he kept moving forward. Even a genius can't keep improving all the time. I've never heard of this before. He turned around and went back to his own bench, walking like a man who had been mildly concussed. Starting tomorrow, he said over his shoulder, the materials quota is 20 times. 10 days, something like 200 practice runs. Price that out. At half a stone a set plus lab rent, 200 runs is comfortably over 100 magic stones. I paid nothing. I paid attention. By the end, I could put a bottle together in 15 minutes, and the panel said expert, and, this is the part I still find funny, in raw proficiency, at that specific potion, I was no worse than Arthur. Not in judgment, not in understanding, in hands, and because of me, he finished a departmental assignment 10 days early. Liam. This batch is complete. We won't need it for a while. You don't need to come after today. Thank you, instructor. How many runes have you branded? Still 5. We should have 6 soon. It seems your talent is indeed wrong. He nodded, satisfied with his own diagnosis. He'd looked me up at some point and found 5th class in my file and concluded the testing had failed. It should be 3rd class. That's passable. Do you still want to join the potion department? Yes. Then listen. The potion department values talent above all, mental energy and potion talent. Which means your meditation and potion studies grades are what matter. Your potions are fine now. He looked at me flatly. So from now on, invest all your magic stones in improving your mental energy. Understand? I did, and I hated it because mental energy potions are the most expensive thing on the shelf. Even the basic lesser energy potion is 3 magic stones, lasts 3 days, and buys you 2 extra meditations a day, 30 stones a month, which was, to the coin, everything I earned. The testing grounds were a revelation, and also the grimmest thing I'd seen in months. Real facilities, alchemy puppets, automated devices, simulated elemental environments, and sparring partners. My lord, you are free to fight me for the duration of your rental period, and I will do as you request. A wizard in a thick alchemical robe, tattoo on the hand. I'd known the testing grounds had live opponents. I had somehow never once asked myself who they were. They're the failures. They're Bethany's classmates. They're the people from my own batch who missed the rune, and this is what the school does with them. It rents them out to be shot at, in armor, by children. The mortality rate here is very high. I noted it. I noted it honestly, and then I set it aside, and I would like to tell you I did something about it and I did not. Not for years. Come and fight me. And then I found the second big free lunch of that year. In actual combat, witchcraft proficiency rises 3 to 4 times faster. A spell that took a month in a courtyard took a week in a fight. I went back 10 days running. On the last day, I got the same sparring partner as the first, and he waved me on with the bored patience of a man who'd drawn an easy shift. That new wizard from the other day. Today was easy again. On day 1, my wind blade had been 30 centimeters long. I raised my hand without saying anything, and a blade 3 meters tall condensed out of the air in front of me, and the wind coming off it dug furrows in the ground. He stared at it. Wait a minute, something's not right. Then, at a range of more than 10 meters, he felt the wind element on his skin and forgot entirely that he was wearing protective gear rated to 10 energy intensities. Help! He ran for cover. The cover stopped existing. The blade went through where it had been and through him, and he sat down hard and opened his eyes a few seconds later and looked at the crack running across the front of his armor. Is this really a newcomer? He watched me walk over, and his lip curled up, and he said the exact words. This is a ghost. Windblade technique breakthrough. Great master level. Talent +5. Talent, 168 to 173. 5. Excellent grade pays 5. And on the puppet, the readout said 4. Let me put that in context. Ordinary grade spells are about 1 energy intensity. Excellent, 2 to 3. Great master proficiency multiplies by roughly 1.5. So the Windblade, a good excellent spell at maximum proficiency, reads 4. 6 runes worth of mental energy is a theoretical 24, except you can't spend it all. Dump everything into one spell and you lose control, and if you don't lose control, you'll be lying on the ground afterward anyway. Practical maximum is about a third, 8 energy intensities, enough to shatter a boulder. And that is the ceiling of a first-class wizard apprentice. That's the whole species. That's the top of what I was allowed to be. So we have to hide in the academy, I said, standing over a cracked puppet at the peak of my powers. If a war really breaks out and we run into those people, we might not even know how we died. I paid the Mutual Aid Society back first. Double, like I'd said. Nobody had asked. Then I had them buy lesser energy potion for me because I still had not been outside. 4 magic stones a bottle now, not 3. War pushes prices. You take it at the end of a meditation cycle when you're nearly empty. Then the fatigue doesn't land properly and you get 2 or 3 more sessions and the effect lasts 3 days. I took one every 3 days on the hour, forever, like a man on medication, and financially that is exactly what it was. 5th assessment, the last one before the finals. Meditation, 6 runes. Still 8th. Several others had reached 6 and had more mental energy behind them. 8 would get me top 5. Top 5 plus my potion scores should be enough. Top 3 was locked. 3 second-class talents, and above them, nothing was available to anyone. Combat, me and Brogan again. He'd bought an excellent grade defensive spell that month, and with a second-class talent's mental energy behind it, that shield did not want to break. I could have broken it. 2 ways. I could have used the Windblade, or I could have used instant cast, in which case Brogan would never have gotten a spell off at all. Ever. In his life. Both of those were worth exactly 1 magic stone that afternoon, and my entire future thereafter. So I lost. Narrowly. Respectably. Like a boy who'd hit his ceiling. In the end, is mental energy's talent superior after all? Alistair said from the sideline, and started thinking about how to recruit Brogan instead. At least in terms of future prospects, he decided, Liam is not as good as Brogan. That's an insurmountable gap between 3rd and 2nd class. It's not something you can overcome with hard work. He was correct about the general rule and wrong about the specific case, and that is the most dangerous kind of correct there is. Potion studies. First. Not close. Everyone else was working at half my speed. And in the back of the room, Quentin watched me put a bottle together in 15 minutes and understood finally, completely, what he was up against. So unless Liam dies, there's no way he could get into the potion department, which had been the plan for a month, except his brother hadn't come back. Alaric had said 1 month. It had been 1 month. Nothing. Has something serious happened? He couldn't do it himself. He'd tried once, in a chalk circle, and woken up on the ground with a nickname. That afternoon, I went out to the back slope to practice, and Alistair was standing on the path. Martial law is in effect today. Instructor Alistair, what happened? He spat out a breath. I shouldn't tell you. But you'll find out tomorrow anyway. Small-scale fighting had broken out in front of the school. The war had started. He looked at me for a moment. But Liam, are you really not considering the combat department? I shook my head, and then he did something that surprised me, which was to argue properly, with real information, because he genuinely wanted me and wasn't too proud to make a case. Wizard wars aren't like mortal wars. They last a long time. They completely reshape how resources get allocated afterward. Once this starts, the combat department will have the best benefits and the best opportunities. I see. You don't. He shook his head. If the war escalates and resources get scarce, even the potion department may not get enough. It's happened before, and the potion department consumes the most resources in the early stages and progresses the slowest. Even a genius like Arthur, 5 years in that department, and he's only a second-class apprentice. That last one landed. 5 years. Arthur. Second class. He was right about all of it. That's what makes it worth telling. He wasn't recruiting, he was warning me, and every single thing he said was true for a normal wizard. The war was, genuinely, the great opportunity of that generation, especially for people with mediocre talent. Everyone who went out there and survived came back years ahead of everyone who stayed. But they have to fight for resources to advance, I thought, standing on a path in front of a man trying to save my career. I don't. I just have to stay alive. As long as I'm alive, my talent improves. Sooner or later, whatever the wall is, I grow past it. Why take the risk? And it's safer, I said out loud. And Alistair stopped arguing. I watched his face change. It was the first time somebody I liked decided I was a coward. He admired talent. He also despised wizards without courage. You'll regret this, he said. He shook his head and started to walk away, and then turned back. Oh, and here's some good news. Brogan's decided on the combat department. That's one less competitor. The look he gave me with that was not admiration anymore. It was closer to pity, pity for a shallow soul. I did not feel insulted. My eyes lit up because Brogan meant 2 seats instead of 1, and that mattered more to me at that moment than any man's opinion. He was right though, not about me, about the world. Years later, I'd understand what an opportunity that war was, and by then it would be far too late to have taken it. For now though, the smell of it drifted through the school and a strange new mood came with it. War is an opportunity for wizards. People started saying it out loud. Alistair announced that all core combat squads were expanding this year, and wills began to wobble, even the Mutual Aid Society. Almost all of them started leaning toward combat. I went the other way and stopped leaving my room. 10 hours a day of meditation, 6 hours of rank 0 sorcery, 1 hour of cantrips, and shrinking, because cantrips had stopped paying. Too much overlap. Maybe 1 in 4 still had a genuinely new core in it, and the rest were dressed up repeats, but I didn't drop them. I sat there every day and did my 1 hour of party tricks, 1 point at a time, like a man putting coins in a jar, little by little. A week after the 5th assessment, I ran out of energy potion and went to the castle for my monthly stones. Hello, Mr. Pip? The owl was on the wolf, red eyes and a pale face, looking like he'd just woken up. Liam, it's been a long time. He nodded. Then his enormous eyes got wider. And then he stopped moving entirely and stayed like that and was still like that when I glanced back on my way out. He just started learning a month ago, Pip said to nobody. How is he already condensing runes? Because he could sense the wind blade in me, and it had a rune now. He blinked at that for a while. Did I misread it last time? Or did he simply not start practicing until after? The second one. It had to be the second one. That was the only sane answer, and the more he thought about it, the more sure he got, and the more sure he got, the colder he felt. Because getting proficient is practice. Anyone can practice. Condensing a rune is not practice. 99% of wizards go their entire careers without learning that it's a thing that happens. Only geniuses out of the big cities attempt it because it's a step on the road to official wizard. And this child was doing it like drinking water, in a month, off a feather. It feels like we've caught a big one, said Pip, in the tone of a man who has found gold in his own back garden and is now worried about the fence. Then, immediately, does it need special care? No, the investment is too expensive. Nobody's taking a single magic stone from me. He struggled with that. He struggled with it hard. Forget it. Forget it. Nobody's going to take it. But I can't give money. How about something without magic stones? A dozen minutes later, as I came out with my reward, a wing flapped very loudly directly above my head. Little Liam, so many magic stones again. Won't you let me try one? My eyes lit up, which tells you what kind of relationship this had already become. I handed over a stone so fast it was almost rude. Indeed, said Pip, chewing. This feather contains a certain amount of magic. If you throw it, it can unleash considerable power, equivalent to the full-strength attack of a second-rank wizard. A typical mid-level apprentice might not be able to withstand it. A feather came down, the full-strength attack of a second-rank wizard apprentice. In my pocket. Reusable, apparently, or at least usable once. which at my level is the same as owning a cannon. Thank you, sir. Genuinely. I meant it more than almost anything I'd said that year, and I keep hearing this owl described as greedy, so let's settle it. I really don't know how that rumor got started. Now, not 10 meters away, a wizard apprentice had been watching this entire transaction with his jaw slack. You get something in return for feeding him? He hurried over. Lord Pip, please enjoy this magic stone. Pip's red eyes rolled lazily. His beak opened. The stone went whoosh into it. Then he closed his eyes. The man waited. Sir, the feather? Pip preened. You want a feather for one magic stone? You're greedier than a demonic beast. Second stone. Swallowed. Nothing. The man began to struggle with himself. Pip's beak snapped once, sharply, and 5 magic stones flew out of the man's own pocket in a line into the owl's throat with a crisp crackling noise on the way down. It's barely enough now. He smacked his beak, settled his feathers, and pulled his head down into them. But I'm tired today. Let's talk another day. And went to sleep. The wizard stood there in front of a stone wolf with 7 magic stones gone, not daring to say a word, and remembered, far too late, the nickname, Greedy Pip. I sat up that night under the moon with a feather in my hand, feeling like a man who'd been hit by a critical strike in the direction of good luck. 9 months. The body's original owner had left the kingdom in March. It was November. It had gone by like a few days, and I noticed something for the first time, standing there. I was cold, which shouldn't have been possible. I was a knight with chi blood running in me and a wizard's magic wrapped around me. I did not get cold. The Emerald Shadow Forest ran colder than the kingdom, and it wasn't even winter yet. I looked out at that forest, an endless black thing, like an ocean that had decided to be trees, and got, for the only time in this whole story, properly homesick. It really is no longer Earth. And then I gave myself the answer I've been carrying ever since, which may be nonsense and which I have never once put down. They say powerful wizards can travel the astral plane. Maybe a powerful enough one could go home. Probably not. Almost certainly not. But I decided I was allowed to keep a shelf for it. Then I went inside and got back to work, because in the meantime, the family wizards and second-generation wizards were all pulling out their reserves for the finals. Advanced drugs, apparently, in some cases. So what? They were growing. I was growing faster. I condensed the 8th rune the day before the assessment, the final assessment of the advanced learning phase. I stood at the back of a classroom full of people I'd been measured against for 6 months and noticed they'd all stopped looking like children. Grade by rune count, C- to A+, 9 steps. Rowan, 5 mental power runes, B, which is respectable, which 6 months earlier would have been unimaginable. Then the 3rd class talent started. Blaze, 7, A-. The first A- of the day, and Blaze bloomed. He turned around before he stepped down and looked straight at me, and I could read the whole speech in his face. He'd taken an advanced mental energy potion, sponsored by the Oak family. He couldn't beat me in combat or in potions, and he knew it and had made his peace with it. But meditation was his. Meditation was where a 3rd-class talent was simply better, forever, and no amount of hard work touched it. In this respect, he is no match for me. Seraphina, 11, A+. Blaze's head went straight back down. That's the whole man in 2 seconds. He looks down on anyone below him, and he genuinely, sincerely worships anyone above. 11. I did the sum, and it's the honest measure of the gap. Runes get harder as you go. 8 had been the absolute wall of everything I had. Every trick, every stone, every potion, the panel, the notebook, all of it. And she had 3 more. Give me another season and I might not reach 11. But one day, I said quietly to the back of a classroom, I will also reach the level of 2nd-class talent. Brogan and Griffin, 10 each, A+. Quentin, 7, A-. He let out a breath he'd been holding for a month. Alaric had left him ample resources before disappearing, and he'd used them properly. There's still hope, he thought, watching everyone behind him come in at 7. There's still hope. Liam, 8 mental power runes, A, the first A of the day. Gareth looked up in genuine surprise, because in his records I was a talent problem, and talent problems don't produce the highest non-2nd-class score in the batch. Off to the side, Seraphina pressed her lips together. The apprentices her family had actually funded, the ones who met the minimum, the ones with the contracts, had topped out at 7. I should have agreed back then. How is that possible? Quentin, blankly. 2 runes in a single month. Not something a 4th-class talent does even on drugs. Is that really Arthur going all out? Or is it? Boss is really amazing, said the entire Mutual Aid Society at once. When it finished, there were 3 A+ and 2 A's in the whole cohort, and I was one of the A's. Top 5 in at least one course, guaranteed. Combat had no test. Combat was graded on the whole 6 months. Potion studies had a written paper and a live brew, and when I walked into the practical, the invigilator was Alara, gold-rimmed glasses, cold, watching each candidate and scoring as she went. No notes, no hesitation. My turn. She remembered me instantly, because a third-rank wizard apprentice does not forget things, and what she remembered was, this is the boy Arthur likes. He's a 3rd or 4th class talent. She did not care. Then she watched my hands. Something's not right. Her expression, which had, up to that point, done nothing at all, moved. This level of proficiency? Are you kidding me? Because Arthur, at my stage, could not have done that. She knew, because she'd trained Arthur. No wonder he thinks highly of him. And then, immediately, the practical thought. However, mental energy is still core. If the meditation assessment is bad, it's all over. The potion department requires at least an A- in meditation. I hope we can achieve that, she said, adjusting her glasses, and gave me an A+ without a second's hesitation. 3 days later, they pasted an enormous sheet of paper on a stone slab in front of the teaching area, and the whole batch went to read it. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, Seraphina, Brogan, Griffin. 4th, Preston, Witchcraft A, Combat A+, Potions A+. 5th, Liam, Witchcraft A, Combat A+, Potions A+. Identical scores. Preston was 4th and I was 5th because Preston belonged to the giant deer family, one of the 3 great families of the school. I looked at that for about 2 seconds and shrugged. Even in the extraordinary world, human relationships and social norms still exist. You can be furious about that, or you can be 5th, and 5th was all I needed. Of the top 5, Seraphina and Brogan had already gone elsewhere. 5th got me the potion department. Also, and I mean this, 4th would have been too high profile. Above me were 3 second-class talents, which is a nice safe explanation for anything. 5th is invisible. The Mutual Aid Society did not agree. If you were also a second-class talent boss, first place would definitely be yours. They crowded around me like I'd won something, which, from their side, I had. The unknown kid from our little dead classroom had come 5th in a school-wide batch of hundreds. And around us, a lot of people were doing a different sum. The envy that day was thicker than anything I'd felt before. I heard a 4th-class talent, a boy I'd never spoken to, say, with his eyes actually red, once he enters the department, those family wizards and second-generation wizards will really start to exert their strength. At that point, even with Arthur's support, he'll be surpassed one by one. And behind him, quieter, were both rank 4 talents. Why didn't I get Arthur's support? Blaze stared at the board and made his decision out loud. The only thing I'm lacking is resources, so I'll choose the combat department. He'd been stronger than me during the initial learning phase, even after his group died. Now he wasn't. He'd worked it out and he'd found the answer that let him keep going. Out there he'd get resources, and with resources his 3rd-class talent would finally show, and in a few years he would surpass me. I hope he believed it for a long time. It's a good thing to believe. Seraphina read the board with mixed feelings. The decision was indeed hasty, because the ranking proved I wasn't garbage. At minimum, my potential was comparable to a 3rd-class talent's. Then she got hold of herself. Ultimately, he is a 3rd-class talent. And she left, with her chin up, breathing slightly wrong. Brogan's eyes went straight to the combat column and stayed there. He was ranked above me. He also had to admit, privately, under equal conditions, that in a fight, he was the worse man. And Preston, 4th place, black hair, brown eyes, a giant deer heir with identical scores to mine, stood there shaking, because everybody was looking at 5th. Everybody, including the second-class talents, and a few of them were glancing at him with something that looked a lot like distaste, as if he'd taken something. On what grounds? Did he surpass me in the last month? I did not know his name that day. I would. And Quentin went white in the crowd because he'd done extremely well, 10th, and 3 of the people above him wanted the potion department, which meant it did not matter at all. He thought about the enormous quantity of magic stones his brother had poured into him, and he started to tremble slightly. Why can he do it? He skipped straight past 4th and looked at 5th. A fellow born a serf, the same meditation talent. And he surpassed me time and time again. How did he do that? He genuinely could not understand it, and never did. And that failure of understanding is the thing that killed him. Department selection. 3 choices, ranked. I wrote, Potion Department, Alchemy Department, a Combat Department, which anyone reading it would understand instantly. I put a Combat Department 3rd, in the slot you fill in when you have to fill it in. If Potions didn't want me, Alchemy would, and if Alchemy took me, I'd stay indoors. Alchemy can be very profitable, I said. The legacy's a little thinner, but it's enough for me. Because the external environment was exactly as harsh as advertised, and the entire strategy could be written on a coin, stay in the rear, Combat is obvious, but even the secret source department goes to the front line sometimes. Only logistics is basically, structurally, permanently behind everything. Lists in 3 days. I went home feeling lighter than I had in months. At the same time, in another room, a man came back. Quentin looked up and saw his brother for the first time in 2 months and nearly didn't recognize him. Alaric had a long scar across his face. His mental energy fluctuations had visibly dropped. "Brother, are you hurt?" Alaric nodded. He didn't bother hiding it. "The people from Blackstone School are fierce. I almost died in a battle. I survived, but my mental energy dropped a lot. I need time to recover." He'd been a second-rank wizard apprentice. The injury had temporarily knocked him back to first rank. It would come back, given time. He'd taken the opportunity to come home and rest. "How are you doing, though?" 10th. 10? The mental energy that came off him made Quentin's chest stop working. "Brother, listen, I've done my research. Of the people ahead of me, only 3 are planning to choose the potion department. I still have a good chance," which was a lie. He was lying to keep breathing. 3? Alaric frowned. "Then you can't get in either." Quentin's mouth kept going without consulting him. "Brother, how about we take one out?" "Kill one?" Alaric sat back and actually thought about it, and this is where you see how easy it was for him. He was, even injured, even reduced to first rank, comfortably beyond anything a 1-year apprentice could do. The only question was arithmetic. Who? The top 3 are Corbin, second-class talent, Preston of the Giant Deer family, and Liam. Second-class, untouchable. Giant Deer, untouchable. Commoner, available. And then Quentin played the card that made the whole thing worth doing. "And brother, this guy is definitely suspicious. A fellow villager told me the other day that he was in the same batch as Liam, and Liam's talent score was only level 5. 5th class? How is that possible? Because it isn't. Nothing about it works. 5th class does not come 5th. Even if the initial test was wrong, his progress is strange. When he first came in, his meditation wasn't fast at all. It got stronger and stronger later. Brother, there's definitely something secret about this guy." Alaric went very serious. He had walked in wanting to remove an obstacle for his brother. He walked out wanting to find out what I had. Maybe I can use it too. Fiona invited me to dinner when the results came out. "Liam, you've really become famous this time." She'd never taken me seriously, and now she had to, and was enjoying it more than she should have. "Luck. The system won't keep improving people over and over," she said, leaning back. "This time the family has brought me a new contract. 2, actually. 2. The first is the same as before. You only need to provide some help when the family needs it in the future. 10 magic stones. If you join a core department, 2 more. And the second? The second offers 20 magic stones, 25 in a core department. However, you'll need to step in if the family encounters a problem, though the probability is low." She looked at me properly. "I actually recommend you sign this one, because if you do choose the potion department, you'll be very short of magic stones." That was self-interested advice, and it was also completely sincere, which is the most useful kind. 20 a month, double, nearly the salary of a working potion master, against, "You'll need to step in." The first one. She groaned and threw it across the table. "I knew you'd choose that. You're only 13 and you have none of the drive of a teenager, which is a hell of a thing to say to a boy who has spent his entire life in this world calculating downside risk, and also completely fair. Look, 10 stones is 10 stones, 20 is better. But step in if the family encounters a problem is a blank check written on my body, signed by people whose problems I would not choose and could not decline. Arthur had already told me the Silver Moon Lakes were in trouble and that I should ignore whatever came. A magic stone less means a responsibility less. That's the whole rule. I never broke it. After dinner it was late, and the school had a night curfew because of the war, so she put me in a guest room, and I slept in a house on Maple Avenue for the first time. I walked home in the gray light before dawn. There were wizards moving in both directions on the road. A lot of the ones coming in were combat department, and as they passed me I could smell it. Blood. Faint, rusty, old. Hours old, at least. The border zone is a long way from the school, and it takes real time to get back, and it was still on them strongly enough that a 13-year-old could pick it out at 4 meters. "The wizards' battles are still very dangerous," I said. "No wonder the residential area is never full. A first-class apprentice is a terror in the mortal world. Out there, at the border, a first-class apprentice is the smallest unit of currency they have. That's why I wasn't going, not out of cowardice, out of arithmetic. I cannot control that environment. The school I can. At least inside the school, it's relatively safe." I turned the corner onto my street thinking that exact sentence. I stopped 10 meters from my own front door. I want to explain what stopped me because it was nothing. The gate was different, not open, not damaged, nothing you could point at. The gate was sitting slightly differently than it had been, and the ground in front of it had sunk very slightly, the way ground does when something heavy has stood on it. A normal wizard could not have seen that. There was nothing to see. I've gone back over it 100 times and there was genuinely nothing there. But I have a photographic memory, and that street was stored in my head like a stack of slides, and when I put yesterday's slide against today's, the difference screamed. I didn't move. A thread of mental energy went out. Detection. There's something extra behind that door. There really is somebody in there. Okay. I turned around and walked away and opened my mouth and shouted for help because this is inside the school and the patrol team is minutes away and all I have to do is make noise. The sound hit something. There was a thin film in front of my face. I could see it faintly when the shout struck it and stopped, like a stone thrown into cloth. Since you found out, I'll take care of you quickly. 10 seconds. The door came off its frame. The man who came through it I had never seen in my life. Black robe, practiced movements, eyes with nothing behind them but a schedule. He waved a hand, and an enormous blood-red hand came down at me, and the smell that came off it turned my stomach, and I felt my own mental energy try to seize up in my chest. Murderous intent. This person wants to kill me, and he is extremely strong. I got Pip's feather out, mental energy in. The feather answered with a wind element that was smooth and enormous, and did not feel like anything I could make, and it turned into a spiraling dragon of air, and went to meet the hand. Boom. The blood hand tore apart. The dragon kept going, and then dissolved. Alaric. I didn't know his name yet, actually looked surprised for a second. Second-rank techniques, not bad. He was already walking. But it's an inanimate object. No wizard is going to stand there and let you hit them. His hand closed on my throat. He lifted me and I made a sound like a kettle. His arm strength was ridiculous. His mental energy was so far past mine it wasn't a comparison, it was a category error. Don't expect anyone to come. I've set some things up on the other side. The patrol team should be over there, and I've made a quiet area here. Nobody will notice this spot for a few minutes. Then a mage hand took both my arms and broke them. Both, one after the other, casually, the way you'd snap kindling. He dragged me into an alley and set me against a wall and looked at me with genuine interest, and I hung there and thought, through a red haze, one useful thought. He hasn't killed me. He doesn't want to kill me immediately. Then there's a chance. I started gathering mental energy, slowly, under the pain. Because instant cast doesn't mean free. I still have to concentrate. I still have to have the energy in position. That part takes a moment, and it's the only part that's visible, and it's only visible if you know to look. He loosened his grip so I could talk. Just enough for that. Chanting an incantation was out of the question, and we both knew it, which was exactly why he did it. Who are you? You don't need to know that. I'll ask you a few questions, and if I'm satisfied, I can let you go. Which was such an obvious lie that I nearly laughed with two broken arms. But I cooperated, because I wanted to know why. Good. I want to know the secret of your rapid growth. I've investigated you, so you'd better not try to fool me. And there it was. And I want to record what I felt, because it was not fear. It was embarrassment. I'd been so careful. I'd kept my hand down in classrooms. I'd lost fights on purpose. I'd taken fifth instead of fourth. I'd built an entire false explanation and let it harden around me. And I'd still gotten louder every single month for a year, and somebody had added it up. I'd been treating the school as safe. The school is not safe. The school has never been safe. Arthur told me in the first month in 4 words, and I heard it and nodded and did not actually believe him. Understood. I'll be more careful in the future, assuming there is one. His trump card was mental energy and experience. Mine was a thing that does not exist at first rank, that he had no reason to suspect, that I had never once shown to a living soul, but I needed him closer. So I gritted my teeth and let my face do all the things a terrified 13-year-old's face does, and said, "Last year I got a wizard's book. After I read it, my talent kept getting better and better." His eyes lit up like a lamp. Of course they did. The wizarding world is full of wonderful treasures, and this brat had stumbled into one, and it was going to be his in about 90 seconds. Where did you put it? I put it in. I let it get quieter. I put it quieter. He leaned in. Now. Everything was already gathered. There was no word, no gesture, no warning at all. Just a rune lighting up in a place he could not see, and half of every mental power blaze I owned going into it at once. Wind blade technique. 24 energy intensities at arm's length from a boy with 2 broken arms. Alaric's eyes went wide. There was no time in the world for what he needed to do. The wind went through the space where he was standing. There was a sound like a sheet tearing in a storm, and then there wasn't a sound at all, and a dozen meters of alley wall behind him had new grooves in it. He was on the ground. His face still had the question on it. How does a wizard who's been enrolled a few months cast something like that instantly? I slid down the wall and sat in the dirt with my head splitting from the overdraw and looked at a dead man. That's why we have to hide our strength. I said it out loud to him, which was petty of me. I made myself get up. Both arms were useless and hanging, and the pain was doing something interesting to my vision. This is the first time, I said, and it will absolutely be the last. I meant it. I was 13, and I had just killed a grown man in an alley, and I meant every word. I got about 4 steps out onto the street before the patrol team came around the corner at a run. A stone room with one table, me on one side, several wizards in black robes on the other. Nobody had treated my arms. Name: Liam Stone. Tell us what happened. When I was on my way home today, I was suddenly attacked. I killed him in self-defense. Do you know he was a second-class apprentice? I didn't, but I'm definitely no match for him. The lead interrogator stood up. Then how did you kill him? Lord Pip once gave me a magical feather. I killed him when he wasn't looking. Which had the advantage of being nearly true, and the enormous advantage of being supported by the physical evidence, because a dragon of wind element had gone off in that street and left its fingerprints everywhere. The interrogator's brows came down instantly. Lord Pip? He said it with a very specific tone. You mean the Pip who is notorious for his greed? You're lucky if he doesn't ask you for something, and you're telling me he handed you a witchcraft tool for free? You can verify it, sir. I kept my eyes down. He was deeply unsatisfied, and he had every reason to be. The story had holes you could walk a horse through. His arms are obviously broken. How did he throw the feather? And an injured second-rank wizard has vastly more combat experience than a one-year apprentice. How did he get hit in a vital spot so easily? He underestimated his opponent, I said. He got too close. And then he changed the subject, which is what they do. Tell me, who is the deceased? I don't know. His name is Alaric, a second-rank wizard just back from the front lines. He paused, deliberately. He slowed his speech down for the next part, so I could feel it coming. He has a younger brother named Quentin. You should know him, right? Everything in my head lined up at once. The powder, the Market Road, Orion, Callum, 14 children. I know him, I said. He also wants to get into the potion department, and there are limited spots. I think he's 4th. We've never gotten along very well. That might be related. The interrogator tapped his fingertips on the table. The motive makes sense, but there are still doubts. Alaric didn't kill you directly. He broke your arms first. He leaned in. What exactly happened during that time? I said nothing. He stared at me. Then he waved at the door. Bring in Quentin. He's been listening. A section of the stone wall opened, and 2 black-robed wizards walked a young man in with his hands tied and his hair everywhere. He looked at me, and his whole face fell apart. He'd been sitting behind that wall listening to the whole thing, and he'd worked out from the questions that his brother had gone to kill me and had not come back, and then he found his voice. My lord, he's lying. That lowly Liam Stone must have used some evil magic to assassinate my brother. He's a useless 5th-class talent. How could he possibly kill a second-class apprentice with a tattered feather? Ah, my brother must have discovered his secret. That's why he killed him to cover it up. He probably broke his own arms to play the victim. The interrogator said nothing at all, which was so much worse than if he'd told Quentin to shut up, because Quentin, screaming, hands tied, hair in his eyes, had just accidentally said something completely correct. Sir, this person's resume is also a bit off. Another wizard slid my file across the table. The lead man read it out loud, slowly, in a voice that got flatter with every clause. A 5th-class talent, who condensed a mental power blaze during the 3-month preparation period at a rate comparable to a 3rd-class talent. Then, during the advanced learning phase, took first in almost everything except meditation, and came 5th overall in the final assessment. He looked up. Isn't that a bit outrageous? The interrogators looked at each other, and I watched the same thought pass between 4 professionals at once. There's definitely a secret about this person, and it may be extraordinary. Liam Stone, he said, and his voice had gone as cold as rain. You should say everything you haven't said yet. The room went completely still, and I sat there with 2 broken arms in a stone box, being questioned by professional interrogators about the one thing in my life that could not be allowed out, and I understood with total clarity that I was not going to talk my way out of this. They had time, they had authority, they had a file, and I had nothing but a story about a feather. The door came off the wall. Bang, and Alara walked in. Black robe with silver stitching, slid up one side, black boots, and the boots hit that stone floor like a metronome. There was pressure in front of her, the way there's pressure in front of a truck. The interrogators were on their feet before she cleared the doorway. Arthur was behind her. Vice Minister Alara. Liam Stone is from our potion department, she said. I'm here to recommend him. Flat, not loud, not a request. Her eyes went over me the way you'd inspect a piece of stock that had been damaged in transit but was still worth what you paid. Sir, the interrogator said, this is against the rules. With such conclusive evidence, what need is there for further interrogation? But I'm taking him. If there are any problems, have your minister come to the potion department and find me. She had not once looked at him. You're not qualified. And then to me, in exactly the same tone, come with me. I got up so fast I nearly fell over, went around 4 professional interrogators, and followed her out. At the door she paused. Also, send everything from the wizard who attacked me to the potion department. Me, not him. She'd already put me on the department's books, in a sentence, in passing, and made the loot a departmental matter while she was at it. Behind us, in a room that was very quiet, a young wizard said, Sir, are we just going to let them take him? Do you think I want to? The lead interrogator's face, by all accounts, was the color of ash. That's the potion department, one of the most core departments in the academy. Our minister has been begging them to concoct potions for us lately. And the confiscated items? Send them over. It's the potion department, after all. Several extremely competent men sat in a stone room feeling a tightness in their chests, and that was the end of the investigation into the death of Alaric. Thank you, Lady Alara. No need to thank me. Arthur found you. She said it without turning her head and kept walking. Teacher, I was going to congratulate you on getting into the potion department. You weren't there. I asked around and found out the patrol team had taken you. I stopped walking. Was I really selected? Yes. He was grinning. Congratulations on joining the potion department. It'll be a few days before you officially start. I'd had 2 arms broken and killed a man that morning, and that was the sentence that nearly put me on the ground. Arthur took me back to his house and set the bones himself, and I found out that a potion master is also, necessarily, a very good doctor. That's about it. I've applied some ointment. It should be healed in about a week. Stay here a few days. Don't go home for now. Then he told me what a core department buys, a flat on the ground floor, 4 or 5 times my current room, 5 magic stones a month base plus brewing money, 6 ordinary spells, and 3 excellent a year at 20% off, against 3 and 1 before. 20% off labs and testing grounds, materials and potions at internal prices, and the rule of the house, which he gave me straight. Under Lady Alara, you don't need to flatter her, you just need to prove you're worth her investment. The potential you showed in the assessment is the reason she took you out of that room. Prove you're worth it. Fine. That I can do. Flattery I'd have been terrible at. Next morning, Alara's office and the interrogator from the night before standing to one side looking like a man who had not slept. His name was Adrian Vance. The matter is clear now. We audited Quentin overnight and discovered he received funding from Alaric totaling more than 100 magic stones, I said, out loud, before I could stop myself. 100? We also examined Alaric's room and found a letter connecting him to Blackstone School. The room got very quiet. It was ultimately determined that he was recruited by Blackstone School a year ago. We found items in his house belonging to your fellow apprentices who died 6 months ago. He's the same wandering wizard from before. Orion, Callum, Thorn, 14 kids on the Market Road. Not a wandering wizard at all. A colleague, a member of this school for years, wearing the badge, taking the salary, marking children for slaughter, and a spy, in the school, undetected, for a year. The interrogator's face said exactly how that landed for his department. His purpose in killing you was to get his brother into the potion department, which, as an ending, is so small. 14 people died for a school assignment, and the 15th attempt was for a seat. What about Quentin? He'll go to the battlefield as a slave. I was satisfied with that. Very satisfied. Given Quentin's abilities, a slave on that front line does not last long, and I did the arithmetic and found it acceptable and went home and slept. Liam, my name is Adrian Vance. Thank you so much this time. He handed me a bag. Besides what I can't give you, here are some of Alaric's remaining items. They're quite valuable. He spent almost all his magic stones on healing potions, but there's also a personal thank you from the patrol team. I looked at Alara. Keep it, she said. I took the bag. It was heavy, and the stones clinked. Then I'll take my leave. You can ask me for help if you need anything in the future. He meant it. Alaric had been his failure, sitting inside his own perimeter for a year, and a 13-year-old had solved it by getting attacked in an alley. That connection lasted for years and was worth more than everything in the bag, and everything in the bag was substantial. 20 magic stones. Alaric had spent almost everything on healing himself and on Quentin. 3 excellent grade rank 0 spells. Adrian had pulled out an intermediate one because it was dark magic and it was above my level anyway, and swapped in 3 I could actually use. Acid Splash. which is the first spell I ever saw, which is a woman on a square in the sunshine. I read the name on the scroll and had to sit down for a second. Windshield, a layer of condensed wind on the skin, vine entanglement, control magic, using enchanted seeds, 45 magic stones of witchcraft, and more importantly, outside the quota. Even in the potion department, you can only buy 3 excellent spells a year. Adrian had been generous in a way that told me exactly how bad the Alaric business had been for him internally. Plus, the casting materials, acid vine sap, wind feather grass leaves, enchanted seeds, which taught me a thing about this world I hadn't understood. Most spells here need reagents, not just to learn, to cast. Every time. My windblade didn't, and I'd assumed that was normal, and it isn't. The windblade doesn't need materials because the feather was the material, and once you brand the rune, you never need anything again. Vine entanglement, on the other hand, will never work without seeds, no matter how good I get. Great master vine control with no seeds is a man standing in a field making a fist. So try to choose elemental magic in future, I wrote down. Fewest materials, most rune dependent. And at the bottom of the bag, 2 things. Lionheart Knight method, Great Knight chapter. The half Quentin didn't give me. Of course, they were brothers, it was a family method. Alaric had the rest of it the whole time. I laughed for about a minute. And a plain silver ring, mental energy in, concealment ring, rank 0 wizard tool, imprinted with 3 advanced runes and 26 basic runes. Effect, consumes very little mental energy, conceals the wearer's mental energy, actively generates a silent domain preventing sound from propagating within 10 meters. Creator, Lars Donovan, that membrane, that's what ate my shout in the street. Only a 2nd rank wizard apprentice carries a rank 0 tool, worth dozens of stones by itself, and it hid mental energy. I sat there holding it in a borrowed guest room and understood that I had just been handed the exact object my entire life required. I was a boy whose only real vulnerability was that somebody might look at him too closely. Alaric, I said, is a good man. Total value of the bag, over 100 magic stones. More than I had earned in a year of coming first in things. Sure enough. Murder and arson bring wealth and honor. It works just as well in another world. Then I sat with it for a while and wrote myself a new rule because the old one had just failed. Keep a low profile had gotten me here. During the apprenticeship, you have to compete. The rankings are public, the seats are limited. There is no way to be quiet and still get in. But that's over. I'm in a department now. New rule. Let things develop quietly and deal with them only after they're fully developed. No more visible competition. No more coming first if coming 5th will do. When I find a problem, I don't confront it. I grow past it, and then I remove it, at a time of my choosing, from a position where the outcome isn't in question. Because I got lucky in that alley. Genuinely lucky. He was injured, he was overconfident, and he leaned in. I can't possibly be that lucky every time. Only by staying alive can you become stronger. 3 days later, I walked out of Arthur's house, and my mental energy fluctuations were completely gone, not reduced, absent. The concealment ring cost less to run than my meditation rune generated, which meant it could stay on 24 hours a day forever at 0 net cost. I never took it off again. It's really useful, I said, touching it, and went to department assignment day. Seraphina, secret source department. Brogan, combat. Griffin, potion department. Preston, 4th place, giant deer, identical scores to mine. Potion department. Blaze, combat. The Mutual Aid Society, Dylan and Zico to the guards, Finn to reconnaissance, Marcus to a combat squad, none of them core, and Chloe of all people to the alchemy department, which surprised everyone including her. Quentin was already at the front. Adrian had told me, he most likely won't survive. Most likely. What if? I sat there with that, because I'd been satisfied the day before, and now I wasn't. Quentin was not a threat. Quentin was a fat, frightened boy with no brother and no money going to a place that kills people. He was also a loose end, and I could not rest easy while he was breathing. I really need to be more careful in the future. And then, quietly, in a classroom, at 13 years old, in future, if I find a threatening seedling, I take action first. I never repeat this. I'd like to say that I was disturbed by that thought. I wasn't. That's the part worth admitting. 2 people came from the potion department to collect us. A wizard I didn't know took Preston and Griffin, and Arthur took me, alone. Preston and Griffin turned around as they were leaving and gave me a look with a lot in it. Teacher? Who was that? Don't worry about it. You'll find out sooner enough. Which is not an answer, and I knew it wasn't, and I stopped asking. At the castle, I got a black iron badge with a crucible in the center. Arthur caught me looking around the gate on the way out. Why do I get the feeling you were expecting something? It's nothing, just that Lord Pip isn't here today. Arthur stopped walking. Pip? His face, at that moment, contained a running tally of every magic stone that Owl had extracted from him over the years, which was, I found out later, somewhere between dozens and hundreds. Yes, Lord Pip's quite nice. I said it perfectly normally. The magic feather that killed Alaric was a gift from him, and he gave it to me with a magic stone. Arthur did not say anything for several seconds. Ah? I have replayed that conversation for pleasure many times. The new residential area was called Emerald Grand Dao, 4-story buildings, 4 rooms per floor. Only wizards from the core departments live here, Arthur said. Or you pay. Pay? 3 magic stones a month, not cheap. We went in, 100 square meters, a living room, 3 bedrooms, a private bathroom. I stood in the middle of it and did not say anything for a while. I had spent a year in a room I could cross in 4 steps with a permanently damp floor. 1 room as a bedroom, I said eventually. 1 as a study, 1 as a laboratory. Then I went to see Alara, and she explained why 2 separate people had come to collect 3 new apprentices. The department is jointly managed by Vice Minister Sion and myself. He's in charge of resources and personnel. I'm responsible for review and formulation. We each manage some laboratories. She adjusted her glasses. Our philosophies differ greatly. I thought about the 2 groups at the door not speaking to each other. It's probably not just philosophies. New members usually start by working in various laboratories. I originally planned to assign you to Arthur's. Zion exercised his authority and assigned you to Edgar's. Edgar? Never heard of him. A staunch supporter of Zion, Alara said, with no expression whatsoever. More importantly, he has a grandson, who has always hoped to enter the potion department through this assessment and inherit his position. She let that sit. He was also in the top 10, but he was unlucky and ran into you, and you squeezed him off the list. I sat there. I'd never met the man. I'd never met his grandson. I did not know either of their names until that afternoon, and I had already, without any intent whatsoever, taken the only thing an old man had left. It's strange, isn't it? Said Alara, and something that was almost a smile crossed her face. The patrol team even suspected old Edgar, because if you died, his grandson would have gone into the potion department. She let that sit too. Even if Alaric had killed me, Quentin still wouldn't have gotten in. There were 3 seats, and 3 people ahead of him who wanted them, and my death would have handed the seat to a boy neither brother had ever heard of. 14 children on a market road, 1 man in an alley, a whole family destroyed, and the seat would have gone to somebody else anyway. How will Edgar target me? Edgar's lab mainly prepares several basic reagents, so you'll most likely encounter a lot of basic, repetitive work. I kept my face completely still. A lot of basic, repetitive work. It seems you already have an idea, Alara said. Remember, she went on, in the potion department, the strength of the potion master is fundamental. If you have the ability, no one can suppress you. Then she looked up. I look forward to the day you become a junior apothecary, and then I will transfer you away. I had the Mutual Aid Society over before everyone scattered. Wow, boss, this place is huge. I really want to live here. No wonder it's the core department. You can come here often. Chloe made a face. The alchemy department did reassign us housing. It's a third the size of this. Alchemists have grown pretty profitable, I said. You might be able to rent here in a few years. Her whole face changed. Thank you for your kind words. Then it got quiet because everyone had worked out that they were all leaving. Guards go outside. Reconnaissance goes outside. Combat squads go a lot further outside. Our guard team's all outside the school, Dylan shrugged. So the area should be much more spacious than the school itself. Exactly. But I really hate to leave the school, said Zico. Once you're in the Emerald Shadow Forest, who knows? So I stole Alistair's line and gave it to them because it was true and because they needed it. However, the current situation isn't good, which may actually be an opportunity for you. They lit up like a struck match. Yes, war's an opportunity for us. Maybe we can reach 3rd-rank wizard apprentice, even peak. Finn, who had not spoken in 6 months, stood up and made a speech. We will definitely become powerful wizards, I said. Even official wizards. And a group of 13-year-olds who had come together purely because they were all mediocre sat in a big empty flat and made enormous plans for the future. I propose we get together every 3 months, said Dylan. What do you think, Liam? Yes. Instantly. And not only for friendship, though it was that. I was about to spend years inside a building. My information about the outside world was going to be whatever the department chose to tell me, which is to say a lie with the boring parts left in. 5 people who go out into the forest and come back every 3 months is an intelligence service. Somebody hammered on the door. I opened it to a furious middle-aged wizard. What are you doing so late at night? Do you know you're disturbing my rest? It's only just past noon and we're not being loud. You think it's not loud because you say so? Which family are you from? Are you a new tenant? Potion department. The change happened in real time. I watched every muscle in his face reverse direction. Oh, potions. The potion department. Huh. Never mind then. I was just wondering why next door was so lively. My name's Robert. Magical Plant Department, because the Magical Plant Department reports to the Potion Department. You have fun, I won't bother you. And he bent down and helped pull my own door closed for me. The Mutual Aid Society sat in absolute silence for a moment. So this is the Potion Department, somebody said. 3 days later, with Alaric's book, I broke through to Great Night, 3 times a normal person's limit. I stood in my new room flexing a hand and thinking, quite clearly, if I'd had this before the alley, he doesn't get my arms. Talent. 3rd rank, 180 of 250, and cantrips were finally, formally, done. Retired. I'd wrung every point out of them there was. Now let's see what the Potion Department says. And that wizard Edgar. On the square, on my way in, I passed the combat department heading out. Dylan, Blaze, Brogan, Alistair at the front. Blaze saw me from a distance and his face did several things. He'd ranked below me, but the core squads had expanded because of the war, and he'd been swept in anyway. If it weren't for the war, I wouldn't even have gotten into a core department. But Liam, then he got his jaw set. Things will be different in the future. The combat department will be the mainstream for some time. Crafting potions will only slow him down. I will gradually surpass him. Brogan looked over too. He'd never lost the ranking, but he'd been beaten in combat training over and over by a boy with 1/3 of his talent, and he'd never once gotten it back. Once you enter the combat department, the gap will only widen, Alistair said beside him. You'll ultimately be a second-class talent. And that's true, said Brogan. Perhaps his name will only appear less and less in my ears in the future. And Dylan, at the back, with his eyes forward. So what if he's a rank 4 talent? He can definitely become an even stronger wizard. I don't know which one of us he meant. I've decided it was both. The potion department, 2nd floor, a laboratory of several hundred square meters, 5 or 6 wizards working, and a dozen school slaves doing the hard parts, and a smaller room off the side. Are you Liam? A slave came up and looked up at me. The wizard Edgar is already waiting for you. Inside, a gray-haired man in a white robe stained with medicine, deeply lined face, cloudy eyes, and Preston. Preston? He'd been assigned here too. Sir, this is Liam. Edgar raised his head very slowly, stood up very slowly, and walked over very slowly. And then he looked at me with those cloudy eyes the way you look at an enemy. Liam? I bowed my head. Yes, Liam Stone. He let several seconds go past. As a newcomer, you should have arrived early to familiarize yourself with the environment. Your attitude is very problematic. I'll be more careful in the future. Fine. I won't hold it against you. It's the first time. He waved a hand magnanimously. So easy to talk to, I thought, and did not believe a syllable of it. I'll arrange your next tasks. He turned. Preston, go and assist with configuring the lesser hemostatic potion. Then to me, Liam, go and deal with the potion materials. Get some practice first. They'd stopped pretending inside 4 minutes. 2 new arrivals, identical scores in the same assessment. One goes to the bench, one goes to the sink. A servant wizard walked me to a table piled with raw material and stood there with his hands on his hips. Currently, the laboratory uses 3 basic reagents. Lesser hemostatic, lesser stamina, lesser antidote. Lord Edgar has instructed you to process the materials for lesser hemostatic potion. At least 50 units per day. Only 5 may be spoiled. Any excess you compensate for. 50. I do materials fast. About 10 minutes a unit, 5 or 6 an hour. 50 units is a 10-hour day. This is definitely not a normal quantity, I said. What if more than 5 are damaged? 4 magic stone fragments each, which I'm sure won't be a problem for a wizard such as yourself. 10 fragments to a stone. It's a market unit. Nobody uses it inside the school. He'd looked it up specially. Okay. And then the servant leaned back on his heels because he'd been watching me take it, and something ugly and happy woke up in him. Of course, if you think it's too much, you can beg Lord Edgar for mercy. Though your excellency should. I hit him with a wave of mental energy. Not a spell. Just pressure, off the front of my mind, the way you'd shove somebody with a shoulder. He stopped talking and started gasping. The whole laboratory turned around. That looks like temper. It wasn't. Inside this school, if an official wizard kills a servant wizard, the fine is roughly 1 magic stone. That is the actual, literal gap in status between what I was and what he was. And he'd just spoken to me like that, in public, on my first day, in front of the whole floor. A servant does not do that unless he's been told he can, which means the humiliation was Edgar's, delivered through a mouthpiece, to establish the shape of the next several years. And you cannot be soft in that moment, not in an enemy camp. Softness on day 1 is a price list. What are you trying to say? It's nothing. I'll go get the materials for you right away. The straight back was gone. He bowed twice on the way out and did not look at me again. Fine. Don't try to fool me with junk. He mumbled something and fled. Around the lab, several wizards revised something in their heads. He's not as weak as he looks. Brother, you're awesome. A wizard with a sallow face came over grinning, which surprised me because nobody in that room had approached me at all. My name is Cedric Reed. I'm also under Lady Alara's command. Small wizarding family, attached himself to Alara during his apprenticeship. Which meant he'd been posted to Edgar too, 3 years ago. I have a lot of work every day, he said cheerfully, in the voice people use when they've stopped hoping. And I often have to pay compensation, which makes my mental energy grow very slowly. I'm planning to transfer to the combat department in a few months. 3 years, in this room, grinding somebody else's materials and paying fines for the privilege. Is there any way to leave? Become a junior apothecary. I sat up. If you can skillfully prepare 3 basic potions and successfully produce 3 finished doses out of 5 sets of materials, you can become a junior apothecary. It increases your benefits and privileges, including the right to prepare potions independently. He said it with the specific bitterness of a man reciting a thing he has failed at. Brother, he added, looking at me with pity, I think you've been making plans for a while now. Because of Edgar, you're being targeted even harder than I am. It'll probably be difficult to make a name for yourself here. 3 kinds of medicine, I said, and my face did something strange, and I turned it toward the bench so he wouldn't see it. Because Cedric was right about him and completely wrong about me. In this environment, improving proficiency is nearly impossible. You get no bench time and you pay for your own mistakes, unless prepping materials raises your proficiency. Which it does, which nobody in this room knows, which is why they gave it to the slaves. Edgar had looked at a boy he hated and decided to bury him under an industrial quantity of the exact activity that makes me stronger, at the department's expense, forever. Isn't this exactly what Edgar made me do? The servant came back with baskets of material, quality neither good nor bad. I took a deep breath and buried myself in it. Across the room, Preston watched me stand at a sink for the rest of the day and clicked his tongue. Liam, how far can you go without the support of your department? He was a family wizard. He knew precisely how hard it is to make junior apothecary without your lab behind you. If he keeps this up, he'll just be the next Cedric. The gap will open fast, and then I'll make junior apothecary. And nobody will say my ranking was stolen anymore. Day 1, 10 hours, 50 units, 2 spoiled, 20 points of proficiency. I sat there afterward feeling briefly cheated because a single brew would have given me 100. Prep is worth about 1/3 of a point per unit. 50 units of donkey work is a rounding error against real bench time. Then I did the other sum. I needed 320 more points, 50 units a day, every day, at somebody else's expense, forever, half a month. It seems Edgar's laboratory, I said out loud, at a sink. Isn't that bad? Then the costs arrived and wiped the smile off. 3 magic stones a month to rent a battered equipment set. 20 to buy 2 potion recipes. From 37 stones, I dropped to 8 in an afternoon. We've gained more resources, I told an empty flat that could have held 6 of my old room, but we're spending more too. I felt poorer than I had ever felt in my life, including the months when I owned 1 magic stone, and that is what a promotion actually is. I started quietly selling the practice potions I'd made in Arthur's lab, 10 bottles, worth about a stone each. By day 3, the materials got worse, not dramatically, just noticeably shabbier, batch after batch, so that everything took longer and spoiled more easily. And the inspection of my finished work became absurd. A speck, a shade off, anything at all got me a rejection. Cedric was targeted too, but not like this. And even Preston, same lab, same intake, was already on the bench working toward junior apothecary while I was still grinding. The only reason I was passing inspection at all was that my hemostatic proficiency was at expert, and even a hostile examiner cannot find fault in work that is genuinely better than his own. Day 10, lesser hemostatic potion breakthrough, great master level, talent +5. Talent 180 to 185. 5 points from a basic reagent at the sink while being punished. It wasn't free though. I'd had those 3 excellent spells from Adrian for weeks and hadn't touched them. Not once. There was no time. 10-hour days and then meditation, and the day was gone. That was the real price of Edgar's lab, and it went on for months. Then a servant came to say Edgar wanted to see me. He was sitting behind a table with the materials I'd finished that morning laid out in front of him. He picked up a stalk of 3-leaf hemostatic herb and turned it over and smiled. Liam, your handling of materials is truly skillful. I did not think this was a compliment. But dealing with only this won't do. Half a month has passed. The other 2 types should be nearly finished by now. Let's start on new materials tomorrow. New materials. Unfamiliar reagents, which means more spoilage, which means compensation, which means my wages go to him. Okay. You don't need to be upset. Letting you handle materials is also a way to hone your skills. Young man, There will be plenty of opportunities in the future. Everyone smiled. It was extremely harmonious. I left, and behind the door his gaze went to the table. Because the work was good, even he couldn't fault it, which was why the inspectors had stopped being able to. But there's always a way. If the hemostatic materials are handled well, then don't let him handle hemostatic materials. And when the stamina and antidote reagents are finished, there will be other things. In short, he just had to mess with Liam. And then, sitting alone in his own laboratory, an old man said the sentence that explained everything he did to me for 2 years. My poor grandson is still on the front lines. He was one of the oldest people in the department. He'd had a son. The son died a few years back, unexpectedly. All he had left was a grandson. He wasn't chasing official wizard anymore. He'd given that up long ago. He wanted one thing, which was to have the boy under his own roof, in the safest building in the school, growing up slowly where nothing could reach him, and the boy had come 10th and had not gotten in because a serf came 5th. He'd been investigated over the death of Alaric because he had the clearest motive of anyone, which meant he'd spent a week being questioned about a murder he had nothing to do with on account of me, and had come out the other side hating me the way you hate weather. Why didn't Alaric kill him? And me, walking out of that laboratory. Old man. Quentin's lesson was very fresh. I'd let a threat live once, and it had cost me both arms in an alley. But Edgar was a second-rank wizard apprentice, and I was a first-class boy at a sink. So I wrote him down in my little notebook and waited. Next morning, the table had lesser stamina potion materials on it. Blood orchid, quiet grass. Clumsy, unfamiliar, slow. 2 points a set instead of a third of a point, because low proficiency climbs fast. That's the whole shape of the machine. The first 10th of any skill is nearly free, and the last 10th costs a fortune. Edgar had just handed me a brand new bar to fill, and the early section of a bar is the cheapest ground there is. Beginners improve faster, I told the bench. Everybody else went home at noon. I finished at 4. Preston walked past me on his way out with his back very straight. You followed the wrong person. He wasn't wrong about the general principle. If it had been him, he'd have gone to Zion and never been touched. I'm relatively proficient in hemostatic now. I'm getting familiar with stamina. Within 3 months, I should be able to prepare them properly, and within 6 months to a year, I'll have a shot at junior apothecary. By then, Liam will probably still be dealing with materials, and nobody will say I'm not as good as Liam. He felt much lighter, and he strode off, and he was, to be fair to him, running a completely reasonable timetable. 6 months to a year to junior apothecary with departmental backing is fast. I glanced at the panel. Lesser stamina potion, proficiency 2 of 200. A week to get the configuration working. A month should be enough for perfection. Then I deliberately slowed myself down in public, so he could finish it at a believable speed. Payday. Zion distributes to the labs, and the labs distribute to the people, which meant my wages came out of Edgar's hand. Your salary this month is 5 magic stones, but you need to compensate 4 magic stones for damaged materials and 1 for damaged equipment. He looked up. So your total is 0. I stood there. I had never spoiled more than 3 units in a day, not once. I'd been counting deliberately and holding it under the line on purpose, and there were days I'd deliberately taken longer to keep the number down, and the equipment claim was simply invented. Whole cloth. He hadn't even tried. I want to check the records. His cloudy eyes went wide with delight. Records? The lab processes thousands of materials every day. Is it really necessary to create a separate file for you? I said 4, so it's 4. He leaned forward. What? Do you think I'm deliberately making things difficult for you? I see. Good. Don't waste other people's time. I turned around and walked out, and as I stepped through the door, I heard him laughing. 0 for a month of 10-hour days, which left me on the Silver Moon Lake stipend, which was now my entire income. I went to Maple Avenue the next evening, and Fiona opened the door, looking exhausted in a way I'd never seen. Liam, you've come. Senior, what's wrong? It's nothing. Please come in. She wasn't going to tell me. Fine. I took my stones. Daisy walked me out, and at the gate I stopped. What exactly happened? The maid hesitated and bit her lip. Edgar, from your potion department, contacted our family, hoping to cancel your funding. I stood very still. Some people in the family agree. They say you're not even a junior apothecary, but young miss disagrees, so they started arguing. She glanced up. It's not that exaggerated. If you advance to junior apothecary, the family probably won't say anything. I thanked her and walked home. He contacted the family. Take my wages. Fine. That's inside his authority, and I can eat it. But he had gone outside the school, found the only other pipe feeding me, and put his hand on it. That's not spite. That's a siege. And Fiona had stood in a room full of her own family and taken the argument for a boy she barely knew over 8 magic stones a month while her house had problems of its own. I put that in the notebook too. different page. Whenever there's an opportunity in the future, it will definitely pay off. Lesser stamina potion hit Great Master. Then Edgar handed me lesser antidote potion, and several of those materials were poisons, which are slow and finicky and require care, which cut into my meditation time as well as everything else. Second month, salary 0 again. Alara's, that is, the Silver Moon Lakes, arrived on time, and I finally condensed the 10th mental power blaze. 2 months in the department, and I had never missed a day of meditation, not once. Roughly 1 rune a month, held steady even in the month that nearly killed me, but this one took 4 or 5 days longer than the last. The condensation of runes is becoming increasingly difficult, which I'd expected. It did the same thing during the apprenticeship, and I'd outrun it then by pushing talent. But talent growth had slowed over these 2 months because every waking hour was going into somebody else's sink. The curve was starting to bend the wrong way, and meanwhile, fighting outside every day, infighting inside, and an old man 2 floors up who was a second-rank wizard apprentice. Even weakened by age, a level 2 wizard is a different order of thing from a first-class apprentice. In this environment, the strength of a first-class wizard is far too weak, so I made a decision that broke my own rule, and it needs justifying properly. Everything in me said hide. Hiding is the strategy. Hiding has kept me alive, but hiding has a failure mode, and I was standing in it. The weak get bullied. Fiona's family had nearly cut me off because I looked like nothing. Edgar was escalating because he could. If I stayed invisible in that building, I would be ground down by people who felt no risk in doing it. Sometimes showing it off is also a form of hiding. You expose a controlled amount of capability in exchange for a much larger amount of safety, and you keep the real engine underground. I needed Alara's attention. Real attention, the kind that makes an old man think twice. The benchmark. Arthur made junior apothecary in a month and a half, but Arthur had half the wizarding families of the region feeding him. 3 months under active suppression on a small family stipend would be a number people talked about. Lesser antidote potion hit Great Master. Talent, 195. 1 step from 200. Time to be loud. I knocked on Alara's door. She looked up and something crossed her face that I didn't understand until later. Liam, is there something you need? If it's about transferring out of the department? If you've really thought it through? Ah, she'd known. She'd known the whole time exactly what Edgar was doing, in detail, and had not lifted a finger because the entire arrangement was a test, and she'd just watched me walk in 3 months later with the face of a boy about to quit. A small disappointment rose in her. No, Department Head Alara, I want to apply for the Junior Apothecary Assessment. Her pupils dilated. The Junior Apothecary Assessment? 3 months, in Edgar's lab, on a small family's money, having never once been allowed near a crucible. Are you sure? Sure. Okay, Alara is decisive. That's the whole personality. She also, I found out later, simply concluded that I would not lie to her about something that would be disproved in an hour. Go down to the lab and wait, or stay here. I'll let Edgar know. Because procedure says the supervising wizard has to be present. The door opened and Edgar came in looking bewildered. Alara had summoned him, and they had, essentially, no professional relationship. Then he saw me, and he understood, and his face relaxed. Vice Minister Alara. If you're here to mediate, I don't think it was necessary to invite me today. No politeness at all. He was Zion's man, and he was not afraid of her. No, Liam is taking the Potion Master assessment. As his supervisor, you need to be present. He stopped. Wait, Junior Apothecary assessment? He looked at me. Because he knew, precisely, in detail, better than anyone alive, what I'd had. He had personally ensured I never touched a brewing bench in that department. He had personally withheld my wages, twice, on invented charges. He had personally tried to cut off my outside funding. Vice Minister Alara. He produced a smile with nothing behind it. This joke isn't funny. I'm not joking. The servants were already laying out the materials, 15 sets, 5 of each potion. A recording crystal went up on its stand. Now that everyone's here, Liam, begin. I didn't look at Edgar. I went to the bench, processed the materials, prepared the potions. The first bottle of lesser hemostatic potion came together in about 12 minutes. I heard Edgar's breathing change. 3 sets of materials, 3 bottles of hemostatic, clean. He was not doing well. He's already very proficient with hemostatic, he said to himself, but the other 2 are. I started the stamina potion. Damn it! Because he was watching a boy who had never been allowed on a bench in his laboratory move through a potion with hands no worse than his own. 1 bottle, 2, 3. Halfway through I went dizzy. This was hours of continuous mental energy expenditure, and I was a first-class apprentice, and there's only so much in the tank. And Alara, who had been perfectly still the entire time, tossed me a bottle. That's an energy potion. It's permitted during preparation. I knew what that was. Rank 0 intermediate, extremely valuable. I had never held one. I drank it, and my depleted everything came back, fully, in about 4 seconds, and my eyes went wide. How amazing would this be for practicing witchcraft? Focus, Liam. An hour later, 3 bottles of antidote, 1 failure, 12 sets of materials, 9 bottles. Alara pursed her lips and looked at a 13-year-old boy. She'd met me once, at the final assessment, and I'd shown potential. Not enough potential to justify investment, which is exactly why the last 3 months had happened. Actually, according to her original plan, she was going to start subsidizing me this month. Ease the pressure gradually. Let the pot simmer. I'd come in a month early. He's less talented than Arthur, she thought, but in potion studies his talent is on par with Arthur's, or surpasses it. And a very small smile happened on a very cold face. Liam, congratulations on passing the junior apothecary assessment. Thank you, Minister. 3 months. First step taken. And behind me, an old man had gone the color of paper because he was going back over every day of the last 3 months and finding in every single one of them a boy who was unremarkable, competent, slightly slow, nothing special. That had been the disguise, all of it, on purpose, for 12 weeks. He shouldn't even have let Liam touch the materials. Unfortunately, it was far too late, and what I'd just shown in front of a recording crystal meant he could not touch me for some time. He flicked his sleeve and walked out. Then, in the outer laboratory, he grabbed a full set of experimental equipment off a bench and threw it on the floor. Damn it! Damn it! Everyone in the room stopped. Preston, mid-brew, looked up, and Edgar's eyes found him. What are you looking at, Preston? You're dealing with materials tomorrow, too. I have it on good authority that Preston felt the sky come down. Alara put away the crystal. Congratulations, Liam. Then, because I was visibly about to fall over, and because the energy potion fixes the mind and does absolutely nothing for a body that had been standing for 6 hours, energy potion relieves mental fatigue. It doesn't work on physical fatigue. You look like you need a day off. Let me take you home. The deputy head of the potion department walked a 13-year-old apprentice home. Halfway there, I said, Minister, may we take Maple Avenue? She looked at me. She did not ask why. Sure. I knocked on number 37. They're here. Fiona pulled the door open with the specific speed of someone expecting different guests, saw me, and her face went tight. Liam, I'm sorry. The family's having visitors today. It's not convenient. Then she looked past my shoulder and stopped functioning. Liam? A man's voice from inside. Footsteps. The door came the rest of the way open and a middle-aged wizard strode out mid-sentence. You've come at the right time, Liam. Edgar, and his body froze. Nothing much, I said. I just wanted to let you know I've been promoted to junior apothecary. This is department head Alara. She's seeing me off. I didn't plan the scene. I want that on the record. I planned to mention the promotion at the door. The rest of it was theater the universe threw in for free. Okay, said Fiona, in a voice with a crack in it. Junior apothecary. 3 months. She'd bet on 6. That's what she told the family when she fought them. Give him 6 months. That's what she'd been taking the pressure for. And she knew, better than the men in her living room, what it meant that Alara had walked me home. She had never once heard of Alara walking a new wizard anywhere. Then I'll be going. I nodded like a man passing on the street, turned around, and left. Fiona shut the door and looked at the middle-aged wizard and said absolutely nothing. He stood there for several seconds. There's no need to say anything. We were wrong this time. The family will compensate you and increase Liam's funding, at least to 15. Not enough? 20. She nodded, satisfied. As for Edgar, feel sorry, not familiar with him. Next day, the entire potion department greeted me in the corridor, not politely, warmly. Liam, good afternoon, potion master. Because the potion department is large, and it is also very small, and any piece of news goes through it in an afternoon. They'd all worked out why Edgar had thrown a bench set on the floor. 3 months. Normal is 1 to 3 years. And in Edgar's laboratory, of all places, they knew exactly what I'd been under. They'd been watching it for 12 weeks. Why is a potion master making things difficult for a potion master? That's Edgar's business, nothing to do with us. I got more goodwill in one morning than in the previous 3 months combined, and every single gram of it was because of a number. On the stairs, I met Cedric coming down with a box in his arms. Liam! He tried very hard. Congratulations! You've been promoted to junior apothecary. What's going on? He shrugged, aiming for casual and missing by a mile. It's nothing. I'm leaving the potion department today, heading to the combat department. Wishing you all the best. Thanks. He went past me and down the stairs, and as soon as he was out of sight, his face collapsed and he aged about 10 years. Same circumstances, different outcomes. He'd been under less pressure than me, and he'd been at it for 3 years, and a boy who'd arrived in the autumn had walked out in 3 months. I have thought about Cedric a lot. He was kind to me on my first day when nobody else in that room would speak to me. He was completely correct about everything he told me, and there was nothing whatsoever I could do for him. Because the thing that separated us wasn't effort or intelligence. He just didn't have the machine. Alara's terms: 1. Salary from 5 to 10 magic stones. 2. Access to the potion department's own library, much deeper than the school's, and the right to purchase Wizard Legacy. 3. Independent brewing authority. I only had to be in the department 15 days a month. What about the losses? As long as you don't go too far, don't exceed half. I actually gasped. Half. An ordinary wizard who wasted half a department's materials would be thrown out of the building. She'd just handed me a standing budget to fail with. If value is sufficient, the reward far exceeds expectations. Arthur had told me that in exactly those words, and I hadn't believed him either. But that only applies to basic potions. To prepare advanced potions, you must at least be proficient in the legacy. She let me be happy for about 4 seconds, and then went serious. It seems like the outside world is already fiercely competing with Blackstone School, but that's just the appetizer. Neither school has really gotten serious yet. Ah? The intensity will increase. The school is already preparing to send a potion master to the front lines. That'll be handled by Zion. I stopped breathing. Will they send me? I've negotiated. Currently, it's tentatively set that only wizards who've been at the academy for 2.5 years will be sent. 2.5 years. I'd been here 1.5 years of grace. So the war will still be going in 1.5 years, and I'll be sent out then. As long as I'm here, it won't happen. She looked at me. But nobody knows what things will be like. Which is the most honest promise anyone made me in that building. Is there any way out? Yes, entering the cultivation sequence. Her eyes changed when she said it, and I realized this was the thing she'd been steering the whole conversation toward. The cultivation sequence is prepared by the Academy for wizards capable of aiming higher. As long as they advance to second-rank wizard apprentice or to an intermediate profession within 2 years of enrollment, they can enter. There are many advantages, and since you'd be directly under the school's management, Zion can't do anything about it even if he wants to. I did the sums fast. Second rank inside 2 years. That's 20 runes plus a structure. Essentially impossible for a third-class talent. That's a second-class talents lane. Which leaves intermediate pharmacist. Does the minister want me to aim for intermediate pharmacist? Yes. She took a breath. Whether for me or for yourself, the cultivation sequence is an opportunity. The school is too small. If you want to go further, you shouldn't miss it. Within 1.5 years, advance into the cultivation sequence. There was no other option. There was, in fact, no option at all. The only alternative on the table was the front line, and I had spent 2 years arranging my entire existence around not going there. Fine. Half an hour later, I was standing in the potion department's own underground library, which smelled of plants and made the school's library look like a shelf. Within the school, 2 potion master arts were passed down from the wizard Blackwell. Ilara walked ahead of me down the rows. The Radiant Eye and the Spiritual Guidance Technique. The former lets you identify the energy within materials. The latter releases a gentle mental energy field that harmonizes violent magical factors. Both require a level 2 wizard to begin learning. The junior apothecary versions are simplified. Glimmer Pupil and Guidance Technique. 100 magic stones each. I made a sound. 100. Each. 200 total. I had just been promoted to a salary of 10 a month, which meant that if I ate nothing and bought nothing, I could afford one of them in 10 months. Ilara adjusted her glasses and handed me both memory crystals. Consider this a gift from me, and an apology for not being able to help you over the past 3 months. I hope you don't mind. I don't mind. I don't mind. I said that very fast. I've given you the legacy. I'll take care of things in the department for you. The rest is up to you. She was already turning to go. In the world of wizarding, ultimately you have to rely on yourself. I can only offer meager assistance. 200 magic stones of knowledge described as meager assistance handed to a boy who could not have earned it in 2 years of continuous work. That's what value buys. I went to the castle to register the promotion. Pip was on the wolf. He opened one eye as I went in, and I heard him sigh behind me. It's been 3 months, and the progress seems to have slowed down compared to before. Because he'd been checking, every time. Reading my windblade like a dipstick. So it's still talent restriction after all. He was genuinely disappointed, and this is the part that gets me genuinely sad about it. An owl sitting on a stone wolf, working out that the promising child had hit his ceiling. Why? The problem is, there's no solution either. Because the things that raise a wizard's talent are rare treasures. Not rare like expensive. Rare like a school this size will never own one. I can only provide some investment within my capacity. The rest is up to him. Then I came out with a star on my badge. I heard the wings before I saw the shadow. Little Liam, you're surprising me more and more. Congratulations on advancing to junior apothecary. We couldn't have done it without the school's help. Talking about the school is nonsense. He said it flatly and with total contempt, and I went very still. Not getting into the cultivation sequence doesn't help the school at all. They're just cannon fodder. He said it as an offhand remark. As Blackwell's demonic beast, he had the deepest understanding of that institution of anyone in it, and he tossed the whole hierarchy in the bin in one sentence without noticing. Could you tell me what a cultivation sequence is, Lord Pip? It's something the old man came up with for the initial screening of talent at the school. He blinked. I suggest you try, because you can only access many things once you're in. Then a feather came down. That's a gift for your promotion. It's imprinted with a high-level spell. Excellent grade, which even a core department has no authority to purchase, which is not on any list, which is not in the ordinary sense, for sale. I'm not stupid, by the way. Once or twice is generosity. Every single time is a strategy, and by then, I'd heard enough about Pip to know the whole campus considered him a shakedown artist who'd pluck a hair off a passing dog. He wanted something, obviously. So what? I was getting more than I was giving by an enormous margin, and I was not greedy. I handed over every magic stone I had left, all of them. Pip's eyes lit up and he swallowed the lot. You're so thoughtful, he said, feathers spreading, looking at me with something almost like affection. Come find me again once you've joined the cultivation sequence. Meanwhile, on the 3rd floor, in an office not far from Alara's, a dim room, completely silent, like a snake pit buried underground. Edgar stood in it, sweating. Edgar. Minister Zion. Behind the black table sat a middle-aged wizard in a black robe with his hair pulled back, and his eyes had vertical pupils, like a snake's. He was promoted to junior apothecary in 3 months. If you hadn't told me it was a hostile posting, I would almost have thought you were helping him. Minister, how is that possible? You know, even my own grandson. Stop. Zion raised his head. So you just watched a man comparable to Arthur get away, right under your nose. The table took a hit, and Edgar's heart nearly stopped. Minister, it's all because that despicable Liam is too cunning. Minister, what do you suggest we do? What should I do? You're asking me? Zion's teeth showed. Now that Alara is protecting him, what can I do? If you'd found out sooner, things wouldn't be like this. We can only wait and see how the war develops, and your laboratory's resource allocation is halved for the next 3 months. Edgar's heart bled visibly, and he nodded, and when he got back to his own floor, a potion master was already waiting with a box. Wizard Edgar, the review office says there's a problem with this batch. He stared at a rack of perfectly ordinary potions. Then he understood. Damn Alara. Damn Liam. And whatever he'd felt about me before that afternoon, it doubled. Alara assigned me an assistant. His name was Silas. He was one of her own servant wizards, and he was being lent to me, which is not a thing junior apothecaries get, and which she waved off with, it's safer to use someone you know. Silas was furious. He hid it badly. He had been a servant to the deputy head of the potion department. Now he was a servant to a 13-year-old with 1 star on his badge, and he stood in my new laboratory, a bare corner room on the ground floor, 40 square meters, completely empty, with an expression like a man who had been demoted into a cupboard, which, from where he stood, he had. I looked around the empty room and got over my own disappointment fast. I'm overthinking it. Even if someone is favored, they can't be looked after in every single way. What would that even be? Because Alara valued me for one reason, and if I stopped producing that reason, she would drop me the same afternoon, and I never once forgot it. Advanced salary, 30 magic stones, 3 months up front. With that in my hand, my back straightened noticeably on the walk down the corridor. At the supply depot, the clerk had a face like a closed shop. Renewal? Name? Liam. Liam? The face opened. Okay, please sit down. Wait just a moment. He flipped through his book, found the record, looked up, and beamed. Wizard Liam, your equipment's a bit old. How about I get you a new set? I looked at the battered thing I'd been renting for 3 magic stones a month. Can I exchange it? I didn't bring it today. What are you saying? Department head Alara thinks very highly of you. Bring it over in a few days. And he went into the back and came out with a brand new set, unopened. My lip twitched. That damn potion department. That's for real. But he likes it. First session in my own laboratory. Silas, get me 8 doses of lesser sedative materials and 12 of lesser hemostatic. Okay. He said it like a man being asked to fetch a bucket. 20 sets arrived. 20 sets at once on my bench, mine to ruin. I sat down and had a moment about it. In Edgar's lab, I could not have gotten 20 sets of anything in a week. Preston hadn't gotten this treatment. New potion first. I studied the recipe again, then went at it. 20 minutes. A puff of smoke. Failure. Clumsy technique, Silas thought, standing behind me, and got even more depressed. Silas, can you help me with the materials too? Okay. And I watched him work and nearly said something, because he handled reagents like a veteran of 20 years. Ilara's servants, it turned out, were not people you get by applying 8 doses of sedative, 8 failures, not 1 success. Next time I should be able to get the hang of it, I said, and turned to the hemostatic materials, 12 or 13 minutes a bottle. So fast? Said Silas, glancing at the hourglass, which had not run out yet. Under the same conditions, he thought, Department Head Ilara might not do it that fast. By the end of the day, 20 sets of materials, 11 bottles of lesser hemostatic potion out of 12, over 90%. He carried them away with his throat working. Then he started keeping records, not because anyone asked, because something had begun to itch. Day 2, 8 sedative sets, 1 success, 12 hemostatic, 10 successes. Day 3, 10 sedative, 1, 10 hemostatic, 10. Day 4, 11 sedative, 2. Day 5, 12 sedative, 3. Day 6, 8 sedative, 4. Day 7, he stood there holding 5 successful bottles of lesser sedative out of 10 and looked at the boy stretching his back at the bench, and there was nothing in his eyes anymore except a very cold, very sudden calculation about his own future. Lord Liam, he came forward fast. I'll take care of these. Starting tomorrow, let me know in advance what materials you need and I'll have them ready. I won't take up even a second of your precious time. I looked up and smiled, because a proactive assistant is the best kind. 50 points of proficiency a day, master already, great master in a week, against 10-hour days in Edgar's laboratory that produced less than half of that. It's finally on the right track. I got home and there was somebody standing at my door with his back to me, blonde. Dylan! He turned around and grinned, and there was a new scar on his face and he'd aged about 4 years and 3 months. Liam! He hit me on the shoulder hard enough to move me. Dylan, you've changed quite a bit. Haha, you're exactly the same as 3 months ago. Then Zico arrived, loud as ever, and behind him came Marcus in plate armor, Chloe smelling of sulfur and alchemy, and Finn with his eyes under a hood. We sat around a table and I felt about 4 inches of tension come out of my shoulders that I hadn't noticed was there. It's more comfortable being with everyone, said Marcus, sitting down heavily. Unlike the front lines. Dylan and Zico were on a white crystal mine inside our own territory, patrolling, driving off wandering wizards and beasts. This scars from a pack of wind wolves that attacked the mine, Dylan said, touching his face. The pack leader was rank 0 mid-level. The one that got me was low-level. I was lucky I didn't die. He paused. 2 of the others who went with me did. Rank 0 low and mid correspond to first and second rank apprentices, so the wolf that opened his face was, in wizard terms, roughly a person. But compared to the combat department, this is nothing, he said, and laughed. It's more dangerous? You'll know when you hear Marcus. Marcus took a breath and let it out through his nose. The squad I joined was on the edge of the battlefield. Of all my teammates who joined at the same time, I'm the only one still alive. Even my captain, a newly promoted second-rank wizard apprentice, has already been replaced. Nobody said anything for a moment, and according to Ilara, this is just the beginning. I sat there with a cup in my hands and understood that I had drastically underestimated the war and that the correct word for what was out there was not dangerous. It's a meat grinder, and the only reliable way to survive a meat grinder is to not be meat. Therefore, we need to enter the cultivation sequence. Just like Pip said, everyone else is cannon fodder. There are opportunities too, though, Marcus added. Even in an ordinary combat squad, I can earn 5 or 6 magic stones a month from kills and missions. That's really good. And it was. That was better than a core department. That was nearly a junior apothecary's salary for a boy with no talent in 3 months. And I felt absolutely no pull toward it at all, and Marcus saw that on my face and his lip twitched. Our leader hasn't changed a bit in 3 months. Chloe, what about you? I'm an alchemy assistant. I haven't had the chance to do anything yet. I estimate several years before I get a shot at junior alchemist. Liam, how about you? Everyone turned. Everything's normal. I've just been promoted to junior apothecary. Chloe's eyes went to the star on my badge and she made a noise. She didn't know what a junior apothecary took. She knew exactly what a junior alchemist took, and the two are the same order of problem. Zico and Dylan just hissed. There's one junior apothecary at our mine, Zico said. He acts like an old man every day. We have to beg him to make medicine for us. Liam, Marcus's teeth were doing something. You've really pulled off a big one without making a sound. Potion masters are extremely rare on the front lines, because the fighting never stops and people get hurt every day and there are almost no potion masters out there. The plan, in everyone's head, had been that they would go out into the world and grow fast while I stayed in the safe rear and developed slowly. The reality had gone the other way so hard it had bent. I promised them medicine at cost, and I spent the next 3 days making 1 dose of each of the 4 potions I knew for each of them, and I did not consider it wasted time even slightly. In a world this cruel, having a few people who will hand you every coin they own without being asked twice is worth more than 3 days. A week later, at a bench, breakthrough, great master level, talent +5. Talent, 195 to 200. 200, not second-class talent, that's 250, but exactly double what I'd walked through the gate with. One meditation was enough to feel it. Sessions up, efficiency up. Meditation time reaching 9 hours a day, a new rune inside a month, which mattered enormously because it meant my talent growth had caught back up with the rune difficulty curve. For 2 months, the curve had been winning. Now it wasn't. If this rate continues, advancing to second tier within a year might not be impossible. Then I shook my head at myself. Because a third-class talent who reaches second rank within a year attracts attention, and attention is what got me killed in an alley, and there was a cultivation sequence to think about, which is a spotlight all by itself. So, intermediate pharmacist first. Get into the sequence on the potion track, where I already look like a prodigy and nobody is surprised. Then quietly improve talent and mental energy underneath, where the numbers are invisible. Status by the visible route, power by the invisible one, and Edgar. That old man hated me to the bone and would move on me one day, and the minimum requirement for handling that was second-rank wizard apprentice. Goal set. Mind at ease. Glimmer pupil was the hardest thing I have ever learned. 2 to 3 points a day. That is appalling. Every skill I'd ever touched went 4 times that. The technique builds an intricate energy circuit inside your own eyes, briefly and forcibly raises the ceiling of what vision is, and the principle behind it is one of the most beautiful things I've ever been shown. It also requires a reagent, a pale green liquid you apply to the eyelids, and Alara had given me 3 months' supply. I did the arithmetic on the bottle after 2 weeks because I'd used up half of it and only one thin layer of the blue one. Alara budgeted 3 months for stage 1. Alara budgets accurately, which meant she expected 3 months. I was going to be finished in 1.5. Let's show it off later, I decided. 3 months is too long. You can start looking at 1.5 months. No need to exaggerate. That's the whole game, by the way, not hiding everything. Metering. At the end of that fortnight, I put the last layer of green on my eyelids, sat for half an hour, and opened my eyes onto a different world. Glimmer pupil. Stage 1. I could see the elements. Not in meditation, not with my eyes shut, just looking. Thin threads of them, drifting down out of the air and into things. I looked at the wall and saw the flow going into the apartments around me. About a dozen threads next door, same as mine, roughly, a first-class apprentice. I went to the window and looked at Maple Avenue, and there were noticeably more. No wonder that's where the level 2 wizards live. And then I looked at the center of the school. The Black Wizard Tower stood there like a giant, and into it, out of the whole sky, came thousands upon thousands of threads. So many that at that distance they stopped being threads and became a curtain, an enormous shimmering sheet of falling element covering half the sky above the middle of the school. I stood at my window with my hands on the frame. I would bet everything I have owned then, or since, that if you added up every element going into every other building in that school, it would not have equaled that one tower. Is that the official wizard? I'd thought official wizards were strong. I had not understood that it wasn't a difference of degree. In pure throughput, how much of the world a person can take in, a wizard apprentice and that tower were not the same kind of object, and the actual gap in strength was presumably worse. I watched it for a long time before I made myself turn it off. One day, I said, I will become an official wizard. I was 13 and standing at a window in a rented flat. It was a completely absurd thing to say. I have never once revised it. I turned it off and stood there in the dark for a while. 14 months earlier, I had walked into a square in a linen shirt with a talent of 98, and a friendly blonde boy had explained to me that 5th class talents are occasionally fine and 6th class you can basically give up on. The school's records still said 5th class. Nobody had ever bothered to correct them. 2 floors below me in the potion department, there was an old man who had halved his own laboratory's budget rather than admit he had lost to a serf, and who had already written to a family 200 kilometers away to try and cut off my food. And 1 floor above him sat a man with a snake's eyes who had just that week learned my name, so I put the light out, and I got up at 5 the next morning and practiced witchcraft because that is the only thing that has ever worked.